Chapter 1. Practicing for 2.5 years fully leveled archery. In the year 1003 of the Holy Calendar, in the month of the northern winds, November arrived. Emerald Kingdom, Black Mountain Province, Lake County, Blackwater Valley. The river valley plain was covered in silver, and smoke curled up into the air amidst the plains. Some small wooden houses were scattered here and there. On higher ground, a modest castle was built against the mountain. The collapsed towers and battlements told a tale of the downfall of the owner of the castle. On the hillside outside the castle, in the haystack covered with ice and snow, a rabbit sought food while keeping on guard against its predators. 70 meters away, a young man in a white leather jacket and velvet cap hid behind a tree. His brown boots dug into the snow, and his clothes offered excellent camouflage. He drew out his bow, a heavy weapon clearly meant for military battles, rather than ordinary hunting. An arrow pierced the air with a sharp hiss. The rabbit fell to the ground instantly, the shaft piercing through its head and dyeing the snow a scarlet red. Archery Proficiency +1. Archery, Level 1, 9,999 out of 10,000, Level 1, Max. Rabbit meat. Levi licked his lips as he opened his proficiency panel in his mind. Levi Snyder. Archery, Level 1, Max. Riding, Level 1, Max. Aristocratic Dance, Level 1, Max. Hand-to-hand combat, Level 1, Max. Basic swordsmanship, Level 1, Max. The corner of Levi's mouth raised. Finally, my archery has reached its limit. Any prey that I target might as well be dead as soon as I lay my eyes on them. I could have been considered a proficient archer back then, compared to the simple knight I was. In 2.5 years, I have mastered the 5 basic skills that knights need to master: riding, archery, dancing, fighting, and swordsmanship. This should be enough for me to begin my breathing method. Only by learning the breathing method can one become a real knight. In this world, where natural disasters and man-made disasters continue to erupt, even the strong get preyed on by supernatural powers. After all, the original owner of this body was killed by an evil spirit. Levi is not a native of this world. 3 years ago, in the first millennium of the Holy Calendar, the time traveler awoke to find himself in the body of a noble, and the proficiency panel became his saving grace. According to his old memories, when the original owner of the body was fishing in the Blackwater River, he caught a female corpse in white with empty holes for eyes and dish-eviled hair. Her skin was bloated with water, matching the description of an evil spirit from the legends, the water fairy. Then, the original owner fell into darkness, and Levi overtook this body. Knight Fred soon found him by the riverbank, wet and unconscious. He lay surrounded by a mass of foul-smelling plants and rotten fish, chanting that he was not in the Air Force, and other inexplicable words in his dream. Knight Fred simply thought he was angry that he could not catch any fish. Naturally, Levi never mentioned this to anyone. It would be difficult to explain how he remained alive despite that encounter with the evil spirit. But that evil spirit left a shadow on him, and now he does not dare to even step foot near Blackwater River. In fact, evil spirits are regarded as legends, and most people have never seen them. The same goes for the legends that speak of wizards who could control the 4 elements of wind, lightning, earth, and fire, because no one has ever seen them either. Even the well-informed Knight Fred assured that wizards were just things of legend. Wizardry is a noble and mysterious profession. No matter how strong a knight is, they are no match for a wizard. Levi yearned for it, knowing that most legends are not without reason. After seeing an evil spirit, he was sure that there were wizards in this world, and that they were not just a subject for bards to sing about. However, given his current abilities, it is useless to pursue becoming a wizard. He needs to keep his feet on the ground. Since he was 10 years old, he has been training on his 5 knightly skills. Now, with the help of his panel, in less than 3 years, he has practiced all 5 skills to the maximum. Levi felt confident that most knights, even Knight Fred, were no match for him, especially in terms of archery. Levi was now 12, and stood 1.75 meters tall. His back hulked with muscle, which contrasted sharply with his childish face. In this world, most men could never hope to become as strong as Levi. Traditional weapons are king, and a strong body is required to carry heavy weapons and armor into battle. Now he was ready to begin the breathing method. This breathing method is dangerous, and a person will damage their body if they are not strong enough. It might even damage the mind. This is why knights were required to complete all 5 knightly skills before they could begin the breathing method. Levi smiled as he picked up the rabbit and turned around to go home. Below the hillside, a middle-aged knight with silver hair looked up, a warm expression on his face. If the master was still here, he would be elated to see how far you came with your archery. This was Knight Fred, called the Snake Knight by his enemies and followers alike. The Baron told Levi that Fred was someone he could absolutely trust. This was true. Levi remembered that the Baron spent more time with Fred than with his own son. To a certain extent, the master-servant relationship that they had was closer than the blood relationship between the Baron and Levi. Your Excellency, you praise me too much. I have yet to do anything great. I wish to begin my breathing method as soon as possible so that I can become a real knight. The winter is coming, and long nights await us. Other knights of thieves may soon invade our territory and threaten us. I simply cannot live under your protection for the rest of my life. After my father died, we lost the land of tulips in the south, which was like spring all year round, and the land of storms in the east, which was rich in minerals. This is our last home, as the remaining bloodline of the family, and for the sake of the Snyder family, I must become stronger. Levi spoke with intense passion, clenching his hands into fists to show his resolve. A black snake holding a candle served as the family emblem of the Snyder family. Hence, they were also known as the family of black snakes. His father, Baron Thord Snyder, was known as one of the 7 Hussars of the North. He was also known as the Earl of the Land of Tulips and the Lord of the Land of Storms. Compared to the sullen Blackwater Valley, the Land of Tulips and the Land of Storms were much more prosperous. Levi was born in the flowering city of the Land of Tulips, where the climate was humid and the plains were open and fertile. Although the Land of Storms was, as its name suggests, stormy, it was extremely rich in minerals. This marked the peak of the black snakes, and having 5,000 soldiers under his command was no easy feat. The Baron himself was a great knight, so he held power over all the regular knights. Only the rare legendary knights, like Lionheart Knight Ryan, Golden Knight Grek, Blood Knight Brad, Winter Knight Friar, and other legendary figures, surpassed the great knights. Holding this peak position, they stood at the top of the pyramid. Until 3 years ago, the Baron was recruited by the Emerald Kingdom and the Holy Church for the Millennium War against the Tuva Empire by the sea. He never returned. All Levi received was news that his father had perished in battle. By law, titles are hereditary, and all 3 territories of the Baron were inherited by Levi. However, the title needed to be formalized by a special envoy sent by the king. Soon, at least in name, Levi became the new Baron. Considering the situation at the time, Levi took the initiative to return to Blackwater Valley, where Baron Thord made his fortune. Knight Fred managed the entire relocation. The Bloody Earl and the Silver Earl, who had coveted their father's territory, took over the Land of Tulips and the Land of Storms with the help of their master behind the scenes, the Duke of Montenegro. The kingdom turned a blind eye to this. Levi voluntarily gave up the 2 lands and dedicated them to the Duke of Montenegro to avoid any conflict. This made the Duke very satisfied. However, in Levi's view, this was not a surrender, but a strategic move. If he were to stay in the Land of Tulips, or move to the Land of Storms, it would be tantamount to suicide, knowing that he lacked the status of a great knight to guide his army to victory. I have a proficiency panel, so I may as well return to safety and become a fallen noble. Besides, he did not enjoy being a ruler anyway. All he wanted to do was cultivate himself, perhaps become a great knight, or even a legendary knight. One day, he could become a wizard. After all, according to his discoveries, wizards are capable of achieving immortality, and only wizards can fearlessly venture through the lands without worrying about demons and ghosts. However, he still had to act the part for his father's sake. Therefore, his plans were clear: learn the breathing method, become an official knight, earn some money in his own practice, and, after becoming strong enough, travel to the 7 kingdoms and embark on a journey to look for wizards. Meanwhile, Knight Fred listened to Levi's bold announcement and smiled. Baron Levi, my master, you are indeed ready. Come with me. Chapter 2. The Black Snake with a Candle and the Mad Knight. In the basement of the castle lay an underground, secret room that Levi had never visited. The mechanism that activated the secret room slowly protruded from the ground. A worn-out parchment that had withstood the test of time lay quietly, coated in scarlet paint, with a variety of scribbles and incisions that formed a circle. On the periphery of these scribbles was a snake with black scales that seemed to surround the entire castle. The giant snake was abstract, and a simple candle stood on its jaw. This is the ancestral breathing method of the Snyder family, also known as the black snake breathing method. The Snyder blood flowing in you is the key to all of this. I'm afraid that this breathing method alone is more precious than this entire valley, Knight Fred explained solemnly. Levi breathed heavily. His journey was about to begin. As far as he knew, the knights divided the breathing method into 4 grades: superficial, excellent, perfect, and legendary. 90% of breathing methods are superficial. This is because of luck, and nobody can ever control their fate. To become a great knight, you need 90% talent, 9% opportunity, and 1% effort. This is categorized as excellent breathing. Perfect breathing is only possessed by powerful families, like the Duke. They are all quite rare. As for legendary breathing, it almost only exists in legends. One of the important characteristics concerning breathing grading above excellent is that most of it are inherited through blood, and the black snake breathing method is a method that belonged exclusively to the Snyder family. Some tried to steal this inherited type of breathing. What was the result? Their breathing degraded to superficial, or the blood vessels in their body burst due to madness. Some say that this is a curse to prevent them from stealing. Levi wasn't worried about this. After all, he had Snyder blood in him. Under the guidance of Knight Fred, he practiced it in the secret room for about half a month. During this period, Knight Fred stood by his side. Although he didn't know how to breathe like a black snake, he had a lot of experience and guided Levi. One day, Levi woke up with a strange posture, sweating profusely, with his veins bulging. His face was flushed red, and he found himself short of breath. His blood was boiling, circulating at an extraordinary speed. The energy in his body was being burnt, and extreme hunger washed over him. Hungry, like a beast, he growled lowly. Knight Fred anticipated the moment, stepping forward with a plate of barbecued meat, a bowl of goat's milk, and a large portion of bread rolls, which were all slathered with a layer of fruit jam, as well as boiled cabbage. This included carbs, protein, and vitamins. Nobles in this world rarely eat vegetables, thinking that they are low-grade foods. But Levi knew the importance of a balanced diet. He inhaled the food like a storm, and soon his hunger disappeared. Even though he ate a meal meant for 2 fully grown men, he was only 80% full. Meanwhile, the proficiency pain materialized in his mind. Levi Snyder, Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 1, 1 out of 1000. Once a skill appears on the proficiency panel, it means that it has begun. The next thing to do is to improve. At the same time, it also meant that he was becoming a knight's attendant, a shield squire, a sword squire, and a quasi-knight. These are the 3 stages of apprenticeship before one becomes an official knight, known as the knight attendant. As a shield squire, you need to learn how to use a shield. As a sword squire with advanced swordsmanship, once the breathing method, as well as external techniques, have become attuned, you will become a quasi-knight. The next step would be to condense the seed of life. If you succeed, you will become an invincible knight on the battlefield. If you fail, it will become challenging to become a knight. It seems like our young master has begun the black snake breathing method. Although you are much slower than your father, you are stronger than most of us. You may feel very hungry, so prepare enough food in advance before practicing, Knight Fred explained, setting down the empty platters. Otherwise, this hunger will gnaw at your mind, and you will become like an animal, driven by your hunger, and you may even do something wild and depraved. This is how the Mad Knight has come to be, and they are all burnt at the stake by the church. Mad Knights were civilians who practiced breathing methods to protect their families, to sustain themselves, or to live a life of superiority. However, they walked upon the edge of madness time and time again, and yet, they would end up devouring their family, their closest ones. Knight Fred closed his eyes upon mentioning the Mad Knights. He was a knight from a humble background, so he knows that feeling of madness well. Hence, he owed his life to the former baron, who saved his life. Chapter 3. Secret Medicine and Black Chi. Levi knew what Mad Knights were, knights who tread on the edge of madness one too many times. Primitive hunger took over him, shocking him, and shaking his confidence. However, images of terrifying evil spirits, greedy, sinister nobles, and the endless war between kingdoms flashed through his mind. He steeled his heart. I will stay vigilant, Knight Fred. Thank you for the reminder. Even so, money was an immediate problem. This barren Blackwater Valley might not be enough to support the two of them. Worse, it might attract a cleansing from the glorious knights of the church. Fred nodded. Next, you need to wear armor daily, hold a shield, and carry out weight-bearing training. Integrate your breathing method to ensure you won't be dragged down by the heavy plate. In addition, there is a formula for the secret Snyder medicine. I suggest you write it down somewhere. Levi nodded. Medicines were essential to speed up his practice. The formula for the Snyder recipe was simple. It required 50 grams of snake blood, a snake gallbladder, 10 grams of turtle shell powder, 10 grams of plant ash, 3 pieces of mandrake petal, 1 drop of ambergris, 1 drop of liquid amber, and 100 milliliters of pure water. Except for ambergris, every ingredient was cheap and easy to find. Snake blood and snake gallbladders provided the primary effects for the medicine. The ambergris presented a major problem. In his previous life, ambergris came from the belly of a sperm whale. In this world, the substance originated from the mouth glands of a beast called the earth dragon. According to kingdom bards, the earth dragon ranked among the most dangerous animals in the wilderness. Powerful and invulnerable, the beasts loved devouring shiny objects like coins and gems. Under normal circumstances, hunters needed to kill it with exceptional weapons after a vigorous battle, or employ more than 5 knights to trap it with poison and finish it with a large crossbow. The legendary knight, Lionheart Knight Ryan, hunted an adult earth dragon before his promotion. It was a monumental feat. Previously, 3 great knights failed to kill an earth dragon, and a young great knight died during the attempt. The Lionheart Knight succeeded, discovering a total of 8,000 gold coins and priceless jewels inside the maw of the beast. Consequently, ambergris was priceless in the market. A small bottle cost 100 gold coins, which equaled 5 sets of high-quality knight armor, 20 healthy, young serfs, or 100 well-fed cows. With current resources, the purchase was impossible. The medicine would have to wait. In the days that followed, Levi grew step by step, finding genuine interest in every part of his journey. Knight Fred introduced basic theoretical knowledge, providing valuable insight. A breathing method adjusted the rhythm of respiration and stimulated the blood potential inside a body, strengthening and improving the physical physique. This improvement far exceeded normal exercise, meaning a practitioner had to stuff himself with food to cope with the massive energy expenditure. Different breathing methods served different purposes. The black snake breathing method focused entirely on defense. Once mastered, a practitioner could attempt to condense the seed of life to advance to a formal knight. Physical fitness would skyrocket, granting a defensive capacity far beyond normal men. Furthermore, a light, black, fluid-like film would cover the arms, making skin and flesh incredibly tough and resistant. While not completely invulnerable to swords and guns, the protection was formidable. Knights generally called this film Black Chi, though the church referred to it as sacred power, claiming the gods themselves bestowed protection upon the warriors. In this era, the masterminds behind great kingdoms were often the church. To Levi, the institution looked like a front for money laundering. If the god of the church possessed almighty power, why did glorious knights guard the temples instead of priests who knew magic? Ultimately, Black Chi appeared in tandem with breathing methods. If a method focused on agility, the Black Chi might cover the legs, granting the knight incredible speed. This was the true power of the breathing method. Once a knight became a great knight, This black air covered the entire body, strengthening everything. Except for a few vulnerable places, like the eyes, a great knight became invulnerable, just like an earth dragon. They operated as immovable forces and unstoppable objects, practically gods on a battlefield. Because of this, the official report of his father's death in battle made no sense. His father was practically a god, so dying on a standard battlefield seemed impossible. With such strength, retreat would have been simple if a battle turned sour. The dispatch of a legendary knight was a possibility, but those figures possessed minds of their own, and even the kingdom or the church struggled to command them. The conclusion was clear: his father's death resulted from a conspiracy by the church. To keep himself safe, staying in Blackwater Valley was the only logical choice. He would accumulate resources, build high walls, and become his own king. Levi kept these values close to his heart. He had no desire for a grand throne, but he intended to be absolute lord of his own domain. Chapter 4. Advanced Breathing Methods. Black Snake Breathing Method +3. Black Snake Breathing Method +2. Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 1, 233 out of 1000. Levi practiced his breathing method silently day by day. Except for resting and eating, the rest of his time belonged entirely to training. The other servants rarely saw him in the castle. On the rare occasions they did, he was twisting his body into strange positions, or wearing heavy armor, and holding a shield, constantly defending against the relentless strikes of Knight Fred. "I feel ashamed," one servant whispered while carrying firewood across the courtyard. "Our lord is young, but he puts in so much effort to push himself forward." Another servant paused to watch the training circle. "What? Is he still training? I had better work extra hard so that the Lord might give me an extra piece of food tomorrow morning." No matter how hard they worked, they could never match his focus. Levi worked tirelessly. Knight Fred watched these efforts with immense pride. He quietly took care of every trivial matter in the castle so as not to disturb his master. Occasionally, some disputes required a fair judgment. Since Levi had been a lawyer in his past life, resolving these conflicts became the only remnant of his former existence. Soon, the coldest winter month of December fell upon them. The cold winds grew more violent, bringing savage snowstorms. The dilapidated wooden houses of many serfs had been in disrepair for a long time, and a heavy wind and snow destroyed them completely. Levi turned to his instructor. "Fred, house these serfs in the castle, and provide them with employment." The women began serving Levi as maids, taking care of daily life in the estate. The men were incorporated into the military, pushing the number of men under his command to an unprecedented level of 50. Knight Fred led the new recruits, teaching them basic combat skills. After their daily training, the men repaired the castle, performed the heavy lifting, grazed the livestock, and worked the frozen fields. The elderly and children performed menial tasks. Everyone received a fair share of food, consisting of a piece of bread and a bowl of red bean soup. The bread was stale, but delicious nonetheless to the hungry workers. Levi and Knight Fred were unable to eat any higher quality bread due to the poor productivity of Blackwater Valley. This was a necessity, as they had to eat far more than the average person to sustain their status as knights. Levi's daily food intake had increased to 5 or 8 times that of a normal person, while Knight Fred required 3 times the portion of an ordinary man. This generosity made the serfs incredibly grateful, but Levi remained too busy to notice, focusing entirely on his breathing method. Visible improvements altered his body day by day, bringing a deep sense of accomplishment. He stayed constantly on guard against the arrival of rival knights, or the bandits that wandered across kingdoms. Levi represented a tempting target for robbery. Still, with Knight Fred around, ordinary foreign enemies were less concerning. Although Knight Fred had been out of the military business for some time, his title as the Snake Knight still served as a powerful deterrent in the surrounding lands. Levi observed the military training from time to time. Progress showed clearly under the guidance of the old warrior. Levi nodded in satisfaction, recognizing that these men would be an important asset in the future. In truth, the population of the territory was pitiful. He had come here with nothing. Soon, the winter months passed. The calendar turned to the year 1004 in the Holy Calendar, marking the first day of the primordial month of January. Today was the birthday of the Father in Heaven. Coincidentally, it was also Levi's birthday. Levi Snyder was now 13 years old. The Blackwater Valley remained cold and bleak. Levi finished his weird, twisted breathing method and stretched his 1.8-meter tall frame. He stood on the second-floor balcony of the castle, one hand resting on his hip while he looked outward, staring at the residents below. A gloomy aura radiated from him, cold and calculating like a snake. His muscles were full and round, with visible lines of abdominal muscles pressing against his tunic. He looked like a perfect, ancient Greek statue. Down in the courtyard, a serf looked up and sighed. Is he truly just 13? Light snow fell, brushing against Levi's face. The sensation was comfortable. New year, new weather. The castle was soon decorated with lights and festive ornaments. Maids ran across the halls busily, giggling as they prepared the Lord's birthday dinner. The soldiers enjoyed a rare drink of spirits, chatting happily with Knight Fred. They thanked the veteran and their master for the generosity, sending New Year's and birthday wishes up to the solar. The other serfs brought gifts of ham, cheese, dried fruit, and wine to express their gratitude. Compared with the greedy, lowly lords of the world, Levi held a modern attitude, respecting his people. Although the serfs were poor, they were satisfied. In this valley, they felt human. They felt safe under the protection of the Snyder household. Levi was in an excellent mood, though not because of the celebrations. After 2 months of non-stop training, the restriction in his chest finally broke. He had advanced to the second level. Chapter 5. Swordsman Dawn and Wild Boar Rider. Levi Snyder. Black Snake Breathing Method. Level 2. 1 out of 5,000. Shield. Level 1. Max. Perhaps Levi's foundations were exceptionally strong, combined with the steady guidance of Knight Fred, but reaching the second level was far simpler than he had imagined. As for his shielding ability, he simply practiced it to his limit, a feat far less difficult than archery or basic swordsmanship. Today, he entered the second stage of a knightly apprenticeship, the Sword Squire. His next step would be to become a quasi-knight. A full 5,000 proficiency points were required, meaning it would take at least half a year to achieve that rank. Having practiced his breathing method almost daily, he needed to rest his body and mind. Otherwise, he might go insane. Now that he was a sword squire, his physique doubled that of a normal man. With his bare hands, he could easily beat 5 adult men in hand-to-hand combat. However, he lacked actual combat skills. Another important skill for a sword squire was advanced swordsmanship, along with proficiency in other weapons. Knights rarely fought with fists. With the existence of weapons, fighting with hands and feet was foolish. To learn swordsmanship, he needed to ask Knight Fred. His father always admitted that Knight Fred excelled far beyond him in that regard. In his earlier days, while traveling the kingdom, the old warrior was known as the Swordsman Dawn. It was a handsome name. There was no rush, however. Today was the new year, and Levi wanted to give himself a day off to enjoy the richness of nobility. At the banquet, Levi sat in the lord's seat, with Knight Fred at his side. No other nobles were present. It was a cold winter, and heavy snow blocked most roads. The valley was entirely remote. Although territories like the Land of Rocks, the Land of Frosted Winds, and the Land of the Silver Moon lay nearby, the distance remained too great. Only in the summer would merchants exchange goods. In short, the barons in Blackwater Valley were all miserable. That reality made Levi's father legendary. He started from nothing before becoming the lord of 3 fertile lands. Levi disliked dealing with other lords. It was best for everyone to coexist peacefully with no strings attached. At the outermost part of the banquet hall sat the serfs, shy and timid. They enjoyed the same food as their master, but they kept themselves small, fearing they might make their lord angry. At the same time, the serfs never expected their generous and mighty master to be so young. He did not look 13 at all. After 3 rounds of drinks, Levi focused on his food, enjoying the sensation of his maids massaging his tired muscles. The young women rubbed at Levi's thick, firm shoulders, their faces flushing red. These maids were young peasant girls who loved to gossip, but they remained reserved in the presence of their lord. Suddenly, a short, stout boy approached the table and knelt on the stone floor with a heavy thud, placing a cloth bag on the ground. This was Milan, the son of the old blacksmith, Toby. Little blacksmith, Milan, what is it that you seek? Levi asked. Milan opened the cloth bag, revealing a sword that shone with a cold light. My lord, this is the best sword that I made last year. I would like to dedicate it to you. The boy lowered his head, presenting the weapon. Levi took the blade, examining the metal. The steel contained few impurities, making it a weapon of decent quality. It is indeed a good sword. Levi beckoned for the boy to stand. Is your father still well? Milan lowered his head, sinking back to his knees as tears began to fall. My lord, when my father and I were pulling, or on the mountain, we ran into some members of the Wild Boar gang. I managed to escape, but my father was captured. I have no choice but to seek your help. Levi's expression hardened. The Wild Boar gang. His greatest concern had finally manifested. Do not worry, I will deal with it. Go home and await the good news. The intrusion ruined Levi's good mood in an instant. After the dinner concluded, Knight Fred entered the solar, finding his young master staring into the hearth with murder in his eyes. The Wild Boar gang kidnapped Toby, the blacksmith. Levi seethed, his grip tightening on the armrest. Targeting my blacksmith? The absolute gall. The leader of their gang is Pig, the hog rider. With my breathing method, they should mean nothing to me. Chapter 6. Obtaining Vibrate, Ripple and Whirlwind. Levi shook his head and calmed himself, his voice steady. The path is currently blocked by heavy snow, and it is difficult to tell whether or not this is a trap set by the Wild Boar gang. Toby's talent is something valuable, and he will do anything to save his life. For now, we should send someone to converse with the Wild Boar gang before we move. Knight Fred sighed, rubbing his temples. Ah, what a headache. These vermin are trying to step all over us. Your Excellency Knight Fred, I suggest you rest and teach me tomorrow. Perhaps I could test out the sword that Milan has crafted for me. Levi rested his sword on his hand. Under the dim candlelight, his pupils exuded a majestic glow, the striking aura of a legendary being that transcends the ordinary rather than a mere noble lord. Knight Fred gulped, stepping back. A sudden chill washed over him, as if a terrifying beast stared him down. He looked past his master to the oil painting hanging behind Levi, a black snake coiling around the castle, holding a candle in its mouth. It looked mysterious, yet sinister. The young master's talent is exceptional. He is an incredibly fast learner. Knight Fred kept the thought to himself. It took the late Baron 3 months to become a sword squire, after mastering the breathing technique, and a full year after that to become a quasi-knight. 2 more years passed before he became an official knight, and another 8 years to achieve the rank of Great Knight. Levi had only exposed himself to the breathing technique for 2 months, and he mastered the foundations in a mere 2 weeks. Knight Fred could not figure out the reason, attributing the miraculous pace entirely to the young man's unrelenting effort. Master, you need to rest. Do not put too much pressure on yourself. The old warrior bowed and retreated into the shadows. Levi's fingers fiddled with Milan's sword. A soft sigh escaped his lips as the proficiency panel materialized in his mind. I simply want to practice in obscurity. Is it wrong to be a self-sufficient lord who lives a life of peace? On the second day of the new year, darkness cloaked the sky in the wee hours of the morning. The residents and soldiers of Blackwater Valley slept peacefully, drifting through the dream realm. Out on the frozen training grounds, Levi donned his heavy armor, gripping Frostmourne in his hand. The name reminisced upon a world he could never return to, offering a strange comfort. Nightfred drew his own weapon, Dawn, the steel hissing against the leather scabbard. I shall teach you a skill that I learnt by accident in my early days of traveling the kingdom. It has no name, but I call it the Golden Cross. It draws strange power beyond imagination into your weapon. It does not matter what weapon you use, a hammer, a simple knife, a spear, or even a pitchfork. This Golden Cross is divided into 3 components, which are Vibrate, Ripple, and Whirlwind. The instructor held the blade upright, demonstrating the stance. The simplest is Vibration, then Ripple, then Whirlwind. Despite my experience, I have only mastered Ripple, but its power is beyond compare. The effectiveness of this enhancement is entirely based on the understanding of the user. Levi smiled wryly. Is that so? Even someone of your caliber is only able to master Ripple. Has anyone ever reached the highest point of swordsmanship? Master, do not be discouraged. The Ripple is more than enough power for one to hold. Even your father only reached this point, and among the great knights, he was the strongest among every single one of them. Levi nodded. With the proficiency panel guiding his growth, reaching the pinnacle was a matter of time. Nightfred shifted his weight, exuding a powerful aura. His body vibrated, distorting the surroundings like a phantom, before transmitting this intense energy directly into his sword. The blade shook with violent power, shining with a blinding luster. With a single forward slash, the sword shot out a violent beam, instantly splitting a massive boulder into 4 clean pieces. In a swift, fluid motion, the weapon slid back into its sheath. The display left Levi speechless. The rock was not as hard as steel, but splitting it into 4 pieces surpassed the capability of any ordinary man. This was the true power of a knight. This was what it meant to be strong, and Levi yearned for it. Nightfred huffed, catching his breath. He had used a mere 30% of his strength for the demonstration. Had he gone all out, he could cut through the thickest plate armor. However, that would damage the sword itself, and it was simply too flashy for practical training. This is a matter of exerting force through your sword. You may not understand it yet, so I will demonstrate the technique again. Levi nodded, fixing his gaze on the older man. The initial swift motions were too challenging to capture, but as Nightfred repeated the moves countless times, the basic mechanics became clear. Soon, Levi stepped forward to swing his own blade. Practicing meant continuous repetition, continuous learning, committing mistakes, and adjusting the form. A slight error in technique caused the vibration to fizzle out into nothing. Nightfred guided Levi patiently, correcting his grip and stance over and over. Levi continued his breathing exercises, devoting every ounce of energy to his swordsmanship training. The initial mastery had to appear on his proficiency panel. His innate drive made him perfectly suited for this long, grueling process. On the 3rd day, a weak vibration finally passed through Frostmourne. The steel thrummed against his palms, making it feel as if the sword itself was breathing. A deep sense of joy filled his chest. Vibrate. This must be it. In his mind, new skills emerged on the proficiency panel. Chapter 7. Lord of the Wilderness and the Brotherhood of the Wilderness. Levi Snyder. Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 2, 5 out of 5,000. Golden Cross, Level 1, 1 out of 1,000. Special Effect, Vibrate, Beginner. It took him 3 whole days, but he did it. Levi stared at the extra column next to the Golden Cross. A special effect. This was unprecedented. Obviously, this vibration referred to the technique Nightfred described. It forced a knight's sword to vibrate at an incredibly high speed, increasing the lethality tenfold. Nightfred's past explanation echoed clearly in the quiet room. This skill of mine is incredibly powerful, unlocking special effects at the 1st level itself. You must know that even the Black Snake Breathing Method does not have any special effects at the 2nd level. Levi's breath hitched. Just where did Nightfred acquire this skill? This had to be the work of a talented great knight, or perhaps even a legendary knight. Levi nodded with satisfaction. He could not wait to hit the limits of this skill as soon as possible. Striking the iron while it was hot, he practiced the Golden Cross several times a day. Mastering the technique of using the power of vibration was a lengthy, satisfying process. For now, he could only produce a weak vibration. Golden Cross Proficiency +3. Golden Cross Proficiency +2. There was immense room for improvement while using the Golden Cross. Every single practice session increased his proficiency by 2 points. He never stopped training, halting only when hunger gnawed at his stomach. He would rest for a short while, eat his fill, and return to the yard. During one of these breaks, Nightfred walked into the hall, fresh from training his men on the grounds. He noticed the bright, satisfied expression on the young man's face. You must have grasped the techniques of vibration. Levi nodded, gripping his hilt. A massive gap separated his current power from his baseline a few days ago. Even though Vibrate was the most basic skill under the Golden Cross, it was mighty in its own right. The real challenge lay ahead, mastering Ripple, and eventually, Whirlwind. Nightfred smiled, leaning against a wooden pillar. Your father mastered this in 2 days. Frustration tightened Levi's chest. He did not expect to lose to his father's baseline. How many times did you practice the movement before you mastered it, Nightfred? Nightfred held out 2 fingers. 2 days worth of training? No, twice. Pretend I never asked. Defeat washed over Levi. He practiced the form nearly 100 times over the last 3 days, barely scratching the surface of mastery. Nightfred needed only 2 attempts. The vast chasm between talented geniuses and ordinary people felt daunting. Even a warrior as strong as Nightfred remained completely stagnant trying to master Ripple. Whirlwind was a thing of legend, an impossible dream for an ordinary man to pursue. Calm down, Levi. He whispered the reminder to himself, steadying his pulse. You have your proficiency panel. You will catch up in no time. Nightfred stepped closer, breaking the silence. By the way, the scouts I sent to negotiate with the Wild Boar gang discovered something. The bandits recently joined the Brotherhood of the Wild. Levi sneered, his eyes narrowing. No wonder they have been stepping all over us. They found a backer. The Brotherhood of the Wilderness was relatively well known in the northern parts of the kingdom. Its members believed in the Lord of the Wilderness, a deity of chaos, disorder, and entropy. They advocated for absolute free will, surrendering fully to the chaos, believing everything would eventually return to that primal state. The ranks consisted mainly of wandering knights and bandits who survived by raiding the wasteland. In short, the Lord of the Wilderness was the pure incarnation of chaos. The followers advocated overthrowing the tyranny of the church and the kingdom, demanding the complete abolition of all power systems. They believed that only in this state of total freedom could all living things continue to evolve, adhering strictly to the survival of the fittest. This doctrine represented absolute heresy in the eyes of the church. Consequently, both the church and the kingdom targeted them relentlessly. Originally, the cult vanished from the public eye, but the immense turmoil caused by the millennium war changed everything. The church had no time to deal with small fry, allowing the cult to re-emerge in the shadows. Nightfred crossed his arms, waiting for orders. What now? Let us keep Toby in their care for now. Levi rubbed his chin, calculating the risks. Milan is just as proficient as Toby. Arrange for some reliable people to serve as the boys' apprentices. We must produce as many weapons and as much equipment as possible. Understood. Levi recognized that he was currently no match for the Brotherhood of the Wilderness, making early preparation essential. The ability to re-emerge from the chaos meant someone formidable was in charge, perhaps a great knight. Levi laughed at his own current weakness, then returned to his grueling training day after day. The holy calendar turned to the year 1004, entering the month of germination in February. It was the season of recovery, but the Blackwater Valley remained frigid and bitter. Although the air was not quite as cold as the previous months, heavy snow still blanketed the mountaintops of the region. Levi isolated himself completely from the public eye, choosing to focus exclusively on his breathing method and Golden Cross training. His current daily routine was rigid. He practiced his breathing method twice in the morning, twice at noon, and twice in the evening, filling the remaining hours with the Golden Cross. Breathing formed the foundation of his power, but it consumed a massive amount of energy. The constant diet of stale bread was becoming intolerable. However, his current speed yielded 15 points of proficiency daily. He would reach level 3 in his breathing technique in about a year, potentially breaking through to become an official knight. This was considered an incredibly fast pace, practically keeping up with his father's legendary timeline. As for the Golden Cross, he practiced it to his body's absolute limit. There was no need to worry about exhausting his internal energy with the sword forms, allowing visible improvements to manifest rapidly. Of course, Levi gave himself a rest day every single week, so that his muscles could recover. Soon, the month of vitality arrived in March, bringing the gentle touch of spring to the lands of the Blackwater Valley. Levi's Golden Cross finally broke through to the 2nd level, and he opened the mental panel immediately to inspect the progress. Chapter 8. Level 2, Obtaining Intermediate Level of Vibration. Levi Snyder. Black Snake Breathing Method Level 2, 1002 out of 5000. Golden Cross Level 2, 3 out of 5000. Special Effect Vibrate, Intermediate. Levi unsheathed Frostmourne. His body shook violently with power, transferring the immense energy directly into his sword. Frostmourne clanged and hummed, vibrating with lethal force as it slashed through the void. The blade struck twice in rapid succession. A beautiful, cold light shimmered in the dark, and an ordinary wooden stake fell apart, divided swiftly into 4 neat pieces. Golden Cross Proficiency +1. Levi turned, switching his target to a large stone. He swung with the exact same amount of strength, but this time, the edge only sliced an inch into the rock before the sword embedded itself deep in the stone. He pulled the weapon out forcefully with great effort and returned it to its sheath. Cutting through ordinary wooden posts is easy now at the intermediate level. Perhaps at the next level, achieving Nightfred's mastery will be possible. As for Ripple, that will take time. Going from the 1st level to the 2nd level had been relatively fast, since only 1000 experience points were needed. From the 2nd level to the 3rd level, however, the difficulty increased sharply. Levi was temporarily stuck in a bottleneck, his next breakthrough at least half a year away. He was in no hurry. After mastering intermediate vibration, a new sense of strength filled him. He lacked practical combat training though, so he planned to test his skills in a real battle. The Back Mountains offered the perfect arena for actual combat. The province of Montenegro was called the Black Mountain for a reason, It was home to dense, black forests that never wilted, where many ferocious beasts hid within the thick leaves and snowy fields. Blackwater Valley sat right at the base of a branch of these mountains. A few wild beasts roamed the outskirts of the forest. The most common creature was the mountain wolf, which usually appeared in packs of 3 or 5. Based on his past archery experience, fighting in a real battle yielded much more proficiency, making the mountain wolf an excellent target. These creatures were natural hunters, with an average height of more than 1 meter. They were much larger and more aggressive than the wolves of his previous life, possessing thicker bones. That aggressiveness was an evolutionary trait, necessary because many incredibly strong beasts lived deep in the Montenegro mountains. The giant northern bear was as strong as a knight, and other beasts like the silver lion or the armored mammoth matched the power of a great knight. Levi was no match for those apex predators yet. His target today was a small pack of wolves, or better yet, a single wolf. Knight Fred followed closely behind to ensure he remained safe, and since the high-level beasts only prowled in the center of the forest, the likelihood of running into them was incredibly low. A large snow deer trotted through the trees, a common herbivore in these mountains. Levi used the creature for archery practice from time to time, as they provided an excellent, delicious source of food. Knight Fred, an experienced hunter himself, kept watch nearby, guarding his master's blind spots. The effective range of the bow was 120 meters. Levi stood about 80 meters away from the deer, drawing the string tight. The arrow loosed with a sharp whoosh, piercing clean through the deer's skull and killing it instantly. Using the corpse as bait was the logical choice. A mountain wolf's nose is highly sensitive, so the scent of blood would bring them out soon. Levi turned to his companion, gesturing toward a thick branch overhead. Knight Fred, let us climb up into the tree. Levi sat on the sturdy branch, waiting quietly for his prey to arrive. Time passed slowly in the freezing air. Not long after, the eerie sound of howling wolves echoed from a section of the forest not far away. Immediately afterward, different wolves howled in response, signaling the presence of a pack. 4 wolves. Knight Fred leaned closer, his hand resting near his hilt. Need my help? Levi shook his head, keeping his eyes locked on the clearing below. Just watch my back. After a short wait, 4 mountain wolves as big as calves crept into the clearing, vigilantly sniffing the frozen ground. Fred and Levi were experienced hunters, having long masked their scents with the surrounding foliage to avoid detection. All 4 wolves gathered around the deer's corpse. The strongest wolf stepped forward, aggressively tearing into the belly. The alpha always ate first. A rope swung from the branches above, and Levi dropped, landing heavily on the ground and shaking the snow around him. The thick snow cushioned his fall, allowing a smooth, upright landing. The mountain wolves spun around, baring their teeth and growling fiercely to warn him away. Levi did not budge. Led by the alpha, the pack growled in unison and pounced toward the intruder. They moved with incredible speed and agility, the kind of assault that forced even the most experienced hunters to flee up the trees. Frostmourne flashed through the air. The lead mountain wolf did not realize what hit it before its body split into 4 pieces, its internal organs spilling over the frozen ground and staining the white snow a deep red. Golden Cross Proficiency +5. The sudden slaughter yielded a much higher increase in proficiency. The alpha looked at Levi in horror, realizing it was completely outmatched, and turned to flee into the brush. Levi sneered, his boots clomping against the thick snow as he gave chase. Absolutely not. Although his armor was exceptionally heavy, his rigorous training made the plate feel weightless. He caught up to the fleeing animal in a matter of moments, and with another swift strike, the wolf was dismembered in an instant. Golden Cross Proficiency +4. Chapter 9. The Wolf King and the Letter of Invitation. The rush of adrenaline faded after the second kill, leaving a sudden, dangerous silence. The alpha was missing. A massive force slammed into Levi's back, knocking him forward face first into the deep snow. The cunning beast had taken advantage of the bloodshed to sneak around behind him. The wolf rushed up, jaws snapping toward Levi's exposed head. An elbow smashed directly into the beast's snout. Levi protected his neck with his other forearm, retaliating by hitting the wolf with every ounce of his strength. The creature leapt backward into the brush. Levi supported himself against a thick pine tree, panting heavily. The intelligence of these wild predators was easy to underestimate. The wolf did not retreat. It threw back its head and howled, calling for immediate assistance. Within moments, 5 more mountain wolves slinked out from the dark trees, forming a tight circle around him. Surrounded by a pack of this size, even a quasi-knight could die. Shit. Knight Fred cursed under his breath, crouching on a high branch and preparing to make a move at any moment. Still, watching the young boy master the vibrate technique in such a short time was commendable. Levi dodged to the side swiftly, trying his best to evade the heavy bodies pouncing at him. With their size and numerical advantage, avoiding every strike was impossible. Teeth scraped and clashed against his plate armor, but the metal held firm. The beasts could not bite through the steel. This was the absolute difference in power between beasts and humans. The custom armor moved like a second skin. Maneuvering in such heavy gear during a live ambush was daunting, but his months of training paid off. Even so, the ancestral breathing method burned at his muscles violently, and fatigue began to set in. A quick decision was necessary. Levi imbued his sword with immense energy, letting the intermediate vibration thrum through the steel. In a single, swift slash, the surrounding mountain wolves perished under his blade, their bodies hitting the snow. The alpha tried to escape into the thickets again, but Levi dropped his sword, drew his bow, and shot the beast straight through the head. Levi stood among the bodies, analyzing the combat data. The plate armor served as a great barrier for the wolves to overcome, but against other knights, such defenses might be useless. Despite the risk, satisfaction settled in. The fierce encounter had easily increased his proficiency meter by 30 or 40 points, which was equivalent to a full day or two of monotonous training. Sudden hunger took over his body. He reached into his pouch, quickly pulling out the prepared rations to relieve his ravenous appetite. Knight Fred dropped down from the tree, his boots crunching on the bloody crust. We need to pack up for our journey back down the mountain and leave soon. The smell of blood is strong, and it may attract stronger beasts. Levi nodded. If a pack of tens or hundreds of wolves arrived, he would die. Still, the harvest was bountiful. The thick fur of these mountain wolves was incredibly soft, making it perfect for winter jackets, and their large carcasses provided an excellent source of meat for the castle. The two men emptied the uneaten viscera into a nearby frozen river to lessen the scent trail. Levi tied the carcasses of the deer and the wolves to a makeshift sledge, dragging the heavy load down the mountain alongside Knight Fred. As soon as they left the clearing, countless wolf howls echoed through the dark forest behind them. A large pack formed a solemn circle around the remnants of the slaughter, wailing in low, mournful voices. A giant, silver wolf stood out among the crowd, its pristine mane hugging its neck gracefully. This was the true Wolf King. It stared at the remaining corpses, its eyes flashing with complicated intelligence before it began to feast upon the meat. In the bitter cold of winter, no food could go to waste. After eating its fill, the silver beast lay down on a flat boulder, staring intently at the deep sledge dents left in the snow. The Wolf King decided to follow the trail. Creatures of its status rarely confronted human settlements, but prey had been scarce in the mountains. Feeding 100 wolves under its command was becoming impossible, and the livestock of humans looked very tempting. When the hunting party finally returned to the valley, the servants and soldiers welcomed Levi with open arms. Patrol well tonight. Some wolves may come to retaliate. Let the blacksmiths forge more arrows. Levi delivered the cold instructions to the guards, then retreated to his quarters to rest for a bit. The main fortifications of the castle were fully repaired, and 50 men now stood under his command. Although their weapons consisted mostly of basic farm tools like pitchforks, the defensive walls meant they should have no problem dealing with a lone mountain wolf. Besides, the men were eating well. This successful hunt greatly enriched the castle meat reserves. Levi could recklessly practice his breathing method for a long period of time, without worrying about starvation. The month of vitality swept away, welcoming the month of green grass in April. The chilly winter air gradually faded, replaced by mild warmth. The deep snow on the low valley plains melted, and lush green grass sprouted across the earth. The serfs in Blackwater Valley began to sow the spring wheat, and the soldiers helped them in the fields after completing their daily military training. If the weather remained good, the peasants could harvest the fields around the month of the wheat field in September. Spring was in full bloom, and the remote valley was thriving. The heavy mountain snow had receded, which meant the narrow passage to the outside world was now open. On this day, Levi opened his eyes in the quiet of his solar, interrupting his daily breathing exercises. Just 3 days ago, an unexpected invitation letter had arrived at the castle gates. Chapter 10. The Legendary White Knight. Dear Baron Levi Snyder, the moon of flowers is upon us, and the silver frost flowers are about to bloom. I sincerely invite you to participate in this noble ball hosted by yours truly. Baron Fox, who resided in the land of the silver moon, had written the words. Geographically, the two households were neighbors. Knight Fred held the parchment, waiting for a response. Are you going? No. Then, I shall order somebody to write a letter. Levi watched the old knight leave, then looked out the window. I am still too weak now. If I get attacked, I probably will not be able to run away. But if I go with Knight Fred, who will guard my people? The event held no appeal anyway. During his childhood, his father used to take him to gatherings of this sort, exposing him to the rampant hypocrisy of the nobility. Levi preferred to continue practicing. By staying in the valley, safety and comfort remained absolute. Time flew by, and May, the month of flowers, arrived. Climbing over a few mountains, about 200 miles away from the south of the Blackwater Valley, lay the land of the Silver Moon. Baron Fox ruled this domain, and the day of his grand ball had finally arrived. The silver frost flowers bloomed on schedule. Aristocratic men and women paraded in gorgeous clothes, drinking fine wine, while pretending to admire the blossoms. They ate barbecued meat, danced to the music, and gossiped relentlessly. I heard that the eldest daughter of the Duke of Montenegro is engaged to the White Knight, Edward, of the royal family. Is that not wonderful? He is only 25, but he is the most promising candidate for becoming a real-life legendary knight. He may not be one yet, but he is already a legendary figure in the royal family. He single-handedly beheaded the 2 Storm Knights of the Church of the Storm during the Millennium War. Besides, he is exceptionally handsome. Let me tell you, I dreamt that I was riding on his horse, and... Did you hear about the great knight in the Blackwater Valley? Many people believed that he would become a legendary knight, but he died in the war. The Black Snake Knight? He was far too old-fashioned. He was deathly loyal to his first wife, and his only son, Levi, is a total loser from what I heard. He handed over his father's inheritance to mere peasants. He did not even come to the noble ball, showing just how arrogant he is. One of Baron Fox's daughters spat the words angrily into her goblet. Amidst the drunken conversations and shallow laughter, couples snuck away to the grove behind the hill, indulging in forbidden encounters. Although the church strictly forbade such behavior, nobody cared if nobody saw them. Balls of this nature frequently devolved into promiscuous gatherings. Inside the meeting hall of the Silver Moon Castle, 3 noble knights in full armor drank and chatted away from the crowd. The leader was a middle-aged nobleman with a narrow face and a thin frame. This was Baron Fox, though peers occasionally called him the Silver Fox Knight. The other 2 were Baron Bill, the Stone Bear Knight, and Baron Wolf, the Frost Wolf Knight. They had traveled from the land of stones and the land of frost winds. These 3 barons were Levi's immediate neighbors, and each was a trained knight. Thank you 2 for coming. Baron Fox smiled, raising his cup. The tall, hulking Baron Bill towered over his host, his voice stern. Cut to the chase, Baron Fox. Just what are you scheming? The signature breathing method of Bill's family caused practitioners to grow rapidly, making him stand a proud 2.3 meters tall. Plump, powerful muscles packed his frame. True to his title, he possessed the raw strength of a bear. Big man, you are the same as always. Baron Wolf chuckled, leaning back. Speaking of which, where is Baron Levi? That little black snake rejected my invitation. I bet the refusal was the idea of their advisor knight. It does not matter to me. Without Baron Thord, they are nothing. Anyway, I am here to discuss the future plans for our 3 territories. For this reason, I also invited somebody strong to join us. Baron Fox clapped his hands twice. The heavy wooden door to the hall slowly pushed open. A knight in massive armor trudged into the room, a heavy meteor hammer hanging from his waist. A dark helmet completely obscured his face. And this is? Baron Bill and Baron Wolf instantly went on guard, their hands dropping toward their weapons as they glared at Baron Fox. Do not panic. This is the Hog Rider from the Brotherhood of the Wilderness. He has something to talk about with us. The Hog Rider. They practice the hog breathing technique, and they are supposedly much stronger than us. Baron Bill muttered, his eyes narrowing. The intruder simply glanced at the large man, remaining silent. Baron Fox, you know the consequences of affiliating yourself with someone from the Brotherhood of the Wilderness. If the church or the kingdom finds out, you are completely doomed. We are the only ones who know of this meeting. If you do not open your mouths, nobody will ever find out. Baron Fox smiled, squinting his eyes. The 2 visiting barons swallowed hard. The Hog Rider had shifted his position, completely blocking the only exit from the meeting hall. After a long, suffocating silence, Baron Fox smiled warmly, though his eyes remained cold. You too, my greatest apologies. I knew it. Baron Bill scoffed, tightening his grip on his weapon. You cannot have us knowing your secrets, now can you? Baron Wolf unsheathed his sword with a sharp metallic hiss. Baron Bill swung his heavy hammer across the air, the wind whistling around the iron head. The Hog Rider, who had remained perfectly silent the entire time, reached into his pouch. He pulled out a strange black jar, holding it aloft as he chanted a bizarre spell. Spirit of the lamp, reveal yourself. Chapter 11. Black Jar and Lamp Spirit. The lid of the jar popped open by itself. A strange black smoke crawled out of the opening, rising quickly and distorting into a vaguely human figure. What witchcraft is this? Baron Bill yelled, swinging his hammer towards the shifting smoke. The Hog Rider stared, unmoving. The hammer passed completely through the vapor, hitting the stone floor with a loud thud. Baron Wolf slashed his sword through the dark cloud, but the steel met no resistance. His eyes widened as he backed away. Bill, this is an evil spirit. We need to run. 2 streams of black smoke shot forward, penetrating the nostrils of the 2 panicking men. Baron Bill's arms glowed with a desperate black light. A strange howl resounded from his chest. He thrashed around violently, fighting for dominance against the smoke gripping his throat. The defiance faded fast. The brilliance drained from his face, and the same hollow emptiness claimed Baron Wolf. The 2 men fell to the ground, eyes and mouths wide open in frozen horror. Their energy vanished in an instant. Wisps of white smoke siphoned from their lips into the jar, feeding the entity's physical form. The 2 knights looked entirely unmarked, but they were very much dead. The evil spirit retreated back into its vessel, leaving an otherworldly voice echoing in the quiet room. I am very satisfied with this transaction. As promised, I shall make a move for your brotherhood. The next trade will cost you 3 knights. The entity's voice pounded in the ears of the remaining men. The Hog Rider lowered his head, whispering to the vessel. Yes, Spirit of the Lamp. He turned his cold gaze toward the host. As we have discussed, the 3 of you were attacked by a legendary evil spirit, and both barons perished in battle. Only by the holy brilliance of the loving Father did you escape with your life. I understand, Baron Fox replied, his hands shaking slightly. But would they believe it? It does not matter if they do not. No one will come for you. The church will use your words as a means to spread its faith. The king himself will secretly be relieved that he does not have to oversee 2 independent barons anymore. Besides, you could simply show them the bodies. It would be impossible for their physicians to explain how they died. It is a pity that the Black Snake Knight did not join us today, but as promised, here are your 1,000 gold coins. Pleasure doing business with you, and may chaos be with us. Baron Fox waited until the Hog Rider left, before exhaling a long sigh. He reached down to pick up the heavy bag of gold coins. For his small territory, this wealth equaled almost 10 years of regular revenue. With this money, he could easily purchase dozens of pieces of high-quality knight armor. Even at the risk of being discovered by the church, the gamble was worth it. That evil spirit, Baron Bill fought against it for a short while, but he died within seconds. Baron Fox shivered, lingering fears about the invincible entity clouding his mind. No matter. Now that the Brotherhood has come into possession of evil spirits, it is time for the kingdom and the church to suffer. Winter was approaching, and survival meant doing anything to become as strong as possible before the first snow fell. Miles away, Levi learned by word of mouth that Baron Bill and Baron Wolf had encountered an evil spirit and died suddenly. A drop of cold sweat ran down his forehead. It is good I did not go then. Even if the rumors are not true, I am sure Baron Fox had ill intentions. He remained deeply dubious about the official report. Evil spirits existed, but the fact that Baron Fox walked away completely unharmed made the story suspicious. Still, more pressing matters demanded his attention. Knights could not deal with aberrations. That fell under the expertise of wizards. Magic must be dealt with using magic. Spring faded away, and the summer of the fire moon arrived. After more than a month of investigation, the church's inquiry into the deaths of Baron Bill and Baron Wolf came to a formal conclusion. The verdict remained unchanged. They were killed by an evil spirit. Panic gripped the country. For the longest time, evil spirits were mere urban legends, a lie that adults told to scare restless children into behaving. Now, the church itself confirmed their existence. The Pope warmly reminded the public to always keep the church's Holy Radiance badge close to their chest, citing it as the sole reason Baron Fox survived the ordeal. Coincidentally, the price of these badges increased sharply, skyrocketing from the mere price of 1 gold coin to a staggering 100 gold coins. Nobles and aristocrats bit the bullet and bought them, as none of them felt at ease without wearing the token. Meanwhile, the isolated Blackwater Valley remained largely unbothered by the chaos of the outside world. Chapter 12. Farming is a beautiful thing. A lush forest grew deep within the Blackwater Valley, split down the center by a rushing river. The crops in the territory grew fruitfully this year, fertilized by alpine waters that were rich in minerals. It was a pity the land could only support one type of crop. Everything moved smoothly, but Levi cursed his lack of a science or engineering background. Productivity and efficiency would improve greatly if he knew how to integrate science into these primitive processes. He could be like the protagonists in other stories, launching grand scientific revolutions thanks to modern knowledge. Instead, he had to learn everything by slow experience. In this world, he wanted to pursue immortality. Becoming the lord of the land was merely a stepping stone to that ultimate goal. August arrived, bringing the month of the furnace. The heat grew oppressive in the south, but the Blackwater Valley maintained a perfect, mild temperature. Knight Fred led the men to build deep canals, directing the river water straight into the village to ensure the crops flourished. Levi called his serfs together on the riverbanks, ordering them to fish for food and to sell the surplus. He refused to venture out into the deeper waters himself, gripped by a deathly paranoia of encountering an evil spirit. His strength grew day by day, demanding more and more meat to sustain his physique. He could easily consume enough meat for 10 ordinary people in a single day, but the expense felt wasteful, prompting his shift toward a seafood diet. The river teemed with cold water fish, mostly perch and salmon. The meat tasted delicious and remained rich in fat, sustaining his brutal training regime. Levi spent an evening in the kitchen, teaching the head chefs how to properly handle and cook the catch, steaming, braising, and grilling the fish. Although the final dishes lacked the flavor of his past life due to a severe shortage of seasoning and spices, the meals tasted good despite the limitations. Knight Fred watched his master eat, eventually picking up a fork to try the fish himself. The old warrior swallowed a bite, his eyes widening at the flavor. In the traditional eyes of nobles and knights, fish represented a low-grade food meant only for peasants. The sight of a true noble like Levi eating fish to save on costs shocked the instructor, but the taste quickly won him over. Soon, the wheat fields turned a brilliant gold. The joy of the impending harvest brought a rare smile to Levi's face. He sat on the stone balcony during his weekly rest day, sipping a cup of wine, while watching the serfs harvest the wheat at the foot of the mountain. The weather remained incredibly good, giving him absolute confidence that this year's wheat output would far surpass the previous year's yield. However, when the harvest moon of October arrived, the final calculations left him completely dumbfounded. The total output had increased by less than 1%. Levi summoned Knight Fred to the solar, demanding an immediate investigation. Reviewing the dusty records from previous years, Levi uncovered an interesting, frustrating phenomenon. No matter how good the weather turned, wheat production remained virtually identical throughout the decades. The root cause lay within a draconian local policy. Serfs were considered the private property of the lord. A serf's entire income, whether wheat or other handmade products, had to be handed directly to their master. Then, their lord handed a portion to the higher nobility, and the cycle repeated. Over generations, the serfs realized their extra labor served no personal purpose, causing them to become intentionally lazy. Levi knew he had to abolish the practice immediately. Knight Fred stood by the heavy oak table, offering a traditional perspective. This has been our culture for centuries, young master. How about punishing the serfs who fail to meet a higher target? That will provide the motivation they lack. Levi shook his head, setting his cup down. No, Fred. We are not going to punish them. We are going to keep them well fed. There is no harm in trying something new. The harvest moon passed, and the new decree went into effect. Women ran from house to house through the dirt streets, calling out to their neighbors with the incredible news. Listen up, one woman yelled, leaning over a wooden fence. Our Lord announced that next year, from the very start, each household only needs to hand over 60% of the wheat we harvest. The entire rest belongs to us. The serfs paused in the fields, stunned into silence. Is that true? An old farmer asked, wiping his brow. Is the master lying to us? A village elder snapped back. Are you questioning his authority? The farmer lowered his head. No, of course not. In order to dispel their deep-seated worries, Levi walked down to the village square himself, delivering a speech to the gathered crowds to officially announce the decree. Hearing the words from the Lord's own mouth, the serfs erupted into cheers. For the first time in their families' lives, they felt that existence was perhaps worth living. In the blink of an eye, the month of the northern winds returned to the valley. Out on the frozen training grounds, Levi's arms shook with violent energy, distorting the cold air around his body as Frostmourne shone with a brilliant luster. He delivered a single, swift slash, and the hard, black stone before him split cleanly into 4 pieces. Golden Cross Proficiency +1. A sharp hum resonated in his mind, the mental system indicating that his hard work had finally paid off. Levi Snyder. Black Snake Breathing Method Level 2. 4,502 out of 5,000. Golden Cross Level 3. 1 out of 10,000. Special Effect Vibrate. Advanced. Chapter 13. Storm Emperor and the 7 Gods. Levi felt addicted to this newfound power. A true addiction to strength. A weapon in hand offered the capability to fight against a quasi-knight. Wisdom dictated restraint, however, because direct conflict meant blood would be shed. Frostmourne slid smoothly into its scabbard. A full year had passed since the commencement of the ancestral breathing method. Progress tracking indicated that Level 3 remained fully achievable by the end of this calendar year. At that moment, the rank of quasi-knight would belong to him in the truest sense. The final remaining step required condensing the seed of life to officially enter the Brotherhood of True Knights. Personal defense would be guaranteed, granting him entry into the ranks of the powerful elite ruling this world. In the grand scheme of combat mastery, breathing techniques presented a far steeper hill to climb than basic weaponry. A brief, quiet celebration offered a momentary reprieve before the relentless training resumed. The cycle remained repetitive, bordering on monotonous, yet every single occurrence of the +1 sign flashing upon the mental proficiency panel made the absolute exhaustion worthwhile. The bitter months of winter soon gripped the land. 3 long years had slipped away since the Millennium War first erupted between the Emerald Kingdom and the Tuva Empire. Small-scale border conflicts and brutal skirmishes continued to plague both nations. In essence, the mortal kingdoms were not the true combatants. The conflict belonged entirely to rival churches. The Holy Church demanded absolute devotion to the Heavenly Father, whereas the Storm Church bent the knee to the Storm Emperor. Both organizations sought to expand their spiritual and political influence, actively driving territorial expansion across borders, an endeavor proving exceptionally difficult for both sides. 7 massive kingdoms and empires dominated the known world today, and the populace of each realm clung tightly to separate, conflicting beliefs. Various rival factions fought constantly, rendering peace an impossible luxury for anyone. The core purpose driving the churches within these 7 nations remained the aggressive spread of their specific faiths, proving that the evolution of civilization remained inseparable from religion. Meanwhile, a separate struggle for survival unfolded within the dense, snow-covered forests of the Blackwater Valley. Hundreds of mountain wolves formed a silent, predatory circle around a massive, silver-white beast that had just been aggressively roused from its winter hibernation. The creature towered at an upright height of 1.8 meters and measured a full 4 meters in length from snout to tail. This was the undisputed tyrant of the frozen wastes, a dire bear of the north. In full adulthood, these creatures matched the raw physical strength of a trained knight, and the apex specimens among them could easily overpower a high-level warrior. Directly opposite the cornered beast stood the giant silver wolf king, leading the pack. Individually, the wolves ranked far inferior to the apex predator, but massive numerical superiority tipped the scales. Under normal circumstances, even a hungry pack numbering in the hundreds avoided provoking a giant bear. This year, however, winter scarcity forced desperate measures. The forest originally belonged exclusively to the wolf king, until the female bear encroached upon the hunting grounds, actively competing for resources and slaughtering wolves whenever the opportunity arose. Today, while the intruder remained trapped in deep hibernation, the wolf king planned to eliminate the threat once and for all. The bear possessed keen instincts even in deep slumber, detecting the approach and attempting to retreat, but the agile canine predators closed the distance with ease. Defeat would not come without a horrific cost. The bear reared up onto its massive hind legs, appearing to the surrounding wolves like a towering god of fur and claw. Several younger wolves began to back away in terror, prompting the wolf king to unleash a thunderous roar to restore the morale of the pack. The gap closed, and the battle began. Countless mountain wolves pounced simultaneously. Heavy paws slammed downward, swatting the attackers aside. The wolves failing to dodge the retaliatory strikes exploded into piles of blood and bone upon impact. Even a human knight clad in full plate armor would succumb to shattered bones under such crushing momentum. The sheer weight of numbers eventually wore the giant down, and the bear collapsed into the crimson snow after slaughtering a full third of the pack. The wolf king lunged forward, sinking its fangs deep into the throat of the dying titan, while the surviving wolves swarmed the carcass to claim their share of the meat. A final, gurgling roar echoed through the trees, establishing that only one ruler could hold dominion over this territory. The massive carcass promised to sustain the pack for approximately 1 month. The Wolf King remained entirely unaware that inside a hidden den more than 10 miles away, 3 small cubs the size of calves whined in response to their mother's distant, fading cries. The young beasts ran aimlessly through the shadows in a state of sheer panic. Born during the recent spring season, the cubs were less than 1 year old, requiring more than 7 years of growth to achieve full maturity. Though physically large compared to ordinary predators, the young bears possessed absolutely no knowledge of how to hunt live prey. Survival demanded alternative methods, forcing them to sneak toward human settlements under the cover of darkness to scrape for discarded scraps. The 3 cubs trotted in a single file line, stumbling blindly through the snow toward the borders of the Blackwater Valley, unaware of what fate awaited them in the lands below. Living was a difficult thing. Chapter 14. Grimm's Travels and Witch Rollins. The new year arrived, and ever since Baron Wolf and Baron Bill died, evil spirit attacks had been reported from time to time. The church responded by developing holy water, a remedy advertised as highly effective against these malicious entities. Regular consumption, specifically 1 dose every 7 days, promised absolute protection from all supernatural evils. The strategy worked flawlessly. The first 3,000 bottles vanished from the shelves within a single week, accompanied by 0 negative reviews. Levi leaned against his desk, considering the news. The high nobility proved remarkably easy to deceive, though the blame lay more with the absolute, crushing power the church held over their lives. Still, a more pressing question dominated his thoughts. Just how was he supposed to locate a real wizard? Parchment pages rustled as Levi rummaged through the thick volumes in his father's study, searching for any hidden clue. The world had not yet developed proper paper, forcing scholars to rely entirely on heavy scrolls crafted from cured animal skin. He scanned line after line, but ultimately, the search yielded nothing. The heavy oak door swung open. Knight Fred hurried into the room, a wide smile breaking across his weathered face. "Master, I have brought you a birthday present that is far beyond your imagination." Levi looked up, his curiosity piqued by the old warrior's unusual excitement. Heavy iron wheels groaned out in the corridor as Fred signaled his men to push a massive, cloth-covered cage into the center of the study. A thick curtain completely obscured the contents. Fred stepped forward and yanked the veil away, revealing 3 furry, oversized creatures curled tightly into a corner. Bears. Levi stepped closer to the iron bars. Fred chuckled, resting a hand on the cage. "These are no ordinary bears, master. Look closely. These are the cubs of the great northern dire bear." Levi stared at the bundle of fur, stunned by the revelation. How on earth did the guards capture such ferocious beasts? Fred gestured toward the village down the mountain. "Last night, a peasant woman discovered something sneaking through her yard and eating her prized chickens. She screamed for the military patrol, and the boys managed to pin them down. They may be young, but they fought like absolute devils." The cubs possessed 3 distinct coats, 1 solid gray, 1 pure white, and 1 a striking mix of black and white. Fred reached through the bars, gripping the black and white cub firmly by the scruff of its neck. The small beast instantly bared its teeth and flashed its claws, snapping wildly at the knight's gauntlet. Bright yellow chicken feathers still clung to the sticky fur around its snout. The other 2 cubs whimpered from the corner, their dark eyes full of panic for their rowdy sibling. Protruding ribs showed clearly through their coats. The young creatures were strangely skinny. Where is their mother? Levi knelt to match the cubs' blurry vision. A mature dire bear would surely follow her cubs set straight to the castle gates. Fred shook his head, releasing the snapping cub. No need to worry on that account. The tracking party suspects the mother is either dead or abandoned them entirely. Dire bears are supposed to be deep in hibernation right now, so something catastrophic must have occurred up on the peaks. Each of these cubs easily commands a price of 100 gold coins on the open market. The high nobility constantly seek to tame them, operating under the assumption that owning a beast as powerful as a trained knight guarantees their personal safety. Levi scoffed at the vanity of the lords, eliciting another chuckle from his mentor. "I highly suggest we raise these 3 ourselves," Fred added, tapping the iron bars. Levi watched the cubs huddle back together. "All right, install them securely within the castle courtyard. We will assign a few trusted servants to look after their daily needs. The gray one shall be called Gray, the white one is Snow, and this aggressive black and white one is Fatty. We will feed that one the largest portions." The servants arrived to wheel the heavy cage away toward the lower stables. Levi watched them go, calculating the timeline. It would require roughly 7 years for the cubs to reach full physical maturity, and their ultimate usefulness in battle remained entirely unproven. In the end, personal strength offered the only reliable guarantee of survival. As the distant growls and screams of the bears faded down the stone steps, Levi turned back to the old knight. "Fred, during your travels across the continent, have you ever encountered books that speak explicitly of wizards?" Fred smiled, adjusting his sword belt. "You seem remarkably fixated on wizards lately, young master. I actually sent a writer to inquire with the regional book merchants, but the texts you describe treat the subject as mere children's folklore. However, I managed to secure one particular volume from a wandering trader on the road." The knight extended a slim leather book. The faded gold lettering on the cover read, "Grimm's Travels." A traveler named Green had authored the text. Levi retired to his private bedchamber, lighting a fresh candle before opening the cover to read from the very beginning. Green introduced himself as a traveling merchant operating out of the grand city of Storms. The pages contained a collection of bizarre anecdotes and local rumors gathered during his commercial journeys across the kingdoms. One specific entry detailed an encounter with the arcane. In the 847th year of the Holy Calendar, the merchant vessel carrying my cargo ran aground during a cataclysmic tempest. Clinging to a shattered plank of oak, I prayed desperately to the loving Father. Perhaps due to my unwavering piety, survival was granted, and the currents washed my unconscious body onto the shores of an uncharted island. Hunger and thirst racked my frame, yet that isolated land housed magical entities that completely subverted human imagination. The prose grew vivid, describing a three-legged toad bearing a beautifully formed human face upon its back. Next came a swan possessing 6 pairs of majestic, feathered wings, perfectly resembling the seraphim described in the church's holy texts. Green wrote of a massive mushroom that spoke fluent human language, actively feeding pieces of its own fungal flesh to the starving merchant. The final memory recorded before deep sleep claimed him involved a breathtakingly beautiful lady sitting quietly by his side beneath the speaking mushroom. The journal entry blurred slightly toward the end. I possess no recollection of the events that followed. I awakened inside the cramped cabin of a common fishing boat, the crew claiming they rescued me, while I floated unconscious upon a wooden board. Yet I know with absolute certainty that the island was real. Only a true wizard commands the power to forge such strange, magnificent creations. Furthermore, the mysterious mushroom instantly cured the stubborn, chronic diseases that had plagued my body for over a decade, leaving me feeling younger and stronger than ever before. That woman, that mysterious witch, must have saved my life. I spent years searching the waves to offer my gratitude, but the island had vanished completely, and my hair began to turn gray with age. Green's final paragraphs carried a tone of desperate obsession. I eventually abandoned everything to locate that shore again, my family, my friends, my business. The world labels me a madman, but I know what my eyes witnessed. I sold my grand mansion in the Emerald Kingdom to fund further expeditions. Perhaps the 8th voyage will yield the answers I seek. Before I set sail into the dark waters once more, I publish these experiences at my own expense. If I should perish at sea, I pray that the readers of this text will continue the search in my stead. The final line of the chapter stood out clearly on the stained parchment. That speaking mushroom addressed her while I drifted in limbo, and I remember her name as clearly as the day. Rollins. Chapter 15. Levi the Quasi Knight. The City of Storms. That was the birthplace of Baron Thord. What Green described in his notes aligned perfectly with an idealized vision of wizards, strange, powerful, and deeply mysterious. The merchant might have been completely insane, but the waters surrounding the City of Storms remained a tangible lead. Levi memorized the geographical details, then reached for the remaining travel logs stacked on the desk. Page after page yielded nothing but mundane observations. No other author mentioned the arcane, and with no useful clues left inside the parchment, Levi tossed the useless hides into the hearth, watching them burn to ash. If only the internet existed in this world. With the research exhausted, every spare hour belonged to physical training. The end of the month approached, and the breakthrough to the 3rd level of the breathing method was tantalizingly close. The rank of Quasi Knight waited just over the horizon. Regular visits to the courtyard kept Levi informed of the growing beasts. If all 3 survived the harsh winter, 3 powerful mounts would eventually take the place of fragile warhorses. A tailored set of heavy steel plate could be commissioned for each creature. The mental image of riding into a frontline charge atop an armored dire bear brought a surge of genuine excitement. A giant bear was the ultimate mount for a world such as this. 3 guards maintained around-the-clock watch over the enclosure. They provided a steady daily diet of river fish, wolf meat, venison, and fresh goat milk. The handlers tossed in wild greens from time to time to prevent malnutrition. Levi interacted with the cubs daily, using constant familiarity to chip away at their wild instincts. Mammals inevitably formed a lasting psychological attachment to the entities present during their youth. To aid the process, a wandering merchant provided a pair of specialized manuals, an introduction to animal taming in the clown circus, alongside a collection of formal essays written by royal scholars, who spent decades studying the giant bears of the frozen peaks. As the final paragraph of the text was memorized, a sudden chime echoed, and a brand new category manifested upon the internal status display. Levi Snyder. Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 2, 4,899 out of 5,000. Golden Cross, Level 3, 56 out of 10,000. Special Effect, Vibrate, Advanced. Beast Taming, Level 1, 66 out of 1,000. The expansion of the interface left Levi momentarily stunned. The system possessed the capability to log entirely new, practical skills based on theoretical study. The discovery brought immense satisfaction. This functional ability would serve a real purpose in the valley. Seeking to test the limits of the panel, Levi authorized Knight Fred to purchase every scrap of literature regarding animal husbandry and beast training available across the kingdom. The scouts returned weeks later with 3 expensive volumes: Karen's Beast Taming Handbook, Notes of Taming in the Royal Circus, and The Guide to Beast Taming. The acquisition demanded a premium. Books remained a luxury item in this era, but self-improvement required a substantial investment of coin. The sudden obsession left the old instructor deeply perplexed. Knight Fred leaned against the stone archway of the study. "Master, do you intend to abandon your lordship to become a common circus trainer?" Levi closed the newest handbook. "No, Fred. I am simply using proper, systematic methodology to handle the cubs. Those little monsters are far too aggressive. Every time I step near the iron bars, they try to tear my throat out." Knight Fred shrugged, tapping a leather pouch at his hip. "Our funds are dwindling rapidly, young master. The treasury contains exactly 68 gold coins. Levi picked up his training sword. Do not worry. The solution is simple. The taming strategy relied on a universal motivator, high-quality food. No predator on Earth possessed the resolve to reject the scent of slow-roasted venison heavily glazed in wild honey. The cubs maintained a defensive posture whenever Levi entered the enclosure, but they never refused the offering. 7 days later, the black snake breathing method officially crossed the threshold into level 3. An instantaneous surge of raw power flooded Levi's limbs. The baseline respiratory rate accelerated, drastically increasing the oxygen saturation within the bloodstream and pushing physical endurance far beyond normal human limitations. The internal body temperature spiked so intensely that thick white steam drifted off his bare skin into the freezing winter air. The physical baseline of a true Quasi Knight had been achieved. The status display updated immediately. Levi Snyder, Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 3, 1 out of 10,000. A long, heavy breath escaped Levi's lungs. The foundation was secure. The next stage required condensing the internal seed of life to transition into an official Knight of the Realm. Statistics provided a grim reminder. Only 1% of Quasi Knights ever successfully manifested the seed. Levi rotated his shoulders, testing the explosive tension coiled within his muscle fibers. Armor felt completely unnecessary for basic threats. A pack of 5 mountain wolves could be dispatched barehanded with ease. The physical strength matched that of 3 fully grown, athletic men combined. Pulling back the sweat-soaked linen shirt revealed a rock-solid core, an 8-pack etched into flesh that gleamed with a deep bronze luster. A common brigand wielding bare fists or blunt tools could no longer inflict meaningful damage. The ancestral breathing method had elevated the physical vessel to an extraordinary degree, pushing the body to 5 times the fitness level of an ordinary adult, matching the current capabilities of Knight Fred. The ultimate goal of matching Baron Thord, achieving the status of a great knight, with 10 times the physical capacity of a normal human, no longer felt like a distant fantasy. The dream was drawing closer with every single breath. Chapter 16. Secrets of Getting Rich Forging. The year 1005 of the Holy Calendar arrived, bringing the month of germination. A few days had passed since the black snake breathing method reached level 3. During this time, Levi carefully studied every text mentioning wizards and examined the various animal taming manuals that Knight Fred had brought back to the castle. Before long, his understanding of beast mastery improved rapidly. The capacity to sharpen a practical skill simply by absorbing written knowledge proved a welcome surprise. It did not take long for the internal status to shift. Levi Snyder, Beast Taming Level 2, 1 out of 5,000. The advancement did not require an extensive library. The Emerald Kingdom hosted numerous traveling circuses, and each troop possessed unique, practical experiences regarding animal husbandry. Every opened page offered fresh insight into different regional techniques, detailing practices from urban centers to the wildest frontiers of the neighboring realms. Each culture maintained distinct methods for taming beasts. Beyond theoretical study, Levi applied these newly acquired concepts directly to the 3 captive bears, steadily driving his practical proficiency higher. Progress regarding the core breathing method proved far more grueling. Throughout the entire month, the proficiency score increased by only a few hundred points. Achieving the benchmark of 10,000 points under normal training conditions would demand roughly 2 full years of uninterrupted labor. The procurement of the black snake medicine must be placed on the immediate agenda. The realization brought a creeping headache. At present, the liquid currency of the Blackwater Valley amounted to a meager few dozen gold coins. The hundreds of livestock animals scattered across the estate possessed a total market value of no more than 100 gold coins, and those assets could never be sold. They served as the primary source of dairy and meat for the entire garrison. Furthermore, the lingering threat of supernatural entities meant Levi refused to risk fishing in the deep river waters again. A frustrating question remained. How could a remote lord generate wealth quickly? More importantly, how could the unique mechanics of the proficiency panel be leveraged to secure a fortune? Knight Fred entered the solar, his brow furrowed as he spoke in a low murmur. Master Levi, the boy Milan has been asking about his father again. His father is surviving well enough within the ranks of the Wild Boar gang. Levi adjusted his heavy cloak. The man serves as their chief blacksmith now. We will rescue him when the time is right, but our current military situation prevents an immediate raid. A sudden realization struck. Levi gestured for the old instructor to follow, and the 2 men mounted the palace horse, riding directly toward the village at the base of the mountain to find the young blacksmith. More than a year had slipped away since Milan's father was captured by brigands, and the master of the valley had yet to fulfill his promise of a rescue. Levi dismounted outside the dirt workshop, dusting the dark fabric of his cloak as the boy approached. Milan, are you still worrying over your father's safety? Yes, my lord. Milan spoke with extreme caution, lowering his knees toward the muddy ground. Levi extended a hand, firmly hoisting the youth back to his feet. I understand your anxiety, but your father remains highly valuable to the Wild Boar gang, keeping him safe from harm. We simply lack the martial resources to initiate a direct conflict with their encampment. If our armory held 50 full sets of knight armor, I would lead a disciplined force straight into their territory to reclaim him. 50 sets. Milan trembled, his eyes wide. Within this war-torn world, securing 50 complete suits of steel plate represented a monumental obstacle. Even wealthy earls possessing far greater territories struggled to finance such an arsenal. Furthermore, Milan's limited experience at the anvil was insufficient for crafting complex armor. Only his captive father possessed the specialized knowledge required for such work, and even with a fully equipped forge, the older man could produce only 2 complete suits per year. 50 sets seemed utterly impossible. Do not despair, I intend to find a solution. Levi offered a calm smile. Starting tomorrow morning, you will relocate your tools into the castle courtyard. Your new duty is to instruct me in the techniques of forging and smelting raw ore. The boy blinked in confusion. My lord, how could a noble burden himself with such filthy, common labor? Levi chose not to explain, offering only a quiet nod. Milan led the way into the cramped smithy, demonstrating the basic hammer strokes while his master observed every movement of the glowing iron. Levi claimed the solitary instructional ledger resting on the blacksmith's workbench, exiting the shop alongside Nightfred. Are you truly planning to spend your days pounding hot iron? Nightfred chuckled, his tone teasing as they walked back to the horse. Yes, in this fractured era, the majority of noble territories relied on isolated, self-sufficient agricultural economies sustained by illiterate smallholders. Agriculture drove the region's economy, meaning the rocky soil of the Blackwater Valley could never hope to compete with the fertile lowlands. However, the manufacturing of ironware offered incredible financial prospects, spanning from essential farming implements to high-grade weapons and military armor. As a commander responsible for defensive fortifications, the young lord understood the massive premium placed on quality weaponry. If this enterprise succeeded, the treasury would never run short of gold. Confidence stemmed from the internal display, where a brand new category had already manifested. Levi Snyder, forging level 1, 1 out of 1,000. For the longest time, traditional aristocratic conditioning had limited Levi's perspective. In this society, all manual labor fell strictly to common servants, causing him to overlook the possibility of using the proficiency panel to master practical crafts. Now, gripped by a severe shortage of funds and a total lack of skilled craftsmen, necessity forced a change in strategy. Watching Milan work at the hearth had successfully unlocked the skill. So long as a discipline could be registered by the interface, mastery became an absolute certainty. Over the following week, laborers relocated the essential blacksmithing equipment up into the castle proper. Levi ordered the construction of a customized blast furnace within the courtyard, allowing him to practice metallurgy during his brief moments of downtime. The arrangement left Milan deeply flattered. The young artisan never anticipated that the ruling lord would willingly act as his apprentice, interpreting the gesture as a profound connection to the common people. In truth, Levi focused entirely on self-improvement, knowing he must grow stronger to survive. Within a single month of consistent practice, the forging skill ascended to level 2. The advancement moved far faster than his initial combat training, proving significantly less physically taxing than the breathing exercises. A common phrase from his past life echoed in his memory, suggesting that if an individual focused entirely on a single craft for 1,000 hours, they could easily achieve competence. Focused time remained the ultimate instructor, and human capability often surpassed conventional expectations. When combined with the absolute certainty of the proficiency panel, every single ounce of labor yielded immediate, measurable growth. 3 months later, a heavy steel blade rested on the workbench. Levi had successfully hammered out a high-quality arming sword, matching the exceptional craftsmanship of the weapon Milan had gifted him during their first meeting. Naturally, such medieval implements would be considered deeply flawed when compared to modern industrial manufacturing. The local techniques lacked the capacity to produce ultra-pure, high-grade iron ore. The proficiency panel could elevate human technique, but it possessed no magical power to alter the molecular quality of the raw stone. Even so, the rapid progress left Milan staring in absolute wonder, realizing his noble master had completely closed the gap in skill within a fraction of a lifetime. Chapter 17. Level 3 Beast Taming, Heart of the Wild. Time flies like an arrow, and the sun and the moon shuffle against one another like a shuttle. Practicing the ancestral breathing method, refining sword skills, hammering iron at the anvil, reading through faded manuscripts, and looking after the growing bears, this mundane cycle repeated on and on. The days of cultivation went by quickly. Out on the frozen training ground, Levi and Nightfred dashed around, iron weapons clashing as they competed against each other. Nightfred used only one hand, and even then, the heavy, sweeping attacks were difficult for Levi to parry. In the end, a sharp counterstrike set Levi back, defeated. Not bad, Nightfred said, lowering his blade with a nod. Last year, you could only last a minute. This year, you lasted 5. Enough with the flattery, Levi chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow. He fully knew Nightfred did not use even a fraction of his true strength. Levi was absolutely no match for the veteran strength of a true knight. After the training session ended, he retired to the side, while Nightfred continued to drill the military recruits in the snow. Levi sat down on a wooden bench and opened the internal status display. Levi Snyder, Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 3, 3,666 out of 10,000. Golden Cross, Level 3, 4,399 out of 10,000. Special Effect, Vibrate, Advanced. Beast Taming, Level 3, Maximum. Special Effect, Heart of the Wild. Forging, Level 3, 1,314 out of 10,000. Special Effect, High Quality Forging. In the past year, great progress had been achieved across 4 major skills. The slowest and most grueling discipline was undoubtedly the black snake breathing method. In 1 full year, the energy reserves had only filled 3,000 points of the proficiency bar. Without the aid of the specialized medicine, it would take at least 2 more years to reach the 4th level. This speed was admirable by standard measures, but it was not enough for Levi. This world was far too dangerous. Without sufficient strength, a person could only humble themselves and hide in the background. The progression of the Golden Cross style moved much faster. After another year of diligent practice, mastering the power of Ripple would be well within reach. At that point, even as a Quasi-Knight, Levi would possess the capability to fight on equal terms against a warrior of Knight Fred's caliber. Beast taming had reached its absolute limit. Having read almost every single book on animal taming available on the market, Levi possessed the absolute confidence of a master. A unique special effect had manifested upon the interface the moment the skill reached its peak. Heart of the Wild. You can gauge the intentions of most beasts by observing their body language and sounds. You can also use your own body language to communicate with beasts perfectly. The practical impact of this milestone was immediate. The 3 cubs no longer showed any apprehension toward Levi. They treated him like family, welcoming him into the enclosure with low, rumbling greetings. This deep connection made it possible to perceive the raw thoughts of the beasts, bringing a heartwarming warmth to the cold castle yard. Under such specialized care, the 3 cubs thrived. Their physical sizes underwent earth-shaking changes within the span of a single year. They now measured nearly 2 meters in length and weighed over 300 kilograms. An adult man could no longer hope to subdue them without a weapon. Even a single, firm slap from a heavy paw could leave an ordinary human crippled. And the creatures were still less than 2 years old. Meanwhile, the forging skill had also ascended to the 3rd level, unlocking its own unique property. High-quality goods. Whatever your craft, it is automatically considered a high-quality good. With this effect active, the long-term plans to enrich the territory were set in motion. Over the past year, the furnace had produced a total of 100 long swords. 50 of these weapons were high-quality blades, matching the finest steel in the region, and they were used to arm the castle garrison. Before hitting level 3, high-quality blades only occurred by chance, but now, every single weapon hammered from the forge possessed superior craftsmanship. Even the work of Milan's father, Toby, would be far inferior to Levi's current output. Levi commanded the physical strength and speed of a trained knight, whereas Toby worked with the limitations of an ordinary man. However, becoming a forging master, in the true sense of the word, required more than shaping longswords. Knight armor represented the highest achievement of a blacksmith, the lifelong pursuit of every master artisan. At present, iron remained scarce within the valley. Because iron ore was a vital strategic resource, neighboring lords, who controlled the mountains, rarely commenced trade with raw metal. To expand production, Levi needed to sell his current stock of swords and begin searching for hidden iron veins in the rugged peaks behind his own territory. However, with the mountains currently buried under a heavy blanket of winter snow, the exploration had to remain dormant until next spring. Levi stopped forging for a while, dedicating his remaining energy entirely to breathing exercises and advanced swordsmanship. The month of winter soon arrived, locking the valley in ice. While busy practicing the rhythmic patterns of his breathing method in his chambers, a dreadful howling of wolves echoed from the ridge behind the castle, cutting through the silence. The cries sounded dangerously close to the stone walls. Before Levi could step outside to investigate, Knight Fred hurried into the solar, his hand resting on his sword hilt. Master Levi, our territory is under attack by a pack of wolves. There are about 100 of them, and much of our livestock has already perished. I shall lead a detachment of men to deal with them immediately. 100, Levi said, his expression tightening as he stood up. A few lone wolves infiltrating the valley was normal, but a coordinated pack of 100 beasts was unheard of. They buckled on their heavy plate armor, mounted their horses, and rode out into the freezing wind toward the site of the attack. Levi rode at the head of the column, a fully advanced Quasi-Knight, who had mastered the destructive power of Vibrate. Behind him rode a disciplined garrison armed with high-quality steel swords, led by a veteran warrior. There was no way these wild beasts would not be subdued. Chapter 18. The wolf is coming. They are coming. Help us. The wolves. Cries of terror echoed across Blackwater Valley. An emaciated mountain wolf crept around the sheep pens behind a thatched cottage. The gentle, harmless livestock stood no chance against the vicious, ravenous predator. Charge. The garrison soldiers stomped into the fray, brandishing long swords and donning simple armor woven with rattan. Wooden shields raised, they rushed forward to defend the townspeople's livestock, but a few froze instantly in the snow. Sam, a new recruit who had just joined the military this year, trembled where he stood. Although his performance during drills ranked the best among the entire unit, his muscles refused to move. The terrifying mountain wolf stared straight into his soul, and the sheer sense of oppression overpowered his senses. Sam, get yourself together. An older soldier shouted the command. Captain, my legs will not work. Sam cried out, his trousers already wet from absolute fear. The primal terror washed over him, an ancient panic passed down from generation to generation, from the dawn of civilization. The wolf eyed the boy, slowly licking its snout. The pack had not eaten for a full month, and the beast no longer feared the iron tools or the raging fires of mankind. Hunger drove its mind, focused entirely on tearing flesh. Mother, Sam screamed, closing his eyes tight as the predator lunged. A sharp arrow pierced the winter sky, nailing the mountain wolf through the skull with lightning speed. The beast whimpered, collapsing hard onto the frozen earth, dead before it understood what had occurred. Sam remained in a daze, wondering if he had crossed over into the afterlife. A powerful hand gripped his shoulder, offering a firm, reassuring squeeze. Do not give up. Stand up and hold the sword proudly in your hands. Fight with me. Levi's voice boomed with encouragement. The young lord leapt past the shaking recruit, his arm blurring as it distorted the surrounding air. A single, sweeping slash severed the head of a second mountain wolf, splattering hot crimson blood across Levi's face. Golden Cross Proficiency +3. Levi licked the copper-tasting droplets from the corner of his mouth, instantly drawing his bowstring back to his ear. The arrow flew true, piercing a wolf that was devouring the entrails of a cow 50 meters away. Sam. Nightfred stepped into view, his voice calm yet commanding. No matter how sharp the wolves' teeth are, they are no match for the steel in your hand. Fight for your land. The young recruit wiped away his tears, watching his lord move through the chaos, hacking down beasts without a hint of hesitation. Levi was 5 years younger than him, yet he fought like a demon. The shame burned away the paralysis, and Sam dashed forward into the thick of the battle. Levi fought like a man drowning in bloodlust, prompting Nightfred to follow closely at his flank. A large-scale pack of this size always possessed an alpha, a mastermind guiding the slaughter from the shadows. The veteran knight scanned the tree line, certain the leader lurked nearby, observing the human defenses. A deep, resonant howl echoed down from the mountain ridge. A silver wolf the size of a polar bear glared coldly at the clearing. The alpha possessed an uncanny intelligence, recognizing that the two armored men presented a massive threat to the pack. If those two were not eliminated, the losses to the family would far exceed the casualties suffered during the historic clash with the great northern dire bear. Furthermore, the unmistakable scent of bear cubs clung to the younger human's armor. The Wolf King made its decision. It would destroy these two humans, no matter the cost. The massive beast darted down the slope, moving with a terrifying velocity that put a cheetah to shame. At the foot of the mountain, the carcasses of fallen wolves piled high in the snow, yet the remaining pack members refused to retreat, swarming Levi from all sides. Nightfred guarded the young lord's flank with absolute diligence. Facing the frantic beasts, the veteran unleashed his terrifying strength, his long sword moving like an impenetrable wall of steel. Every animal that crossed the threshold was instantly beheaded. Fred's ancestral breathing technique was active. In the freezing winter air, thick white smoke billowed from the knight's pores, and his eyes burned with a fierce, unnatural flame. Master, something massive approaches. I will face it. You must protect yourself. Nightfred delivered the cold command, gesturing for 5 veteran guards to form a protective ring around the heir. Levi nodded, tracking a white blur rushing through the distant drifts. The massive silver figure crashed through a line of 3 militiamen, throwing 2 of them high into the air, and crushing the third into broken pieces under its paws. The Wolf King. Levi muttered the realization. He raised his bow, pulling the heavy string to its absolute limit, and releasing a volley toward the oncoming monster. Though the young lord possessed absolute confidence in his marksmanship, the Wolf King simply swiped the arrows out of the air with a single paw, never even breaking its stride. Nightfred. Levi yelled, his voice carrying above the din of battle. Do not underestimate this beast. Chapter 19. Killing the Wolves. Nightfred sped straight toward the white figure pouncing across the battlefield. The Wolf King leapt a distance of more than 10 meters, slashing its heavy claws down toward the veteran warrior. Fred rolled over to the side, kicking up a flurry of white powder, and thrust his steel sword toward the animal's exposed abdomen. The Wolf King twisted its massive torso midair, dodging the blade like a dexterous cat. Fred recovered his footing, his heart pounding against his ribs. Decades of warfare had never brought a mountain wolf like this across his path. Clang! Razor-sharp claws collided with the long sword. The Wolf King yelped, springing backward into the drifts. The creature felt the strong force vibrating from Fred's steel, and recognized that it could not take a direct hit from that weapon under any circumstances. The Alpha shifted its tactics, dodging every single one of the knight's heavy attacks, intentionally consuming the human's physical strength. Fred saw through the primal strategy, and stood perfectly still, lowering his center of gravity, and staring the beast down. Levi watched the desperate duel helplessly from a distance. With his current strength, stepping into that circle would only make him a bother to his mentor. He turned away, redirecting his focus toward the ordinary mountain wolves swarming the village. Levi's bow functioned like the hand of death itself. Wherever his gaze locked, a mountain wolf died. Within minutes, his fingers scraped against the bottom of an empty quiver. He had used up all his arrows. Levi unsheathed his high-quality arming sword, and scanned the immediate area. The heavy custom plate armor guaranteed his personal safety even if a few predators managed to surround him, but his men enjoyed no such protection. The flimsy rattan armor worn by the militia could not defend against the terrifying, crushing bite of a wild mountain wolf. Several of his guards lay bleeding in the snow, and a few wolves had already begun feasting on the fresh corpses of the fallen. A hot wave of rage surged through Levi's chest, shaking his limbs. He threw himself into the pack, hacking at the gray hides in a blind fury. Golden Cross Proficiency +3. Golden Cross Proficiency +2. Golden Cross Proficiency +4. Thick wolf blood quickly stained every crevice of his steel armor. To the high nobility of the continent, these serfs were mere pawns, but to Levi, they were family. A bitter sense of powerlessness settled in his throat, emphasizing just how worthless a human life remained in this brutal world. I need to become stronger. Levi roared, the sound tearing from his throat, but a sudden, violent pang in his stomach cut the shout short. The intense exertion of the level 3 breathing method was taking a massive toll on his metabolism, draining his energy reserves in seconds. Damn it, Levi muttered, his vision blurring slightly from sudden exhaustion. Do you have anything to eat? The nearest guards trembled, taken aback by their lord's terrifying bloodlust. No, my lord. We will run to the storehouse and get you something to eat right away. No need, Levi replied, his voice flat. He reached down, tore the hind leg off a freshly killed mountain wolf, and began gnawing fiercely on the raw, steaming meat. The fuel hit his system, and the frantic instinct to slip into a mad frenzy began to recede. He knew the danger of becoming a mad knight. If he toyed with that delicate mental balance, his sanity might shatter, leaving him unable to ever return. Cold clarity washed back into his mind, though the realization remained that he looked no different from the hungry predators he was fighting. By the time the frenzy ended, the momentum of the battle had shifted. The remaining mountain wolves, numbering about 60, turned and fled back into the safety of the peaks without waiting for their alpha. Levi stood among the carnage, tallying the butcher's bill. The defense had cost him 7 disciplined soldiers, 12 serfs, 20 valuable cows, and 30 sheep. For a remote territory like the Blackwater Valley, this loss was devastating. I need to cleanse this mountain of beasts the moment I become a full knight, Levi thought, wiping a smear of grease from his chin. I cannot let them threaten my people again. A sudden wave of nostalgia for his past life hit him. It was a pity firearms did not exist in this world. If he had a rifle, he could use the proficiency panel to maximize his marksmanship, and even the terrifying Wolf King would drop dead from a single shot across the valley. Meanwhile, the duel between the Alpha and Knight Fred reached its climax. The Wolf King saw the remnants of its pack perishing and faltering, its attention wavering for a fraction of a second. Fred seized the opening, delivering a low, sweeping slash that bit deep into the animal's hind leg. The Wolf King yelped, rolling across the crimson floor before scrambling up on 3 legs. It limped rapidly toward the thick brush, disappearing into the mountains, and leaving Fred standing in the deep drifts. Damn it, Fred cursed, slamming his pommel against his thigh. It got away. No worries, Levi said, walking up to the older man's side. Let me take the blood it left behind and give the scent to my bears. The Wolf King cannot escape us now. Chapter 20. Death of the Wolf King. The land was stained with blood and corpses. Levi slid Frostmorn into its scabbard, his face heavy with emotion. Bury the dead well, Levi ordered, turning to his butler. Send the wounded to George. Collect the beef, mutton, and wolf meat, and sell the wolf skins to the fur traders. Yes, my lord, Alfred replied. The old butler shook from the experience. He stared at his teenage master, shocked by how easily the boy had subdued the wolves. The display brought back memories of his former master, Baron Thord. Before long, Levi and Knight Fred returned to the castle courtyard. Fred extended his weapon toward the iron enclosure. Let these bears smell the Wolf King's blood on the blade. Snow, Gray, Fatty, come here, Levi called out. The 3 bears bounded over immediately. Feeding the beasts required a small fortune, as each youngster consumed at least 10 kilograms of meat per day. Once they reached full maturity, their collective appetite would easily demand nearly 100 kilograms of meat every single day. The bears rushed toward Levi, rearing up on their hind legs to press their massive chests against him in a rough hug. They turned their snouts toward Knight Fred's sword, sniffing deeply at the dark copper stains on the steel. A full year of diligent training allowed Levi to perceive their instinctual thoughts. The moment the scent hit their nostrils, the bears grew wildly agitated, low rumbles vibrating in their chests. Levi interpreted the raw emotion. You are telling me this wolf killed your mother, Levi whispered. The 3 bears growled in unison, baring their teeth. Take me to him, Levi said, adjusting his cloak. We shall avenge your mother and my people today. I left a deep cut in the Wolf King's leg, Knight Fred added, wiping a stray drop of blood from his armor. He cannot have traveled far. Bring 10 of your strongest men, Levi ordered. We are going into the mountains. The hunting party marched out, following the 3 bears deep into the rugged peaks. The Wolf King had bled heavily along the trail, making it simple for the bears to track the scent through the snow. The Wolf King possessed an incredible, cunning intelligence. The bears led the men through dense, twisting forests where the tracks looped in confusing circles and sharp turns, intentional traps designed to deceive anyone who followed. The party hit a dead end several times, the trail vanishing into the rocks. Levi relied on his own growing hunting proficiency to correct the course, guiding the bears and the soldiers back onto the true path. Before long, they discovered the entrance to the Wolf King's den. The massive Wolf King stood perched upon a flat boulder, its jaws clamped onto the carcass of a smaller mountain wolf. The beast was devouring its own kind. Sensing the human presence, the alpha stopped chewing and let out a low whine. Dozens of remaining mountain wolves emerged from the shadows, gathering protectively around their leader. The Wolf King's eyes burned blood red, glaring directly at the invaders. Its gaze lingered on the 3 bears. The creature seemed to recognize that the humans had taken in the cubs of its fallen rival. You are a majestic creature, Levi said, stepping forward. It is a shame you die today. Levi drew his bowstring and released an arrow. A loyal mountain wolf swiftly leapt in front of the alpha, taking the shaft through the chest and dying instantly. The Wolf King never broke eye contact, its stare fixed entirely on the young lord. Levi swallowed hard. A strange sensation washed over him, as if he were facing a calculating human adversary rather than a wild beast. With a single, thunderous howl from the king, the pack rushed forward. Knight Fred, pin down the Wolf King, Levi shouted, drawing his sword. I shall deal with the rest. Fred charged into the fray. The Wolf King attempted to limp away into the brush, but the lingering effects of Fred's internal ripple technique had already shattered its bone structure, preventing the limb from healing. A fierce skirmish erupted. Levi and his men massacred the remaining pack, suffering only 4 minor injuries among the ranks. This time, the guards had brought an ample supply of arrows. The 3 bears joined the fight, displaying the terrifying, raw strength inherent to the northern dire bears as they swatted attackers into the snow. The Wolf King finally collapsed, lying limp on the frozen ground. In its crippled state, it stood no chance against a true knight. Fred stood over the defeated tyrant, raising his heavy blade. The air around the steel appeared to warp and distort. In that fleeting trance, Levi saw the atmosphere ripple like water. The sword fell, and the Wolf King's massive head rolled onto the packed ice. Even in death, the unblinking eyes seemed to stare directly into Levi's soul. "Stop looking at me," Levi muttered, kicking the severed head into a drift. "Skin the beast. This fur is worth at least 5 gold coins. Tie the remaining carcasses to the sledges and pull them down the mountain." Levi delivered order after order to the busy soldiers. As the men began clearing the clearing, Fatty ran up to the young lord, let out a low growl, and affectionately rubbed his massive head against Levi's shoulder. Levi understood the gesture immediately. While exploring the dark recesses of the Wolf King's lair, the bear had uncovered a hidden alcove containing a strange human skeleton. Chapter 21. Excellent quality. Frost Giant's breathing method. Levi dismissed the discovery, assuming the bones belonged to one of the many victims the Wolf King had preyed upon over the years. The cave was shallow, and most of the scattered remains belonged to ordinary humans, though several skeletons were strangely small, like children. This explained why so many villagers disappeared whenever they ventured too far into the rugged peaks. Nearby, the 3 bears surrounded a complete, intact set of bones, sniffing at the calcified remains with curiosity. Levi stepped closer to the skeleton, estimating its height at more than 3 meters. Unlike the other victims whose ribs and limbs lay scattered across the stone floor, this frame remained perfectly preserved. The skeleton leaned back against the damp cave wall, both hands resting together in a posture that suggested it once held a massive sword. It exuded a kingly aura, majestic yet terrifying, even in death. "This skeleton measures 3 meters tall," Levi muttered to himself, stepping back. Just how large was this person when they were alive? He considered the scale for a moment, realizing that extreme heights were not entirely unusual in this world. At 14 years old, Levi already stood 1.8 meters tall. Once his final growth spurt arrived, he would easily reach 2 meters. There was a high probability that this massive frame had belonged to a legendary knight. It seemed the Wolf King had treasured this skeleton, keeping it hidden away in the dark out of fear. A quaint iron ring caught Levi's attention, resting on the skeleton's right ring finger. The metal bore an engraving that read, "Melon." Levi kept his hand near his sword hilt, remaining on guard for fear that the skeleton might transform into a malicious, evil spirit. At the same time, a surge of anticipation hit him, hoping to find something of immense value hidden among the bones. Unfortunately, his search yielded nothing else. The mysterious knight had left behind nothing but the ring. Knight Fred's broad shadow loomed at the cave entrance. The veteran warrior walked inside, his eyes immediately locking onto the giant frame. "This must be the skeleton of a knight," Fred said, his voice dropping to a respectful murmur. "The majesty still clings to these bones. He must have been an exceptionally powerful warrior, a legend even among great knights." The old instructor shuffled around the perimeter of the cave, sighing as he examined the dirt. "Someone must have stolen his armor and his sword long ago." "Are the skeletons of great knights valuable on the market?" Levi asked abruptly. Knight Fred chuckled dryly, seeing through the young lord's financial desperation. "You cannot sell human remains like these. The common people fear the dead, and the church would declare it a sin." Levi nodded, and Fred continued, pacing the stone floor. "However, our late baron kept historical records regarding the Melon family, a lineage often referred to as the Giants. Their family emblem is the Frost Giant, and as their name implies, they cultivate warriors of immense size. The church broke their power and destroyed their lineage 800 years ago, labeling their physical nature as a form of blasphemy. It is highly possible this giant fellow was a surviving knight of the Melon family line." "That makes sense," Levi said, turning the theory over in his mind. "His ring is engraved with the name Melon, so the connection is precise. If his people were exiled 800 years ago, no, that timeline does not fit. The Blackwater Valley was only occupied by my family 200 years ago. He must have escaped the persecution of the Holy Knights," Fred noted, "and fled deep into these mountains, living in absolute isolation and fear until the day his strength finally failed him. Then he must have left something behind," Levi stated, turning back to the dark corners to search the cave with meticulous care. Once again, the effort proved entirely in vain. The rocky crevices were bare. A heavy sigh escaped Levi as he turned to leave the cavern, but Fatty refused to follow. The large black and white bear continued to sniff at the frozen earth directly beside the knight's feet. Fatty's short tail wagged excitedly as his heavy paws began to tear into the dirt, and his brothers, Snow and Gray, quickly joined the excavation. Curiosity pulled Levi back. He peeked over the thick shoulders of the bears to see what had caught their attention. Knight Fred simply smiled, stepping outside the cavern entrance to maintain a watchful guard over the perimeter. Soon, the sharp claws of the bears struck something solid and metallic. Levi's eyes shone brightly in the dim light. A small iron box lay quietly in the freshly dug pit. Interesting, Levi muttered. He patted the heavy heads of the three bears, rewarding their efforts with a few pieces of dried venison. It was deeply satisfying to see their tracking and digging instincts developing so rapidly. Rather than risk opening the prize himself, he ordered a few militiamen to carry the heavy container outside, taking precautions in case the ancient box was rigged with a mechanical trap. From a safe distance up on a low rocky ledge, Levi watched his men approach the object. He gave the command to pry open the rusted lid. "What is inside?" Levi hollered down to the clearing. "My lord," a soldier yelled back, his voice strained with confusion. "There seems to be a set of armor inside, and, oh heavens, there are some gold coins. Wait, no, they are gone." The man's explanation cut off abruptly, but Levi was already moving. He scrambled down the rocky slope the moment the phrase "a set of armor" reached his ears. The ancient knight must have fled into the mountains carrying his family's most sacred treasures. "Help, it is attacking us." A pair of terrified soldiers sprinted past Levi, their weapons abandoned in the snow. Levi looked up, his stride halting. A suit of empty steel plate armor stood erect in the clearing. The iron gauntlets moved with uncanny precision, wielding a heavy long sword through the air despite having no physical body inside the frame. "I will handle this," Knight Fred shouted, drawing his blade from its sheath with a harsh metallic ring. The veteran dashed forward, his steel clashing against the autonomous suit of armor. The ensuing combat was strangely intense, the empty shell moving with the fluid aggression of a living master. Levi stood frozen on the path, watching the duel unfold. A chilling thought took root. An evil spirit must have possessed the metal framework. There was no conventional explanation for how a hollow suit of steel could move and strike as if a flesh and blood warrior occupied the plates. Levi's gaze locked onto the chest plate of the moving armor. The steel bore an intricate, engraved pattern depicting a massive frost giant standing proudly amid a blizzard. Directly above the crest, the metal displayed the name Melon. An idea flashed through his mind. Levi turned on his heel, darting back into the darkness of the cave. He approached the 3-meter skeleton and yanked the iron ring off the calcified finger. Holding the band up to the faint light of the entrance, he inspected the inner band. A tiny string of ancient text was etched into the metal. Customized magic armor for the frost giants, produced by the witch Gulveig. Chapter 22. Saints' Remains and the Seven Knights of the Sky. The moment Levi yanked the iron ring off the calcified bone, the animated suit of steel plates collapsed into the snow, leaving nothing but a pile of lifeless armor. Knight Fred lowered his long sword, a heavy breath escaping his lungs. Even a veteran warrior possessed no formal training for subduing an undead foe. Was that truly an evil spirit? One of the militiamen stepped forward, his eyes wide. "An evil spirit, broken by our mentor, Knight Fred. O merciful father, destroy these vicious monsters and save our souls." Knight Fred remained silent amidst the sudden cheers and chants of the guards behind him. His experience whispered that the mechanical opponent was not a displaced soul, yet no better explanation existed in his tactical vocabulary. Levi trotted back across the clearing, a childish joy brightening his face as he skipped through the drifts. The long-sought answer regarding the arcane lay directly behind his own fortress walls. Absolute certainty settled in his mind. Wizards and witches truly existed in this world. The ancient ring dated back 800 years, leaving the survival of the witch Gulveig completely up to speculation. Witch Rollins, witch Gulveig. The historical records consistently favored one gender. Levi wondered if every single practitioner of the arcane arts across the continent was female. Fiddling with the iron band, a darker realization surfaced. This very armor likely caused the destruction of the Mellon family line, as associating with the historical enemies of the church constituted ultimate blasphemy for a noble house. The discovery recalled a religious fable from the Codex of Creation, a text compiled by the third pope of the Holy Church. The loving Father who art in heaven selflessly bestowed his 7 most loyal disciples to share and feast upon the remains of his own saint in the mortal world. He who feasts on the legs shall be blessed with blinding speed. He who quaffs on the ribs shall be bestowed with titanic endurance. He who devours the heart shall be given a divine spirit. He who chews on the arms shall be granted godlike power. He who gnaws on the bones shall be an impenetrable fortress. He who gnaws on the brains shall be omniscient. These 7 disciples received the titles of the 7 Knights of the Sky, sharing the divine power of the martyr. The saint retained the remaining energy within his physical frame, creating a relic known as the Holy Legacy. The loving Father loves the world more than himself, and the world should love him like a parent. The loving Father feeds his children with the flesh and blood of saints, and knights should lead by example, remaining loyal, practicing his will, and spreading his glory across the continent. This introductory chapter, known as Genesis, formed the bedrock of church doctrine. While the spiritual legitimacy remained unconfirmed, an unauthorized commentary by a secular scholar preserved an alternative perspective omitted from the official Orthodox text. Among the 7 Knights of the Sky, the disciple who gained omniscience harbored grand ambitions. He and his descendants used their superior wisdom to challenge the authority of the heavens, attempting to seize the fundamental essence of divinity using mortal vessels. This profound arrogance sparked the immediate wrath of the gods. Many years later, celestial entities descended upon the mortal planes to suppress the blasphemous line. The rogue knights had successfully tapped into the inherent elemental magic of the world, manipulating earth, fire, luck, light, darkness, thunder, and lightning. Their most terrifying achievement involved altering the cycle of life and death. The ensuing conflict fractured the continent, leading to the creation of the 7 kingdoms. Though the celestial forces suffered catastrophic losses, they ultimately prevailed, rendering the descendants of wisdom extinct. The primeval ancestor of all modern magic users, the original thief of the loving father's wisdom, bore the name Sauron. An old village pastor once shared that legend, and the physical evidence in the snow made the tale far easier to believe. Wizards still walked the world, hiding their operations from the common eye. Levi evaluated the scattered puzzle pieces, blending myths, ancient history, and scientific journals. Disregarding the individual exaggerations, a core truth bound the accounts together. This enchanted armor served as undeniable proof. If these hidden practitioners possessed such power, then the gods of the church were a tangible threat as well, explaining why the magical factions chose to remain in the shadows. Levi halted his stride, staring at the ring. The question of whether to pursue the path of a wizard remained entirely unanswered, a dilemma only time could resolve. The young lord ordered his men to pack the inert steel plates into a storage crate, while he turned the metal band over in his palm. The exact connection between the ring and the movement of the armor required controlled testing back at the fortress. Laborers rolled heavy boulders across the cave entrance, sealing the tomb. The ancient remains of the great knight vanished into absolute darkness once more. "Do not speak a word of this encounter to the villagers," Levi announced, turning a cold gaze upon the garrison. "Tales of evil spirits will only spread unnecessary panic through the valley." The church maintained a ruthless policy toward heresy, demanding extreme caution during any future arcane research. Families as influential as the Melons had fallen before the blades of the Holy Knights, yet history suggested the ultimate downfall of the priesthood would eventually come from within their own ranks. Chapter 23. Mirror. Back in his territory, Levi reaped the rewards of the Wolf King hunt. The battle left him with a total of 108 mountain wolf corpses. One piece of wolf fur was worth about 10 silver coins, and 1 gold coin was worth 100 silver coins. In short, with these 108 mountain wolf corpses, he could get 10 gold coins, which was equivalent to 1 or 2 months of income from his territory. As for the meat, Levi gave some as condolences to the family members of those who perished in battle, and stored the rest in the castle. Blackwater Valley was like a large, natural refrigerator during the winter, so the food would not spoil. When the weather turned warmer, he planned to turn the meat into bacon. Besides, his pet bears were expensive to feed and definitely not something a weak baron could afford. This stash of meat solved his urgent need. Of course, the value of these mountain wolves was nothing compared to the contents of the iron box from the cave. In that iron box lay a hidden stash of gold coins. Levi counted them and found a total of 327 gold coins. Moreover, since these gold coins were minted 800 years ago, they would surely be worth more than the price of current gold coins. In this world, many lords and barons held their own right to mint coins. For convenience, the Emerald Kingdom established a unified coinage standard. With this windfall, Levi could buy 5 bottles of ambergris, which would be enough for him to become a knight in an instant. Despite this stroke of fortune, he decided to continue to rely on forging as his main source of income. After all, he needed a stable source of revenue. No one could count on the blessings of the loving father to fall from the sky. Of course, what Levi liked the most was the set of armor. He assumed this was a set of magic armor since it was crafted by a witch. After days of research, he found some intricate mechanisms within the plates. On the inside of the metal, strange patterns marked the surface, likely magic circles or runes of the witch. Thankfully, Witch Gulveig had thoughtfully engraved the instructions for using the armor within a manual that was stuck to the metal. Fortunately, the characters used by the witch were no different from the current language. Soon, Levi knew how to use this armor. "This is a custom-made armor, forged by yours truly, Miss Gulveig. Only those with the blood of the Melon family, or users who have mastered the Frost Giant's breathing method, may use this armor. This armor is made of mithril, and the following spells are embedded in it. Ring Trick, Automatic Assembly. Once the owner casts this spell, the armor automatically assembles around the body and adapts to the size of the wearer. This does not consume an ether stone, but it needs to tap into the ether itself to cool down for a day. Ring Trick, Mirror. Once the owner casts this spell while having the armor equipped, perform a combat skill once, and the armor will automatically store this combat skill. This can be used to protect the owner when incapacitated, but the actual effect will be weaker than that of the owner's own combat prowess. The cooldown is 7 days. Ring Spell, Sigh of a Frost Giant. This spell can only be used by the blood of the Melon family, or a user of the Frost Giant's breathing method. Once this spell is cast, rapidly reduce the surrounding temperature and freeze your enemies. The cooldown is 30 days, but if you use an ether stone, there is no cooldown. Once this armor is sold, it cannot be refunded. This is a Gulveig boutique exclusive and is not sold elsewhere. After reading the manual, Levi felt a complicated mix of emotions. On one hand, he could see the tip of the iceberg of the wizarding world, and it excited him. On the other hand, he could not use this armor. "This ring is just a switch," Levi muttered, toying with the iron band. "The real key is the blood of the Melon family." The Great Knight must have made a deal with the witch, going to great lengths to flee with the armor and hiding it deep underground. Perhaps he was looking forward to a Melon resurgence. If other people were to get their hands on this, it was useless. Only those with Melon blood could activate the properties. Levi fiddled with the metal, but the heavy suit refused to budge for him. As for the Frost Giant's breathing method, he hit a complete dead end. breathing methods and techniques were strictly tied to bloodlines. If he wanted to obtain the blood of the Melon family, and somehow infuse their essence into his own, it would be impossible. They were already extinct. Damn it, Levi cursed out loud, his voice echoing in the empty room. What is the point of this if I cannot use it? The gray interface of the proficiency panel floated before his eyes, sparking a sudden thought. Could I practice their breathing method this way? If I locate the secrets to the frost giant breathing method, perhaps the system will allow me to learn it too. Levi knew this armor was important. It could help him look for traces of wizards in the future. I need to look up the history of the Melon family, he decided. Levi stowed the armor away, locking it securely in a wooden chest to keep it in good condition. The mountain wolf incident was a blessing in disguise. Not only did he earn back his financial losses, but he also found real clues that led to wizards. Of course, he had to return to his mundane routine. He practiced the black snake breathing method daily, pushing the energy through his veins. It is time to buy ambergris, Levi said, making his final preparations. He planned to step out of the territory to gather the necessary ingredients for the black snake medicine. Chapter 24. Bandit. In the year 1006, during the month of vitality, fresh grass emerged beyond the melting snow, and new life flooded the land. A few months had passed since the wolves attacked Blackwater Valley, and the daily lives of the village people were back on track. Very few traces of wolves remained after the winter clash, a sign that the local pack had been largely wiped out near the borders of the territory. The sudden absence of the predators might shift the ecological balance of the valley, but that mattered little. Snow deer, hares, and smaller creatures now roamed free, providing easy game for the castle larder. On this morning, Levi adjusted a simple linen robe, smoothing it over a vest of light chainmail. Only he and Knight Fred possessed armor of this quality in the entire valley. Hand-linked steel mail remained prohibitively expensive, making it impossible to equip the common militia with anything similar. Master Levi, you must look out for yourself. Knight Fred checked the straps on the traveling pack, his voice tight, with an unusually maternal concern. The Northerners are a brutal people, and wandering hedge knights and desperate bandits scour the trade roads near the northern border. You are the last hope of this house. Do not worry about me. Levi offered a reassuring smile, adjusting the heavy hunting bow on his shoulder. I am 15 now, and quite capable of taking care of myself. In my absence, the safety of the territory rests entirely in your hands. Knight Fred nodded instantly, stepping back as Levi turned and disappeared into the quiet dawn. The pace of Levi's physical cultivation had slowed down in recent weeks, while the resources required to fuel his advancement only grew. This solitary journey was designed to solve 4 distinct problems. First, he needed to purchase ambergris to craft the essential black snake medicine. Second, he had to find reliable, long-term buyers for the high-quality weapons and armor produced at his forge. Third, he wanted to collect alternative breathing manuals to test whether his status panel would allow him to practice multiple disciplines simultaneously, a success that would pave the way for mastering the frost giant style. Finally, he hoped to uncover any tangible clues regarding the hidden world of wizards. Resolving the first 3 challenges would secure his position as a lord. The fourth goal, the search for magic, remained a matter of pure fate. The destination lay in the city of Icy Winds, located hundreds of miles east of Blackwater Valley. It was the largest trading hub within 1,000 miles and stood as one of the 4 major strongholds in the north. To purchase a luxury item as rare as ambergris, a major marketplace was absolute necessity. After much deliberation, the choice to travel entirely alone seemed the wisest path. A considerable amount of time had passed since Levi achieved the rank of Quasi-Knight, and his mastery of the Golden Cross style had reached an advanced stage. Combined with his lethal accuracy in archery, he possessed enough combat prowess to match a fully decorated knight if an emergency occurred. Under conventional circumstances, the road held no real danger for him. The preparations for the trek were meticulous. His packs contained dozens of rations of dried meat and 50 feathered arrows, chosen because heavy iron-tipped shafts would only slow his pace. He also carried a bundle of high-quality swords from his own anvil, intending to use the blades to open a private market along the northern border. The absolute best weapons, however, remained behind to arm his own garrison. Conquest and expansion held no appeal for him. He remained perfectly content with his isolated sanctuary within Blackwater Valley. Levi chose to walk rather than ride. With his current mass and enhanced physique, an ordinary horse would struggle to maintain his pace over long distances, and would only draw unwanted attention from travelers. After walking for a day, and a night along a muddy path covered with half-thawed slush, a sense of relief settled in. Not a single unnatural entity or evil spirit had crossed his path. The thought of encountering an unearthly foe beyond his current power remained his greatest concern. On the second afternoon of the journey, the expected trouble finally materialized. A group of ragged figures stepped out from the brush, blocking the narrow track. The leader, a burly man clad in stained cloth armor, brandished a heavy cleaver. "Little guy," the leader taunted, spitting into the mud. "If you are not eager to meet your loving father in the sky just yet, drop your belongings in the dirt and put your hands where we can see them." "That is right," a second bandit cackled from the tree line, shifting his grip on a rusted spear. "We will open your throat without batting an eye." A quick glance around revealed a total of 13 attackers. Their gaunt faces and hollow cheeks spoke of severe malnutrition, yet the leader possessed a physical presence that rivaled a quasi-knight. A faint trace of white steam rose from the man's bare neck, a clear indication of active breathing exercises. Levi dropped his traveling pack to the ground, using the momentum to spring backward into an open stance while pulling his hunting bow from his shoulder. The bowstring twanged. The feathered arrow pierced the air with a sharp hiss, but the bandit leader anticipated the shot, twisting his torso to let the shaft pass harmlessly into the brush. Very well, the leader roared, his face twisting in rage. Prepare to die. 2 more arrows flew in rapid succession, the bowstring singing twice in the quiet forest. Levi did not aim for the leader this time. With his advanced marksmanship, his focus shifted to the surrounding crowd without needing to consciously track the targets. The missiles struck true, sending 2 archers tumbling into the frozen grass. Curse you. The leader charged forward, his heavy cleaver cutting a wide arc through the air at blinding speed as he glanced at his fallen men. The remaining 11 bandits closed the circle, moving in from all directions to cut off any escape. Levi smiled at the oncoming rush. He unsheathed the cold steel of Frostmourne, and a dense, white smoke billowed violently from his pores as his breathing method flooded his muscles with power. Chapter 25. Shining Tavern. Smoky, white mist radiated off him. Levi stomped his feet, and energy surged through his veins. Like an arrow, his sword pierced through the void. His muscles vibrated violently. His silhouette phased in and out of perception. The outlaw leader trembled, dropping his center of gravity as the steel advanced. A quasi-knight. How is this possible at your age? Afraid. Levi's voice boomed across the clearing. With a single swipe, the leader's inferior, rusty knife shattered into flying shards. The steel blade drove straight through the man's chest. The remaining bandits froze. The strongest person they knew lay dead in seconds, his body cooling against the scarlet snow. Panic took hold, and the circle scattered into the trees. Levi would not let them go. Those who crossed the Blackwater line must learn fear. Arrows rained from the sky, dropping the fleeing targets in mid-stride. A few realized escape was futile, and threw themselves into the slush at Levi's feet. Oh great knight, please do not kill us. We are ordinary people who just want to make a living. Right. Oh great knight, I just wanted something to eat. Please spare me. I have a blind wife at home. She needs me. Levi studied their desperate faces, recognizing the raw sincerity in their pleas. He lowered the bow. Leave. The survivors scrambled into the brush, running for their lives and thanking the heavens for another day of breath. Levi watched their retreating forms with cold eyes, then raised his weapon once more to secure the perimeter. He gathered dry firewood from the tree line, dragged the 13 corpses into a neat pile, and struck a flint until a raging fire consumed the clearing. Let the flames warm your journey into the next world. Muttering a silent prayer, he watched the smoke rise. The youngest of the outlaws looked no older than himself. The stories they told were likely true, but mercy on the road was a luxury. If he did not kill, he would be killed. He unclipped the coin pouches from the dead, harvesting more than a dozen silver coins. A final glance at the roaring pyre, and he continued his trek eastward. Before long, the city of icy winds materialized on the horizon. The silver-white fortress stood proud among the jagged mountain peaks, dominated by a pure white church rising from the absolute center of the city. The sight brought a momentary pause. The land of tulips belonging to his father was exquisite and gorgeous, but this place was simply magnificent. He presented his traveling pass at the gates and entered the outer district without trouble. Compared to the deserted, barely populated expanses of Blackwater Valley, the city of icy winds overflowed with noise. Hundreds of thousands of residents packed the stone streets. The hub attracted traveling merchants, mercenaries, and scholars from every corner of the continent, swelling the daily population. The packed alleyways recalled the bustling metropolises of his previous life, though the architecture placed this city firmly in the style of the early Middle Ages. Levi walked directly toward the largest trade building in the plaza, the Emerald Chamber of Commerce. Funded by the royal family itself and overseen by several Grand Dukes, the enterprise maintained a strict monopoly. To buy a share in this market, a merchant had to hold the title of Earl at the very least. The nobility controlled every aspect of trade within the Emerald Kingdom from their central headquarters, leaving this northern outpost as a mere branch. Levi pressed a hand against the heavy weight tucked into his tunic. With 327 ancient gold coins in his possession, his purchasing power rivaled that of a local earl. He stepped up to the main counter. Hello, do you have ambergris for sale? An inconspicuous young lord from the remote north drew little suspicion here. The clerk's posture straightened at the mention of the luxury substance, recognizing that the customer possessed significant wealth and likely practiced a high-level breathing method. Our apologies, sir. There is no ambergris in stock at the moment, but you are welcome to browse our other imports. Levi turned on his heel, his shadow disappearing from the shop before the clerk could finish the offer. The disappointment was expected. If the legitimate market lacked the commodity, only one alternative remained. He ducked into a nearby gift shop, purchasing a white wolf mask to obscure his identity before blending back into the crowd. He navigated the narrow alleys, passing the melodious strumming of harps, playful whispers from doorways, and the joyful guffaws of drunken patrons. The scent of roasted malt led him to a warm, low-roofed tavern. The sign above the door read, Shining Tavern. A chalkboard on the wall announced, Today's offering, Lion King Spirit. Come, one and all, down this glass of spirit, and may your future shine like a lion upon the wild. A burly guard stood tall at the entrance, blocking the threshold. Every patron who wished to enter had to pay 1 gold coin for a single glass of the heavy liquor, a traditional tax to prove financial strength and courage before entering the premises. On the surface, the establishment operated as an ordinary tavern, but the cellars beneath the floorboards served a different purpose. This was the premier black market of the northern border. Chapter 26. 7 Legends and 7 Cups of Wine. Nobody knows when the Shining Tavern started to emerge in the major cities of the kingdom. Travelers from across the world reported traces of the establishment in many other countries as well. This organization spread across the entire continent, overseeing underground transactions, contracts, and illicit activities. It also served as a playground for the wealthy, drawing beautiful, gorgeous women and charming, masculine men from foreign lands. The worlds inside and outside the tavern were entirely different. Levi learned of the place from his father. Under normal circumstances, he would never set foot inside. However, with the official market completely depleted of ambergris, no other choice remained. A glass of Lion King spirit for your worries. Levi slid a gold coin across the counter to the burly doorman, who exuded the heavy, physical presence of a trained warrior. Employing a true knight just to guard the entrance highlighted the immense power behind the organization, a syndicate detached from nobility, kingship, and even the theocratic authority of the church. 1 gold coin could normally purchase a wealth of necessities, a cow, a finely forged sword, or a holy prayer from a priest. Here, it bought an overpriced drink. It was the price of admission. The guard handed over a goblet of wine that shimmered with a pale golden light. Drink, and you shall enter. The Lion King spirit commemorated the legendary warrior known as Knight Lionheart. The Shining Tavern rotated 7 specific wines over 7 days, each priced at a single gold piece. The menu consisted of the Lion King spirit, blood wine, brew of 100 flowers, snow beer, dark rum, golden spirit, and the unknown. No other spirits were served. These 7 drinks honored 7 deceased legendary knights. There was Ryan, the Lionheart Knight; Brad, the Blood Knight; Irina, the Flower Knight; Friar, the Winter Knight; Black, the Dark Knight; Grek, the Golden Knight. Finally, there was Anonymous, the Knight of 1,000 Faces. Nobody knew the true name of the final master. Many speculated that the mastermind behind the entire organization was a legendary knight, which explained how the syndicate operated across the 7 kingdoms, maintaining a black market right under the noses of the high nobility and the holy priesthood. Levi drained the goblet in one swallow, unconcerned about poison. He stepped through the threshold, and the chaotic noise of the crowded room washed over him. The sharp scent of alcohol and heavy perfume filled the air. At the center bar, an elegant woman drank the brew of 100 flowers alone. Her poised demeanor suggested she was the proprietress of the establishment. Many patrons wore masks identical to Levi's disguise, though just as many boldly showed their faces. Rough mercenaries teased the serving maids until the proprietress stepped in, her sharp words reprimanding the troublemakers. Those who dared to cross the staff of the Shining Tavern usually vanished, never to be heard from again. Levi navigated the noisy crowd, heading toward a domed chamber situated in a unique cavern layout behind the main tavern. This hidden recess housed the black market. Sellers stood behind simple wooden booths, displaying their available goods on large signs written in white chalk. The pricing was entirely subjective, as the Shining Tavern merely provided the venue. This lawless marketplace naturally gave rise to a specific profession, the bounty hunters. Many wandering hedge knights took up the trade to support themselves. Levi walked the perimeter, halting in front of a merchant covered from head to toe in heavy iron plate armor. A single, small black bottle sat on the wooden table. Even with the stopper firmly in place, the container exuded a strange, mesmerizing fragrance. The rich aroma instantly recalled childhood memories of his father preparing secret medicines in the family castle. Ambergris. 200 gold coins, no bargains, the armored merchant muttered. A powerful aura radiated from the man, his martial energy burning as bright as an open flame, despite his rigid posture. A bottle of ambergris has always been one of 100 gold coins, Levi blurted out. The merchant sneered, his voice muffled by his visor. Delightful. Run along to the official chamber of commerce and see if anyone accepts your cheap offer. That damned white horse knight of the royal family has confiscated every ounce of ambergris for his own use, completely destroying the local trade. 200 coins, nothing more, nothing less. Levi swallowed hard. The white horse knight stood as the shining pillar of the emerald royal family, recognized across the land as the prime candidate to become the next legendary knight. How many bottles do you have? How many do you need? The man replied. 2 bottles. Levi carried 500 gold coins in his tunic. Even with the inflated price, the purchase was absolute necessity. 2 bottles would provide enough raw material to fuel his advancement to full knighthood. You are not particularly strong, but you are exceptionally wealthy. You must be the pampered son of a high noble, the merchant murmured. Levi offered no response. He silently took the 2 bottles of ambergris and handed over 400 gold coins, an amount equivalent to 5 years of total revenue from the Blackwater Valley. The sight of his gold raining into the merchant's iron lockbox caused a sharp pang of financial grief in his chest. Listen carefully, boy, the seller whispered, leaning over the table. This is the cheapest rate you will find. If I did not require immediate coin today, I would have listed these for 300 pieces at the grand auction 2 days from now. If you require more ambergris in the future, you know where to look. The armored figure packed his ledger and disappeared into the pressing crowd. Levi remained standing by the booth, left with just over 100 gold coins. He intended to purchase a high-tier breathing manual to test whether his status panel could handle 2 disciplines simultaneously. He searched the remaining stalls, but no one offered techniques for sale. The only option was to wait for the event 2 days later. The gathering was known as the Shining Auction, held inside the tavern on the final day of every month. Rare breathing methods frequently appeared at these high-end events. During his childhood, Levi had accompanied his father to a grand auction in the land of tulips, where an exceptionally rare combat breathing style had commanded a staggering price of 5,000 gold coins. Chapter 27. Geralt the White Wolf. There was still time before the Shining Auction, so Levi found an open space to set up a stall. There was no need to pay for the booth fee since it was accounted for in the glass of wine he drank. The Shining Tavern is incomprehensibly rich. Levi placed the swords on the booth, envy tightening his chest. The Chamber of Commerce could not hold a light to the Shining Tavern. The tavern earned 100 gold coins a day just from selling drinks. Levi's father wanted a stake in the Shining Tavern, but even as a great knight, he was rejected. The Shining Tavern never accepted new shareholders. "Excuse me, how much is this sword?" a man in a white wolf mask asked. 2 gold coins and 1 silver coin. No bargains. Customizations and bulk purchases are accepted, and designs are required for your customization, Levi muttered. "It is a bit expensive, is it not?" the man replied as he walked away. Levi was not in a hurry. Absolute confidence in his craftsmanship kept him patient. 2 gold coins was a perfectly fair price. Not long after, a stout but powerful warrior stopped in front of the booth. A large hammer hung from his waist, and a heavy physical presence marked him as a fully qualified knight. "I heard you accepted custom designs of weapons and armor." Levi raised his head, his eyes widening under his mask. "This new customer carried yourself with a strength that surpassed the ambergris seller." The heavy weapon at his hip suggested a combat style built on absolute power. "That is correct," Levi replied, his voice steady. "As long as you have the design, I will be able to make it." "It seems that you are an excellent blacksmith, are you not?" the knight asked. "I manage. I will be taking these 2 swords, and I will be looking forward to cooperating with you in the near future." The knight smiled, his teeth flashing in the dim light. "The weapons and armor you forge must be sold to me first. You cannot sell them to other lords or nobles. I am willing to pay a 20% markup over the current market price as well." He threw 5 gold coins onto the wooden table, instantly recovering the cost of the entrance drink. "All right. The location of the transaction is set at the Shining Tavern," Levi said, nodding. Trading outside left too many opportunities for ambush, but inside the Shining Tavern, absolute peace was enforced. No one dared to cause trouble. "Here is to our business relationship," the knight said, raising his glass. "What shall I call you?" "Geralt." "Geralt, the White Wolf," Levi blurted out, pulling a name from the fantasy games of his past life. "Geralt," the knight nodded, repeating the name. "On the last day of every 3 months, we shall meet again at the Shining Tavern. Here are my designs. By the way," the knight muttered as he unrolled his design sketches. "I wonder if the White Wolf is interested in joining a great organization, with unlimited prospects and a bright future." "Absolutely not," Levi refused without hesitation. "If you change your mind, I will be here," the knight smiled. Levi watched the warrior disappear into the crowd, a long sigh of relief escaping his lips. The immediate financial crisis had vanished. That knight clearly served an ambitious master from a major territory. The recruitment attempt pointed towards some brewing rebellion, but that meant nothing to an isolated lord. His identity remained completely hidden beneath the wolf mask. Meanwhile, in a secluded mansion within the city of Icy Winds, the knight who had just concluded the deal with Levi removed his iron helmet, revealing a heavily scarred face and a perpetual grin. He knelt down on the stone floor before an exceptionally large man with bulging muscles, whose breathing exhaled heavy plumes of white gas. "Vice President," the knight bowed. "I have found another excellent blacksmith, and we have begun our business cooperation." "Very good, Hog Rider. I am satisfied with your recent performance. The Lord of the Wilderness must be proud of your loyalty and hard work." The massive figure stood up, rising to a height of 2.5 meters, making even the stout Hog Rider look petite before him. "I have not been to headquarters in a while. Report to me on the conditions of our equipment. Our Brotherhood has a total of 2,500 sets of armor and weapons, along with 1,000 mountain horses. Dozens of blacksmiths are working under us to create the equipment we need, and I am still actively looking for more blacksmiths to recruit." "It is far from enough," the giant coughed, the sound rattling the small room. "To subvert these greedy and hateful nobles, we need at least tens of thousands of fully armed cavalry and hundreds of formal knights to charge into battle. I am but a single step away from becoming a great knight. The Brotherhood of the Wilderness will have 2 great knights by then, and we may finally strike." "Congratulations, my lord. By the way, our deal with the Spirit of the Lamp was very good. With its help, I am practically unstoppable. However, I still need the Spirit of the Lamp to aid me in becoming a great knight, and I may have to trouble you on this matter." The man spoke as he produced a heavy black jar from his cloak. Chapter 28. Frost Wolf's Breathing Method and Giant Bear's Breathing Method. In the year 1006, on the last day of the month of Vitality, the Shining Auction commenced inside the Shining Tavern exactly as scheduled. The proprietress of the establishment presided over the event. Her revealing attire drew the undivided attention of the ravenous men filling the room. The bidding began soon after. Levi sat in the very last row of the underground gallery, keeping his white wolf mask tilted downward to avoid attention. A mere 100 gold coins remained in his purse, a sum that would likely secure a single item at best. The northern lords and wealthy merchants filling the tavern possessed massive fortunes. Members of the tavern provided 10 distinct lots for this monthly gathering. 5 years of full access, including free admission and complimentary auction vouchers, required a flat membership fee of 100 gold coins. Many of these patrons possessed wealth that defied imagination. Baron Snyder, Levi's late father, had maintained a premium membership for years, though the privilege could not be legally inherited by his descendants. The opening item was a magnificent knightly longsword. The craftsmanship displayed sophisticated, intricate line work that easily surpassed Levi's current blacksmithing abilities. The silhouette remained traditional, yet inherently elegant. The proprietress projected her dazzling voice across the hall, instantly igniting the enthusiasm of the audience. This blade belonged to a great knight of Vegicate a century ago. The legendary blacksmith Hagrid Amon forged this enchanted weapon himself. We will open the floor at 10 gold coins, with increments of no less than 5 gold coins. A knowledgeable weapon collector in the front row gasped. The royal blacksmith Hagrid. Was he not known across the continent as the Hammer of Flame? The historical reference struck Levi with a jolt of surprise. During the past year, he had studied the development of forging within the Emerald Kingdom by reading the extensive book collection Milan left behind. The fabled Hammer of Flame stood out as a legendary master of the craft. Blacksmiths did not use a rigid ranking system like knights, yet the public naturally divided them based on reputation and the quality of their steel. At present, Levi functioned at the level of an advanced apprentice. Attaining the status of a formal blacksmith required the independent construction of a complete, fully articulated suit of plate armor. A true master, much like Milan's captured father, Toby, possessed equal skill in shaping weapons and defensive plates. The Wild Boar gang had dragged Toby away, but Levi intended to reclaim the artisan eventually. Those who reached the absolute pinnacle of the trade received the title of forging master from the high nobility, or craftsman from the knightly orders. These elite individuals managed endless streams of daily commissions, with wealthy dukes begging for a single custom weapon. The social influence of a master blacksmith was immense. The sword attributed to Hagrid ultimately went to a wealthy nobleman for a final bid of 100 gold coins. The price far exceeded the practical utility of the steel. Levi tightened his jaw, realizing that once he attained the rank of a master craftsman, financial scarcity would vanish forever. The second lot consisted of a suit of plate armor shaped from high-grade iron mined in the Rocky Mountains. The description claimed the smith had infused a full thumb's weight of mithril into the molten steel, enhancing the durability, while complicating the forging process. Mithril remained a substance of myth, harvested only where meteorites struck the earth. According to the notes left by Witch Gulveig, the metal was highly prized by hidden magic users. The defensive harness sold for 480 gold coins. Levi muttered a quiet critique beneath his mask, watching the transaction close. That piece of garbage commanded 480 gold coins. My hidden suit consists entirely of pure mithril. Its true value cannot even be measured in common gold. The crowd quieted down as the handlers brought out a pair of parchment scrolls. The next item up for bid is a combined lot, the proprietress announced, her tone dropping into a dull, uninspired rhythm, as if the offering barely deserved her breath. We have the Frost Wolf's breathing method packaged alongside the Giant Bear's breathing method, which some records call the Stone Bear style. While these two manuals represent superficial quality, they retain significant value for collectors. Levi's breath caught in his throat. The ancestral techniques of his immediate neighbors were crossing the auction block. The descendants of those northern houses had evidently fallen into absolute poverty following the death of Baron Snyder, forcing them to liquidate their family heritage to survive. The manuals were strictly limited to specific bloodlines, making them useless to outsiders. Whispers rippled through the seated knights and nobles. After a long, awkward silence, only a few scattered bids broke the quiet. Levi waited for the momentum to stall, then raised his hand to call out 120 gold coins. No one attempted to counter the offer. The hammer fell, securing the 2 breathing methods for his collection. The price felt entirely reasonable. Eager to secure his prize, Levi collected the scrolls and immediately exited the tavern through a side door. He changed into a plain linen tunic in a nearby alley, then navigated to the Emerald Chamber of Commerce to purchase the secondary ingredients for his black snake formula. The recipe required specialized serpent blood, leading him to purchase a wicker basket filled with live white crystal snakes, a species unique to the freezing northern climate. Before departing the city, Levi spent hours exploring the local libraries and bookstalls. He used his remaining funds to purchase every text containing references to ancient history, myths, or the occult. As night fell, Levi slipped past the watchtowers and vanished into the countryside, choosing a rugged mountain track for his return journey. A few timber wolves crossed his path in the dark, but the trail remained entirely free of bandits. On the second day of the month of green grass, a travel-worn Levi marched back through the gates of Blackwater Valley. Knight Fred stood watch on the battlements, his anxious expression melting into a look of absolute relief the moment the young lord crossed the threshold of the courtyard. Chapter 29. The Black Snake Medicine. Master, you are back. Knight Fred pulled open the heavy oak city gate, his eyes scanning the road behind Levi. Nothing bad happened, right? Levi stepped into the safety of the courtyard, unbuckling his traveling cloak. No. Did everything go well here? Fred closed the gate, the timber bar dropping into place with a dull thud. "Yes, my lord." Levi nodded and walked toward his private quarters. During his brief trip, he had emptied his purse down to the very last coin. Overnight, the wealth had vanished, leaving him a pauper once again. Still, he did not return empty-handed. 2 bottles of rare ambergris, 2 bloodline-restricted breathing manuals, a long-term manufacturing partnership, and a heavy bundle of historical books and occult scrolls filled his pack. The objectives of his journey were fulfilled. With the necessary components finally gathered, only the preparation of the secret medicine remained. Levi threw himself onto the bed, falling into a deep, soundless sleep. The next morning, the sun shone brightly over Blackwater Valley, casting a brilliant light through the narrow stone windows. Preparing the alchemical mixture required no complex technical artistry. Levi spent hours measuring the components according to a fixed ratio, grinding the dried herbs and white crystal snake blood into a paste before kneading the dark compound into small, round pills. He successfully rolled 200 individual doses. Diluting the mixture any further would ruin the potency of the precious ambergris, rendering the medicine useless. According to the ancient formula, the 2 imported bottles provided exactly enough base material for this precise count. Consuming 1 pill every morning would sustain his advanced training for the next 6 months. Levi immediately swallowed a pill, the bitter sphere dissolving down his throat. While the kitchen staff prepared his midday meal, he paced the floor, eager to begin his exercises. The long trek from the city of icy winds had delayed his routine by 2 full days. An hour of rigorous execution passed, his chest rising and falling in a rhythmic pattern until the cycle completed. Black snake breathing method +10. The gray interface flickered before his eyes, causing a sharp exclamation to escape his lips. The progression had increased by several times. It was a shame the manual restricted consumption to a single dose per day. As the medicine took hold, a cold current coursed through his veins, washing away the physical fatigue and replacing it with absolute calm. Under this focus, he maintained an iron grip on his concentration throughout the grueling training session. Thick, white smoke began to emit from his pores, purging deep-seated impurities from his skin as the vapor drifted toward the ceiling. Levi seized the momentum of the physical surge, drawing his weapon to practice the Golden Cross style. Golden/Proficiency +3. The phantom numbers brought a satisfied grin to his face. The enhancement felt entirely real, a physical upgrade rather than a mere placebo effect. He repeated the breathing cycle and the sword form several times, pushing his muscles to the absolute limit until his daily quota was satisfied. With the martial training complete, he unrolled the Frost Wolf and Giant Bear manuals purchased at the underground auction. These techniques were classified as superficial, bloodline-bound styles, making them the lowest value items in the hierarchy of knightly legacy. Levi flattened the parchment of the Giant Bear inheritance scroll on his desk. The surface bore a stylized pattern identical to a traditional noble crest, depicting a massive bear standing proudly over a mountain range in several prominent boxing stances. This was the official emblem of the Stone Bear family. Their ancestral breathing method focused entirely on raw, physical strength, a quality that directly complemented his current Black Snake style. The Frost Wolf scroll shared a similar layout, featuring the snarling visage of the Frost Wolf family crest. Their style prioritized exceptional agility. Levi chuckled to himself, rolling the heavy parchment back into a cylinder. If a warrior could somehow master both attributes simultaneously, he would be unstoppable on the battlefield. He tapped his chin, staring at the ceiling. Integrating the Frost Wolf method into his routine seemed the most logical next step. Agility remained the single most critical factor in close quarters combat, a trait his heavy frame currently lacked. The proficiency panel appeared basic on the surface, but its greatest utility lay in its ability to bypass ancestral restrictions, simplifying the integration of incredibly difficult concepts. Levi only needed to apply consistent effort. Every single physical exertion would be rewarded in clear numerical terms. For him, practice had transformed into a linear, continuous highway, rather than a blind journey of trial and error. Still, these ancient methods could not be mastered in a day or two. Even a superficial style required significant time to grasp the fundamental concepts hidden within the text. He refused to exhaust his entire focus on theory. He needed to study the design sketches provided by the armored knight. In 3 months, the first batch of custom weaponry had to be delivered to the Shining Tavern. The weeks blurred together in a steady, fulfilling routine. In the castle courtyard, the 3 orphaned bear cubs grew rapidly. Fueled by a massive abundance of wolf meat and forest game, their bodies expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. By the 3rd day of the month of flowers, the last remnants of the winter snow had vanished from the valley. Night Fred entered the solar, bringing news from the northern border. The 2 neighboring lords had liquidated their ancestral estates in quick succession, relocating their entire families to the safety of the frozen city. The mysterious buyer behind the massive land acquisition was the Holy Church. An outpost was already under construction in the land of the Silver Moon, ensuring the holy light of the loving Father would warm the hearts of the populace in this desolate region. Levi cursed silently under his breath, turning back to his ledger. A persistent suspicion whispered that the arrival of the white-robed priesthood would eventually disrupt the quiet isolation of Blackwater Valley. Chapter 30. Formal blacksmith and a member of the Holy Church. Levi weighed the situation for a long time, concluding that as long as he did not provoke the church, the clergy would likely leave him in peace. Still, the obligation to pay tithes and various other taxes in the name of the loving Father remained an unavoidable burden. The church practically ruled the Emerald Kingdom, leaving a minor lord with no choice but to comply. A heavy sigh escaped his lips. If only he were a great knight, he could easily withdraw from these worldly disputes and protect his own interests. Better yet, attaining the status of a legendary knight would allow him to completely ignore the dictates of the church. Who would dare demand taxes when your own physical strength rivals that of a god? Legendary knights were essentially living deities walking the earth. If the path of a wizard remained close to him, he would simply become a legendary knight instead. The month of flowers passed quickly. According to the intelligence gathered by Knight Fred, the church moved with remarkable efficiency. The moment the neighboring lords vacated their lands, the clergy drove the local serfs into forced labor, constructing an outpost grander and far more magnificent than Levi's own ancestral castle. Throughout the final weeks of the month of flowers, Levi continued his disciplined training with the frost wolf breathing method, following the instructions on the parchment scroll step by step. Doubt began to cloud his thoughts during a quiet evening session. Was this training even producing results? It took a mere half a month to grasp the fundamentals of the black snake method, yet he had labored over this new scroll for well over a month, with no tangible progress. Perhaps mastering the style truly required the ancestral blood of their kin. Dissatisfied but stubborn, Levi tightened his jaw. He would persist for one more month. If his efforts yielded nothing, he would pivot to the giant bear breathing method, and if that also failed, he would abandon the pursuit entirely and melt the enchanted armor down into pure mithril. Fortunately, the black snake pills provided an incredible boost, driving his proficiency up by 1,000 points in just 4 weeks, more than double the rate of unassisted practice. Maintaining this exact momentum would guarantee his ascension to full knighthood long before his supply of pills ran out. His progress with the Golden Cross Slash also surged, gaining more than 1,000 points over the same period. His craftsmanship reached a significant breakthrough as well. Levi spent the better part of the month shaping individual armor plates, a delicate and demanding process that presented far greater challenges than hammering out standard swords. As this was his very first attempt at shaping a full harness, his lack of experience slowed his hands, requiring a full month just to complete the primary components. The heavy ring of the hammer echoed through the forge as Levi struck the anvil once more. He utilized the cold forging technique to shape the metal. The mysterious knight had requested a design resembling standard plate armor, a task that proved far less tedious than linking thousands of individual rings for cumbersome chainmail. While plate armor offered superior defense against heavy crossbow bolts and longswords, it weighed significantly more than a flexible mail shirt. Levi worked shirtless in the stifling heat, his muscles glistening under the amber glow of the furnace. With a final, rhythmic strike, he finished smoothing the breastplate, completing the last major section of the defensive harness and securing his transition into a formal blacksmith. Forging proficiency plus 101. Levi admired his finished masterpiece with a satisfied grin, tracing the sharp lines, refined contours, and inhaling the distinct, metallic scent of the fresh steel. Not bad at all. He decided to set the base price at 25 gold coins. Under standard market conditions, a decent suit of plate armor commanded roughly 20 gold coins. However, the special trait attached to his high forging proficiency ensured his work far surpassed the quality of an ordinary craftsman, making 25 gold pieces an absolute bargain. Only high nobles and wealthy knights could dream of purchasing a full harness of this caliber, while ordinary men-at-arms considered themselves lucky to own a single piece of the set. Reflecting on the crude state of local industry, Levi realized the productivity of this world seemed to be sliding backward rather than advancing. The realization brought a sudden wave of appreciation for his previous life. The comfort and effortless convenience of modern technology are truly missed only after they are completely lost. Still, constructing this single suit of armor had granted him several hundred points of experience. Forging a dozen more pieces would easily push his skill to the 4th level. He reviewed his current status on the gray interface floating before his eyes. Levi Snyder, Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 3, 5011 out of 10,000. Golden Cross Slash, Level 3, 5427 out of 10,000. Special Effect, Vibrate, Advanced. Beast Taming, Level 3, Maximum. Special Effect, Heart of the Wild. Forging, Level 3, 2008 out of 10,000. Special Effect, High Quality Forging. The numerical feedback showed substantial growth across the board. Eager to test the fit of the newly completed plates, Levi lifted the breastplate, but a sudden knock drew his attention to the door, where Knight Fred stood waiting with a grim expression. Levi began to dress, sliding a tunic over his head. "What is the matter, Knight Fred?" Fred leaned against the doorframe, his shoulders tense. "Master, representatives from the church have arrived at our gates." Levi adjusted his collar. "How many?" "Only 2, Fred replied. "A priest and an armored knight." "Let us go and receive them then." Levi selected his finest aristocratic robe, taking care to conceal a heavy shirt of chainmail beneath the fabric along with a reinforced iron plate protecting his heart. Ever since learning the true dangers of this lawless world, he wore defensive mail everywhere he went. The extra layers were heavy and hot, but the security was worth the discomfort. Outside the castle walls, a priest clad in pristine white robes waited beside a church knight, who sat atop a massive destrier in polished silver and white armor. The slender knight shifted in his stirrups, his voice dripping with irritation. "Master Abraham, It appears this young Baron Snyder lacks basic manners. Keeping dignified guests waiting in a wretched wilderness like this is an insult. As a member of the Glorious Knights, the elite military order of the church, he naturally looked down on lowborn provincial lords. Pastor Abraham glanced at the warrior, his voice remaining flat and disciplined. Knight Shimmer, compose yourself. You would not want your impatience to be weaponized by our adversaries. The heavy iron-reinforced gates creaked open, allowing Levi and Knight Fred to ride out at a measured pace. Levi dismounted gracefully, offering a warm, perfectly practiced smile as he performed the traditional salute of the high nobility. Dear Pastor Abraham, I sincerely welcome you to Blackwater Valley. Chapter 31. 100-Year Tax. Blackwater Valley, in the castle meeting hall. Pastor Abraham sat upright, his fingers laced over his stomach. Knight Shimmer stood silently beside him, a rigid sentinel in gleaming silver. Levi took his place opposite the priest, resting his hands flat on the polished oak table, while Knight Fred flanked his shoulder. Tension tightened the air. The young baron kept his posture formal, but the subtle shift in his weight betrayed a deep, instinctual caution. The pastor noted the subtle defensive stance, a faint, condescending thought crossing his mind. Sure enough, the Lord of the Valley was just a boy. Baron Levi, the priest said, his voice carrying the grand, measured resonance of a practiced orator. I am here today to purchase Blackwater Valley. In this era, the church ruled over every facet of mortal life. The bluntness of the proposal carried no surprise, as these holy annexations had become a common reality across the continent. Targeting weak, isolated nobles remained the easiest method for the priesthood to acquire vast tracts of land. Knight Fred shifted, his complexion pale as his eyes darted toward the young lord. Levi remained completely silent, staring straight into the priest with an unblinking, neutral gaze. 2,000 gold coins, the pastor continued, gesturing with a smooth, well-manicured hand. This amount is twice what I provided to the heirs of the Stone Bear and the Frost Wolves. The church remembers the grand service of your late father, so it is only appropriate that I offer a more generous sum. That mountain of wealth would easily secure a luxurious, comfortable life for both Levi and Knight Fred anywhere in the civilized south. A remote, unforgiving wilderness like this is destined to fail, frankly speaking, the priest said, leaning forward to press his point. It is far wiser to allow the church to oversee the long-term development of this land. Pastor Abraham offered a gentle, serene smile. Complete confidence radiated from his posture, secure in the belief that an unproven, cowardly youth would never refuse such an astronomical fortune. Levi, however, possessed no reason to accept the offer. His forge could generate 2,000 gold pieces with enough time and steady labor. Desperation had no hold over him. He remained perfectly content with his isolated sanctuary. Furthermore, an intangible value bound him to Blackwater Valley, the loyalty of his people, the satisfaction of self-reliance, and the final, enduring legacy his father had left behind. My apologies, Pastor Abraham, Levi said, shaking his head with a calm, deliberate slowness. The Snyder family has inhabited this valley for over 200 years. Every brick and tile in this fortress is coated with our family blood, sweat, and tears. Abandoning my people to the wind is simply out of the question. Behind him, Knight Fred heaved a soft, barely audible sigh of relief. Baron Snyder had already lost the land of tulips and the land of storms to political machinations. Losing the ancestral cradle would completely erase their house from history. If Levi grew strong enough in the coming years, his bloodline granted him a legal right to reclaim those lost territories. Selling this final stronghold to the church, however, would place it permanently beyond his reach. Reclaiming it later would require buying it back at an extortionate price, or launching a suicidal holy war. Neither option was feasible. Oh, are you quite certain of your choice? Pastor Abraham asked, the serene smile never wavering from his face. Beneath the heavy table, the priest tapped his foot against the stone floor in a rapid, rhythmic cadence. The rejection from the young baron was entirely unexpected. If your primary purpose today is to strip away my family territory, then forgive me, but I must refuse, Levi said, his voice hardening. My people will refuse as well. Losing the fiefdom would destroy everything. Without a sovereign territory, his daily operations would collapse. The strict privacy required to practice his diverse breathing methods would vanish, his independent manufacturing income would dry up, and he would be left a rootless wanderer without a home. 2,000 gold coins was nothing short of an insult to his future. Well, we can certainly return to that discussion at a later date, the priest replied, his lips curving into a sharp, knowing smirk. Now, let us address the matter of the taxes owed by your holdings. You possess 3 territories under your noble name, all of which are legally required to provide regular tithes to the church. Following your father's tragic passing, we granted the land of tulips and the land of storms maximum tax incentives out of respect for his memory. However, we have always turned a blind eye to the historical arrears of Blackwater Valley. The pastor paused, smoothing the front of his pristine white vestments. Baron Levi, according to explicit canonical regulations, the church retains the right to collect back taxes, without any retrospective limitations for all territories situated beneath the holy light of the loving Father. This rule applies regardless of whether the church has actively collected from them in the past. In short, even though the church has not levied taxes on Blackwater Valley for the past 200 years, we possess the absolute legal authority to collect the entire sum today, the priest said, his tone dripping with quiet satisfaction. We will pay the required taxes, Levi replied, matching the priest with an easy, pleasant smile while a cold sneer flared in his chest. No matter how great his father's achievements had been, bureaucratic rats would always crawl out from the dark to look for scraps. Refusal was impossible. His current physical strength could not support a rebellion, and defying the divine authority of the church amounted to an immediate death sentence. The massive institution comprised thousands of monasteries, fortified cathedrals, influential clergymen, and intricate political networks scattered across every kingdom on the continent. To defend their interests, they deployed the Radiant Knights, an elite military order. This overwhelming force boasted hundreds of fully qualified knights, and 7 legendary Great Knights. The invincible vanguards of the priesthood would ruthlessly crush any provincial lord who stood in their way. No matter, Levi thought, forcing his pulse to slow. The proficiency panel remained his ultimate weapon. As long as he stayed alive, absolute strength was a statistical certainty. Pastor Abraham was offering an intentional show of mercy, substituting a crushing financial demand in place of a forced annexation. Excellent, the priest said, reaching into the deep sleeve of his silk robe to produce a thick, rolled parchment. Here is the certified statement of the total taxes owed by Blackwater Valley. In light of your father's exceptional contributions to our faith, we have generously exempted your estate from the massive late payment penalties and accumulated interest. Therefore, you are only required to settle the base principal. Levi took the heavy bill, his eyes twitching automatically as his gaze scanned the final line of ink. 1,000 gold coins. Chapter 32. Level 3 Frost Wolf Breathing Method. Levi huffed as he gripped the bill, slightly crumpling the parchment paper. He forced his breathing to slow, reminding himself that laws and regulations always existed to protect the interests of the powerful. The amount posted here is a bit expensive, Levi said, forcing a polite smile. I am afraid we can only pay in installments for now. Pastor Abraham smiled in a calculative manner, as if he had already anticipated the response. Then, you shall pay the interest plus the taxes incurred for the next 10 years. From now on, Blackwater Valley is required to pay 150 gold coins to the church annually. I agree. Levi nodded in defeated submission. Refusal was impossible, but a decade was a long time. Who knew what would happen within 10 years? After signing the contract, Pastor Abraham and Knight Shimmer departed from Blackwater Valley. Levi and Knight Fred watched the silhouettes recede into the distance. Murderous intent flared hot in Levi's chest. How about we plan his assassination? Knight Fred asked, his eyes locked on the horizon. With our strength, it would not be difficult to eliminate Knight Shimmer. It is useless, Levi replied, his voice harsh as he turned back toward the keep. If Abraham dies, the church will simply send other pastors, or worse, the Radiant Knights. Money is not our problem, and sooner or later, I will take it all back with interest. The church, the Wild Boar Gang, they were all mere bullies preying on the weak. Knight Fred was nearly half a century old, and his physical strength was gradually declining. Levi had to endure the humiliation and become stronger through his own efforts. Anger meant nothing without the power to back it up. The proficiency panel guaranteed his growth, and he could not afford to throw his life away on an impulsive reaction. Days blurred into a relentless routine. He practiced the black snake breathing method, labored to comprehend the Frost Wolf manual, forged iron at the anvil, and managed the daily affairs of his people. He left himself barely a single moment of rest. In the year 1006, during the month of warmth, a comfortable climate settled over Blackwater Valley, bringing days that were neither too hot nor too cold. 2 months had passed since Levi acquired the Frost Wolf breathing method. Just as frustration peaked and he resolved to give up, he decided to attempt the exercises one last time. Suddenly, a long-lost, familiar warmth crept up through his veins. He immediately called up the proficiency panel in his mind. Levi Snyder, Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 3, 6,467 out of 10,000. Frost Wolf Breathing Method, Level 1, 1 out of 1,000. Golden Cross Slash, Level 3, 7,000 out of 10,000. Special Effect, Vibrate, Advanced. Beast Taming, Level 3, Maximum. Special Effect, Heart of the Wild. Forging, Level 3, 4,123 out of 10,000. Special Effect, High Quality Goods. Finally, Levi let out a loud shout, jumping up and down in the empty solar. Once a skill manifested on the interface, the remaining steps became simple progression. True excitement flooded his chest for the first time in months. This breakthrough proved he could bypass the genetic restrictions of other bloodlocked breathing methods. If he could force them onto his panel, his potential was limitless. When I become stronger, I must find a way to collect the most powerful breathing methods on the continent. Even if the path of a wizard remains closed, I will stand on top of this world regardless. Perhaps he could even surpass the legendary knights of old and become a living god. For a brief moment, the suffocating haze of the church's extortion lifted. Abraham, you old dog, just you wait. Levi returned to his training with renewed vigor, and the days marched on. Soon, the date for his scheduled trade arrived. He led a small convoy to transport the finished armor and weapons to the Shining Tavern in the City of Icy Winds, delivering the goods to the armored knight exactly as promised. The 6 complete suits of plate armor and nearly 100 swords brought in a total of 300 gold coins. Unfortunately, the merchant who previously sold the ambergris was nowhere to be found, and the official Chamber of Commerce still reported a complete shortage of the substance. In the end, he returned to his territory 300 gold coins richer, but facing a completely depleted supply of raw iron. In a pinch, Levi recalled basic geological indicators for locating iron, or from his previous life. To maintain the production of weapons, many of his guards were reassigned following their martial drills. They dug test mines, chopped timber, burned charcoal, and assisted at the smelting furnaces. In essence, he was training his entire military force to double as blacksmith apprentices. Levi intended to establish forging as the primary economic foundation of Blackwater Valley to ensure long-term stability. Once Milan advanced into a qualified blacksmith and Toby was rescued from captivity, Levi would finally be able to take a breather. The division of labor worked with incredible efficiency, and the output of military equipment increased rapidly. Naturally, Levi treated his laborers well. The blacksmith apprentices who demonstrated exceptional performance throughout the year received a direct bonus of 1 gold coin, a reward that kept morale incredibly high. During the month of the furnace, the workshops turned out 4 complete suits of armor and 50 swords in a single month. Soon, the season for the wheat harvest arrived. When the grain was brought to the storehouses, Levi was pleasantly surprised to find that production had increased by 5% following the implementation of his new agricultural rotation system. This was an unprecedented yield for the valley. The best way to increase productivity was simply to care for and protect the common people. In addition, Levi's progress with the frost wolf breathing method advanced at remarkable speed. This particular style relied on its own supportive medicine, but the recipe proved incredibly simple to prepare, as the primary active ingredient was common wolf meat. Predators were plentiful in the forests surrounding the castle. In fact, wolf meat became a staple of Levi's daily diet. Backed by a constant, abundant supply of the meat, his frost wolf breathing method surged to level 3 in just 4 months. Through it all, he never neglected his core black snake training. Chapter 33. A qualified knight. Levi Snyder. Black snake breathing method, level 3, limit. Frost wolf breathing method, level 3, 234 out of 10,000. Golden cross slash, level 3, 9,527 out of 10,000. Special effect, vibrate, advanced. Beast taming, level 3, advanced, special effect, heart of the wild. Forging, level 3, 6,666 out of 10,000, special effect, high-quality goods. A deep sense of accomplishment settled over Levi as he reviewed the glowing details of his proficiency panel. Consuming 1 dose of the black snake medicine every day had shortened the estimated training time by 2/3 of the original period, but the progress had finally hit a bottleneck. No amount of grueling training would push the skill to level 4 without condensing the seeds of life. Achieving that critical milestone would elevate him to the status of a fully qualified knight. The frost wolf breathing method, by contrast, presented no difficult challenges during his practice. His agility far surpassed his past physical limits. Some time ago, he had traveled into a deep, isolated section of the mountains, tracking down a wild pack of wolves to test his newfound capabilities. Even without wearing a single scrap of protective armor, his blade cut down 10 mountain wolves with relative ease. Such a feat reached far beyond the level of ordinary quasi-knights. Even seasoned knights struggled to survive an ambush by a dozen wolves without their armor. Levi estimated that his combat prowess could overcome an ordinary knight in a direct duel, but the valley offered no real opponents to verify the theory. Knight Fred subconsciously held back during their sparring sessions, making those matches an inaccurate measure of true strength. As for the golden cross slash, the form hovered on the absolute brink of hitting level 4, promising imminent access to the long-awaited ripple effect. Levi stood atop the watchtower, squinting against the wind as Knight Fred led a supply caravan out of the courtyard. The men marched toward the city of icy winds. It was time to deliver the finished weapons and armor to the mysterious contact waiting at the Shining Tavern. This particular shipment contained a total of 12 complete suits of plate armor. He had held back an additional 5 sets to equip his strongest guards. He had also instructed Knight Fred to scour the city markets for more ambergris during the trip. Levi would have preferred to oversee the trade in person, but the process of condensing the seeds of life required his absolute focus, and he refused to delay the advancement any longer. Knight Fred possessed impeccable reliability, ensuring the transaction would conclude without any trouble. A quiet calculation escaped Levi's lips as he watched the carts roll away. The reserves should reach a total of 600 gold coins after this delivery, providing enough wealth to practice his arts in absolute peace for a while. Once Knight Fred and the guards disappeared past the horizon, Levi climbed down from the tower, walked back into the keep, and secured the heavy iron-barred gate. The crucial moment had arrived. After practicing his breathing methods for more than 2 years, the opportunity to transform into a truly qualified knight was within his grasp. Success meant he would no longer have to shrink back in fear from the threats of the world. A qualified knight, while not completely invincible, possessed enough physical power to shatter most adversaries in this land. In the solitude of his bedroom, Levi traced his fingertips over the ancient black snake mural carved into the stone wall before sitting cross-legged on the floor. He had already gathered a supply of food and fresh water within arm's reach, preparing his mind to condense the seeds of life according to the detailed instructions Knight Fred had provided. The old warrior had explained that condensing the seeds of life required absolute focus, forcing a warrior to imbue the entirety of his scattered physical power directly into his heart. Levi inhaled a deep, measured breath, directing the sudden surge of energy through his veins. Thick white smoke began to billow from his pores, a rapid dehydration drying out his muscles. He ignored the parched sensation, knowing it was not yet time to touch the water pitcher. He endured the extreme discomfort of the sudden dehydration, maintaining the strict rhythm of his breathing cycle. His blood seemed to solidify within his chest, and heavy waves of numbness washed over his limbs. The intense physical strain whispered that continuation would mean certain death. Giving up was out of the question. He refused to stop now. He continued to inhale and exhale, pushing the internal mechanisms of the breathing method to their absolute peak. An insurmountable power surged through his limbs and bones, racing through his veins and capillaries, driving straight toward his heart. Severe, blinding pain pierced the left side of his chest. Levi gritted his teeth against a ragged scream, fully aware that this agonizing pressure represented the most critical phase of the ascension. Failure meant immediate death. These turbulent, unchecked forces would rupture his heart, tearing a literal hole through his chest if left uncontrolled. He forced his chest muscles to contract, actively steering the violent torrent of energy directly into his cardiac wall. After enduring excruciating agony that clawed at his ribs, his pale face relaxed, and a long sigh of relief escaped his lips. Wiping the heavy sweat from his forehead, a breathless laugh echoed through the empty room. He had made it. He was a knight. Night fell over Blackwater Valley, cloaking the castle in deep shadows. Yet, within the quiet center of his consciousness, Levi perceived his own heart clearly. A faint, winding, snake-like tendril of black smoke coiled tightly around the muscle, pumping a dark, empowered energy through his veins. It was the mark of black chi. Chapter 34. Level 4 Breathing Method, Special Effect Defense. The snake-shaped mist danced around his heart like a dragon that circled over a castle. The black smoke was completely connected to his heart. As it pumped blood, it also pumped this mist through his system. From then on, the energy obtained from food will be used to nurture this seed in his heart. The black mist emitted by this seed will circulate throughout his system. This seed was like a new organ, an organ that could be controlled by him. A weak stream of black mist crawled through his forearm. His muscles tensed up. The flesh began to harden in a short period of time. A finger traced over the skin, finding a texture similar to that of a car tire. This breathing method focuses on defense. This way, the forearm can probably fend against an opponent. Levi tried to transfer this power to his palm. The tenseness of his forearm transferred to his hand instead, bringing a wave of ecstasy. He tried to move this power to his chest, but the effort failed. With his current state, it was only possible to move it to limited areas. The seed in his heart required more nurturing. Once this seed blooms, it will be possible to become like his father, shrouding the entire body in a layer of black mist. After eating and drinking, the proficiency panel opened in his mind. Levi Snyder, Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 4, 1 out of 20,000, Special Effect, Defense. Defense, by covering parts of your body with black chi, resist a certain degree of blunt attacks and reduce the damage of weapon attacks. The introduction on the panel promised great utility, inviting a proper experiment. Only by knowing your own strength can you fight better. Since Knight Fred was absent, the bear enclosure was the best place to test these limits. The three bears were happily eating fish together in the courtyard. Snow, come here. Levi beckoned to the beast. Knowing Snow's personality, was the most stable compared to his brothers. Snow immediately ran over and pounced, intending to give a big hug. The bears were almost 3 years old now, standing 3 meters tall. A man was like a dwarf in front of them. Snow's weight reached an astonishing 800 kilograms, which was already about the same as that of a large, brown bear. The beasts were easily as strong as a quasi-knight. Haha, okay, stop licking me. Levi laughed as Snow continued lapping at him sloppily. Snow, use your claws to attack me. The bear immediately backed off and whimpered, unable to understand why his master wanted him to attack. It is okay, Levi comforted, hitting me with all you have got. A gentle pat gave Snow extra encouragement, while Gray and Fatty came to join the show as well. Finally, Snow mustered up enough courage and shifted into a combat stance. Levi stood shirtless, refusing to put on a single piece of armor. With a single nod, the bear immediately dashed forward, lifting up a single paw to slash downward. Snow approached rapidly. The seeds in his heart immediately sent black mist rushing to Levi's palms. Levi lifted up his palm to block the blow, but the sheer impact flung him upside down. Yug. Levi landed face first on the ground and immediately inspected his rubbery palm. The black mist formed a protective film on his arm. The evident scratches of a bear's paw marked the surface, but the skin underneath remained completely unhurt. Nice, hit me again. The sparring match continued. Gray and Fatty cheered for their brother from the sidelines, their roars mixing with Levi's laughter as he fought with his pet. Soon, Snow was out of breath, slumping onto the ground and gasping for air. Although weariness crept into his own muscles, Levi could still fight. The scratches on the black mist film could be repaired simply by replenishing it with extra mist. As long as the seed was not exhausted, the barrier could be restored indefinitely. The experiment provided a clear conclusion. This supply of black chi could last for about 5 minutes. Although it was not long, it was enough. However, in a real combat situation, while equipped with steel armor, the defensive mist might prove redundant. It is fine. With my current strength, I am beyond the reach of ordinary knights. The young lord got dressed, bid the bears goodbye, and returned to his bedroom. Reaching the 5th level of his black snake breathing method required a full 20,000 proficiency points. Although a qualified knight is powerful, it is only the beginning of a much greater path. The gap in power between qualified knights and great knights is even greater than that between ordinary people and qualified knights. In the Emerald Kingdom, there were over 1,000 qualified knights, but the number of great knights did not exceed 100. Chapter 35. Lord of Shadows and Illusory Demon Knight. A knight is an invaluable asset to any noble force in the kingdom. If Levi was an ordinary person with no land, he could simply become a noble's knight and pledge his allegiance to them. Of course, Levi did not want to become a slave. He had experienced more than enough of being a capitalist's dog in his previous life. It is time to celebrate, Levi said to himself. I will have the twin maids massage me tonight. Finally, some time to rest. After all, with all of the recent events, the young lord had to work overtime, training endlessly, forging endlessly, and dealing with menial circumstances without a pause. Rest is a crucial aspect of work. Although cultivating himself was important, ensuring its longevity was equally important. In the evening, hot water filled the bathtub. Levi soaked his weary frame, while the twin maids massaged his muscles thoroughly. My lord, your body is too hard and rough, one of them pouted. Take a rest when you are tired, Levi said, smiling with his eyes closed. Your sister will continue, and both of you can take turns. After the bath, he returned to his bedroom for a good night of rest. I hope Knight Fred's trip goes well. Levi missed his mentor dearly. He did not care about the money. He valued Knight Fred far more than those meager goods. I cannot lose Knight Fred. He is the only one I have left in this world. With that final train of thought, a deep sleep took over. Under the starry night, everything stood silent. A cloaked figure sneaked into Blackwater Valley like a ghost. Stopping near the edge of the valley, the intruder stared at the ancient fortress standing proudly on the mountain. The location of this castle is good, easy to defend, difficult to attack. Unfortunately, it is nothing more than a decoration to me. After waiting for 7 days, that damned knight finally left. Baron Levi, your head is mine. The night wind whipped against the cloak, revealing simple leather armor that hugged a lean figure. This was the illusory demon knight, a hired killer with no emotions, operating under an organization known as the Voice of the Dead Bird. Assassination targets included civilians, nobles, and knights. As long as the client paid the price, the deed was done. Despite their reputation, the agents scattered all over the country. The illusory demon knight was stationed in the area near the city of Icy Winds. He had received a commission from a big client some time ago, but did not care about the identity. As long as there was money, the target would be removed. As a wandering knight, he answered only to himself. Since starting this path, he had completed many assassination missions, including a baron, 3 noble disciples, a count's wife, and even 2 qualified knights. Assassinating Levi seemed simple. After all, rumors painted Levi as a cowardly son destined to live in his father's shadow. However, professionalism guided the assassin's hand. Grappling hooks, daggers, and poison filled his belt, everything expected from a cold-blooded killer. He crept toward the fortress. Soldiers patrolled the battlements. Shrouding himself in darkness, he observed the movements and determined the perfect wall to scale, choosing the spot with the fewest guards. From there, he would climb into Levi's bedroom, kill him, take the head, and collect the coin. Perfect plan, he whispered to himself confidently. Soon he identified the weakest point in the patrol. Moving in a flash, he slipped behind the guard. Lord of Shadows above, he prayed. The illusory demon knight did not believe in the loving father. He served the Lord of Shadows, the god of murder, deceit, and darkness. He dealt with the soldier cleanly and began to scale the stone. Climbing over the high wall, he jumped down nimbly, landing perfectly on his feet. He patted the dust off his gear gracefully and raised his head, only to face 3 massive silhouettes staring back at him curiously. Snow, Gray, and Fatty blocked the path. He never expected to face 3 northern bears. Damn it, you bitch, the assassin sneered. The 3 bears tilted their heads in confusion. A strange, unfamiliar scent had drifted toward the castle long ago. Levi's training required the beasts to memorize the scent of everyone working in the territory. The assassin thought his infiltration was flawless, but the animals detected him long before he even reached the stone wall. After this, I am asking for an extra payment. Chapter 36. I am that strong. The 3 bears rushed toward the stranger at the same time. This was the exact command Levi had instilled in them over months of training. Any intruder entering the grounds without passing through the main gate had to be mauled immediately. The assassin stiffened, a cold sneer tightening his jaw. Damn beasts. Attacking a certified knight. Internal power surged as his siren breathing method activated, flooding his muscles with extreme speed and flexibility. The ancient style granted him the physical fluidness of an octopus, allowing him to compress his skeleton and manipulate his joints at will. He willed his bones to shrink. His frame instantly became smaller and leaner, unlocking a massive burst of raw agility. Like a dolphin slicing through deep water, he slipped between the 3 snapping bears with fluid grace, vanishing into the courtyard shadows. The animals roared at the empty darkness, their noses losing the trail. The deep bellows alarmed the patrolling guards on the battlements, but the beasts lacked the words to explain what had happened. Assuming the bears were simply hungry, the men quickly tossed them a fresh supply of food and returned to their regular routes. Safe in a secluded recess of the keep, the assassin brushed the dust from his leather armor and pulled a black crow mask over his face. The visor was standard issue for agents of the Voice of the Dead Bird, designed to obscure his identity and filter out lethal gases. Over a decade of contract killing had earned him well over 1,000 gold coins. The fortune exceeded the wealth of most minor provincial lords, more than enough to fund a luxurious retirement. Yet the thrill of dancing on the edge of a blade called to him, prompting him to squander every coin on vice. Murder was his true passion, and each contract represented a unique work of art. He slipped a lockpick into the door mechanism of the Lord's chambers. The tumblers clicked. The heavy oak door swung open without a sound, allowing him to glide toward the bedside like a phantom. Levi lay on his side under a thick quilt. His breathing sounded heavy and steady, his features completely relaxed in the moonlight. The assassin drew a serrated dagger, dipping the tip into a glass vial of dark poison. Dying in your sleep is a mercy bestowed by the Lord of Shadows. Goodbye, Baron Levi. The assassin drove the blade downward, aiming directly for the center of the chest. A pitch black hand shot out from beneath the blanket. Iron fingers clamped around his right wrist, halting the dagger mid-air. The assassin gasped, met with a crushing force that threatened to shatter his forearm. Levi bolted upright, his free hand lunging forward to grip the intruder's collar. The pale moonlight revealed the young lord was fully dressed, wearing 2 layers of thick chainmail underneath his tunic along with a reinforced iron plate shielding his heart. Paranoid caution dictated his routine. He never slept without his armor. Just what do you think you are doing? Levi had been resting, but the distant roars of his bears had broken his slumber. He had chosen to feign sleep, waiting for the threat to reveal itself. An intruder capable of bypassing his outer defenses had to be a formidable opponent, and the sudden shadow by his bed confirmed his darkest suspicions. Levi tightened his grip. The assassin reacted instantly, his free left hand forming a rigid claw aimed at the young lord's eyes. Guided by the heightened reflexes of the frost wolf style, Levi ducked his head to the side, letting the fingers graze the air. He caught the attacking arm, twisted the limb with a sudden, explosive burst of strength, and snapped the bone like a dry twig. Levi vaulted out of the bed, lifting the killer by his clothes and slamming him violently onto the stone floor. The masonry cracked under the impact. The sound of splintering ribs echoed through the quiet room. 15. He is only 15. The assassin's mind reeled in disbelief as a torrent of hot blood erupted from his lips. Listen to me very carefully. Levi dropped to one knee, wrapping his massive hand around the man's throat to pin him down. The plan required subduing the killer first, followed by a thorough interrogation, to uncover the identity of the client who had bought the contract. A loud snap echoed through the bedroom. Levi froze, his eyes widening. Mistake. In his haste to secure the prisoner, his newly awakened strength had betrayed him. He had applied too much physical pressure, crushing the assassin's windpipe and killing him instantly. Chapter 37. Miss Silence. Although it was not the first time he had taken a life, it was the first time he had killed someone inside his own bedroom. Levi stared down at the broken corpse resting on the floorboards. He reached down and pried the shattered mask from the intruder's head, revealing a battered, split face underneath. Sleeping in a different room tomorrow seems like the only option. The identity of the attacker remained a mystery. He was just a teenager, and he had spent his time laying low in the valley. Who in their right mind would deploy a professional killer to end his life? Ultimately, only 2 factions possessed a genuine motive to see him dead. Pastor Abraham was the first suspect, since Levi had directly rejected the authority of the church by refusing to sell his ancestral territory. The Duke of Montenegro stood as the second possibility, along with the 2 closest regional rulers, the Earl of Silver Yarn and the Earl of Blood. If those southern lords wanted to expand their borders, removing a minor baron made perfect sense. But if that was their goal, they would have targeted me long ago. The logic did not fully align. It could not be the work of the Wild Boar Gang either, as those common thugs lacked the resources to hire an assassin of this caliber. Finding the root of this threat is paramount. Otherwise, sleeping and eating will become impossible. A sudden thought struck him as he stared at the bloody remains. Levi drew a hunting knife and cleanly cut open the assassin's chest cavity. Coiling tightly around the dead heart, a dark mist resembling writhing tentacles hugged the muscle. The seeds of life. This man was a qualified knight. Levi frowned. The discovery meant that whoever had purchased the contract possessed immense wealth and power. Before his eyes, the dark tentacles around the heart began to dissipate into the air, vanishing into nothingness. The phenomenon mirrored the internal mechanics of his own body, except a snake-like mist revolved around his own heart. Levi stripped the remaining garments from the corpse to search for clues, eventually discovering a small, thin booklet tucked into an inner pocket. The manual contained only a few pages. The cover depicted a silhouette hiding in deep shadows, filling the room with an inexplicable sense of eeriness. In praise of shadows, the text inside resembled standard religious works, introducing a hidden deity known as the Lord of Shadows. Many competing faiths existed across the continent. The loving Father received worship from the Holy Church. Mother Earth was revered by the Church of the Earth. The goddess of ice and snow claimed the devotion of the Church of Winter. The Storm Monarch ruled the Church of Storms. The Eternal Flame guided the Church of Eternal Life. The King of Dragons commanded the Dragon Church, and the Lord of the Stars watched over the Church of the Stars. These represented the 7 gods currently worshipped by the various nations of the world, recognized as righteous gods, because their influence shaped entire kingdoms. In addition to these dominant powers, minor deities existed in the fringes of society, such as the Lord of the Wilderness, served by the Brotherhood of the Wilderness, and Miss Silence, followed by the Silent Monastery, alongside the ancient god of war. Living in isolation, Levi naturally lacked deep knowledge regarding these obscure cults. The organization behind this attack, known as the Voice of the Dead Bird, maintained very few active members. Because few mortals believed in the Lord of Shadows, the religion had barely spread beyond the criminal underworld. In his previous life, Levi had viewed gods as mere myths. However, after discovering that legends held real power in this world, the true nature of reality seemed far more complex than he had once imagined. Flipping to the final page of the booklet, he discovered a detailed guide for inheriting a new breathing technique. An emblem stamped at the bottom of the parchment depicted a giant sea monster resembling an octopus. Unbeknownst to him, this siren breathing method served as the foundational style for the members of the Voice of the Dead Bird. Most importantly, the technique was completely free from bloodline restrictions. The style focused heavily on flexibility and agility, altering the physical composition of the user's muscles to allow for unnatural contortions, specialized infiltration tricks, and flawless physical disguises. Levi tucked the booklet safely into his tunic, fully intending to log the exercises into his mental interface later. He then gathered the rest of the assassin's gear, piling the crow mask, the poison daggers, and the lockpicks onto his table. With the spoils secured, he dragged the heavy remains over to the massive hearth. He shoved the corpse into the raging fire, watching the flesh crackle and blacken against the heat. For a fleeting moment, a dark, smoky tentacle seemed to claw its way through the center of the flames before dissolving into ash, leaving nothing behind but a collection of charred, nameless bones. Chapter 38. Golden Slash, Level 4, Ripple. So far, all of the breathing methods that Levi knew related to various creatures, beasts that often became the emblems of noble families. Every breathing technique connected back to monsters existing only in legend. To promote their bloodlines, the high nobility invented grandiose myths to form a narrative around their inheritance. His father once claimed that the black snake was destined to bring light and order to a chaotic and dark world. Levi sat at his table, fiddling with the assassin's weapon. The dagger measured about a foot long, intricately crafted, with a hilt that curved and coiled like a snake's tail. Dark residue coated the edge. This dagger was dipped in poison, and rare metals have been melted into the blade. Levi muttered the observation while studying the steel under the light. I can probably resmelt this to forge my own weapon. Next came the leather mask. The snout resembled a plague doctor's face, likely used to prevent toxic gas from entering the lungs. A cold sweat broke out on his neck. Thank God he did not use gas, or the grave would be full by now. One by one, he investigated the assassin's belongings. The items felt increasingly unusual, relics of a world far wider than his isolated valley. When Night Fred comes back, I need to ask him about these tools. Sleep refused to come, so the young lord spent the remaining hours of darkness training. Experiencing his first assassination attempt bred a new level of vigilance. Sleeping in a prominent, easy-to-find bedroom felt entirely too unsafe. A hidden shelter needed to be built within the fortress walls, a sanctuary known only to himself and Night Fred, stocked with emergency supplies, and rigged with a tripwire alarm system. Morning light broke over the stone towers. As soon as the morning drills concluded, shouting echoed from the militia in the courtyard. Levi hurried outside, pushing through a crowd of frightened men to find a body laid out on the cobblestones. My lord, somebody killed Pope last night. The militia captain looked terrified and bewildered. A soldier had died under his watch on a cold, dark night, murdered without anyone noticing a thing. Levi stared down at the corpse, knowing the infiltrator had taken this life while sneaking inside. Cremate him. Send food and a purse of coin to Poke's wife. The captain nodded quickly, shivering under his lord's gaze. I expect more vigilant patrols at night, Levi announced, his voice cutting through the morning chill. Otherwise, do not blame me for the punishments to come. He kept the details of the bedroom struggle entirely to himself. Guarantees did not exist in this wilderness, and spies could easily hide among his own subordinates. The encounter only deepened his understanding of power. Without the recent breakthrough to a qualified knight, the fire would be consuming his own flesh today. Survival belonged solely to the dedicated. Strength had to be increased. His strategy shifted toward accumulating more breathing techniques to enhance his physical vessel, transforming his body into an all-rounded engine of war. 2 days of intense, unrelenting training followed. Under the scorching rays beating down on the training grounds, Levi's right arm shook rapidly, telegraphing a violent hum into his sword. The blade sliced through the air, creating visible distortion, like pebbles thrown into a quiet pond. An explosive force, many times higher than his advanced vibrate effect, traveled from Frostmourne straight into a target iron plate half a finger thick. A sharp crack shattered the silence. Frostmourne pierced through the heavy iron like a hot knife sliding through soft butter. The hilt vibrated with violent, bucking strength, protesting the immense power channeled through the steel. Golden Cross/Proficiency increased by 4. Unlock a new special effect. Ripple, Beginner. A wild grin broke across Levi's face. The power of ripples was finally his. This terrifying ability provided the equivalent of an armor-shattering strike, and mastering the form had taken a mere 3 years. It is all thanks to the panel. The realization brought a sense of profound clarity regarding his potential. He closed his eyes, checking the progress of his inner interface. Levi Snyder. Black Snake Breathing Method, Level 4. 56 out of 20,000, Special Effect, Defense. Golden Cross Slash, Level 4. 1 out of 20,000, Special Effect, Vibrate, Advanced, Ripple, Beginner. Chapter 39. Reaper, Ripple. The second, more powerful portion of the Golden Cross. Night Fred always insisted that mastering the power of ripples elevated a warrior to the rank of an excellent swordsman. The urge to share the achievement was almost overwhelming. Contentment settled deep in Levi's chest, releasing the heavy tension that had built up over the past few months. Knights generally fit into 4 distinct categories: low-level, mid-level, high-level, and peak. Great knights, however, possessed no such divisions. By his own estimates, Levi placed his current combat strength at the mid-level knight ranking. Testing this raw power was the logical next step, but the valley offered no suitable sparring partners. Furthermore, unleashing ripples against any ordinary guard carried far too much danger. It was better to return to the anvil. These days, forging served as a reliable method to cultivate a disciplined mind. The craft demanded absolute patience and intense concentration. In many ways, physical training and the labor of the forge complemented each other perfectly. The furnace ignited. The heavy bellows bulged with air. Levi struck the assassin's captured dagger against the iron anvil. Clang, clang, clang. Heavy drafts of heat billowed from the blast furnace as Levi poured sweat into the metal, reshaping the stolen blade. Time flowed past in a rhythm of hammers, and a pitch-black dagger gradually took form under his rigorous beating. Forging proficiency increased by 2. Compared to the previous curved shape, the new weapon resembled a straight dagger from the ancient Warring States period of his previous life. Levi turned the steel over in his hand, channeling a test ripple through the hilt. The blade thrummed in response. Success. Knight Fred had explained long ago that the Golden Cross was a method of generating physical force rather than a technique tied strictly to swords. A warrior could just as easily channel the power through a blacksmith's hammer or a wooden pole. The dense structure of this specific dagger withstood the violent vibration of the ripple effect far better than ordinary steel. Frostmourne consists of regular iron, so the lack of durability makes sense, Levi muttered to himself. Having access to the high-tech alloys of his previous life would make crafting much simpler. Once the metalwork concluded, he returned to the main keep to continue constructing a hidden shelter beneath the stone floors. In the early morning of the following day, Knight Fred marched back through the gates with the supply convoy. Levi leapt out of bed, rushing down to the courtyard to greet the old warrior with a wide grin. "You are back, Master Levi," Knight Fred smiled, handing over a heavy leather bag. Levi pulled the strings loose, revealing a single glass bottle of ambergris nestled amidst a thick pile of gold coins. "Thank you, Fred." The lingering anxiety in his chest vanished at the sight. "Did you purchase this from the official Chamber of Commerce?" Levi asked. "No," Knight Fred replied, shaking his head. "The local merchants confirm that the White Horse Knight of the royal family is purchasing every available ounce of ambergris for his own training. The Tuva Empire remains the primary producer of the substance, but their council banned all exportation to the Emerald Kingdom following the Millennium War. The resource is becoming increasingly scarce. In short, securing a steady supply in the future might require a journey into the Tuva Empire itself." Levi frowned. The far-reaching consequences of a distant war were finally disrupting his isolated life. "It seems someone here has advanced to a fully qualified knight," Knight Fred teased, his eyes scanning the young lord's stance. "I condensed the seeds of life just a few days ago," Levi smiled. Hiding the breakthrough from his mentor made no sense. Fred was the most trustworthy ally in his life. Besides, if the old warrior harbored any ulterior motives, the young baron would have been dead long ago. "You are a genius, just like your father," Knight Fred said, emotion cracking his voice. "If only he could see you standing here now." Levi nodded, then quietly recounted the details of the midnight assassination attempt. Guilt instantly clouded Knight Fred's features, the old man blaming himself for not being present to defend the keep. However, the moment Levi produced the bird mask from his cloak, Fred went rigid, staring intently at the leather visage. "That is the crow mask. What does it signify?" Levi asked. "Rumors say the crow is a divine bird perched permanently on the Reaper's shoulder, which explains why that guild uses the image as their emblem. This organization takes any contract, executing commoners, high nobles, or even members of the royal family without hesitation, so long as the client provides the correct amount of coin." Knight Fred stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low whisper as his eyes darted around the quiet solar. "This syndicate is extremely mysterious. A close reading of the kingdom's history reveals their shadow looming over almost every major political assassination. Legend says the founder of the guild was a true legendary knight." "Which one?" Levi asked. "Anonymous, the Knight of 1,000 Faces." Chapter 40. Anonymous. Possibly the most enigmatic of the legendary knights, nobody knows his name, his appearance, or his origin. He was known as the Knight of 1,000 Faces, and was powerful enough to leave a deep imprint in the hearts of people. "Fred, who do you think might want to get rid of me?" Levi turned the crow mask over in his hands, staring at the empty eye sockets. "I would say the Duke of Montenegro." Knight Fred stood by the window, his hand resting heavily on the pommel of his sword. "He could have killed me long ago. That was during the war, right when your father died," Fred explained, turning around to face the young lord. "Getting rid of you then would cause unnecessary trouble, but getting rid of you now removes potential unnecessary trouble. However, he probably did not expect you to become a fully qualified knight in just a few years." "What about Pastor Abraham?" "I do not think so. You would have been dead by now if the church wanted to get rid of you. Plus, you already agreed to pay them, so there is no reason for him to get rid of you." Levi nodded, the explanation matching his own calculations. The Duke of Montenegro stood out as the most likely culprit behind the contract. After all, that faction had occupied the land of tulips and the land of storms, and such ill-gotten gains always bred paranoia over time. Levi presented a weak front, but an ambitious usurper would always worry about a displaced heir returning to reclaim his birthright in 20 or 30 years. Now that 6 years had passed since the Holy War and the death of the previous Baron of Blackwater Valley, the rest of the kingdom would barely notice if the minor lord of a desolate fiefdom quietly vanished. I kept such a low profile and secluded myself from the outside world, but there are still people wanting to get rid of me, Levi sighed, rubbing his temples. I am just an imaginary enemy out to get them. A single path forward remained clear. He had to train, and train even harder. When his physical power grew immense enough to shatter kingdoms, he would crush everyone who stood in his way, trampling their fragile dignity into the dirt. Master Levi, although you are a very strong knight, you must know that the Duke himself, the Earl of Blood, the Earl of Silver Shade, and the 7 Hussars of the North are all qualified knights in their own right, Fred warned, stepping closer to press the point. Do not make any impulsive decisions. Do not worry, I have my own plans. For now, we will operate as usual, but we will keep half the armor forged every month for our own use. If possible, I would like to buy war horses and train our militia into cavalry. In this era, a heavily armored cavalry functioned as an unstoppable juggernaut on the battlefield. A qualified knight possessed the strength to slaughter 10 well-trained foot soldiers, but that same warrior would fall quickly before a 10-man cavalry charge. Commanding a force of 50 riders would allow Levi to overrun 2/3 of any baron's territory, while 100 horsemen provided enough military leverage to challenge an earl. During the Millennium War, King Jade had launched his famous counter-invasion against the Tuva Empire by recruiting more than 20,000 men to join his elite vanguard. Numbers dictated the ultimate outcome of a war. Levi originally harbored no desire to expand his military or develop an army, but his past assumptions had proven incorrect. Recent close calls had reshaped his philosophy. Survival demanded a powerful standing force capable of protecting his borders and ensuring the safety of his people. A strong defense required a lethal offense, and a dedicated cavalry unit was a priceless asset. The workshops could easily turn out the necessary weapons and armor, but securing the horses presented a severe obstacle. A single high-quality destrier commanded a steep market price of roughly 80 gold coins. Equipping a modest troop of 50 riders meant investing thousands of gold coins in livestock alone. Furthermore, the daily feed and maintenance of such beasts created a massive logistical burden. For a small provincial lord, maintaining war horses seemed like an absolute waste of precious resources. Yet, considering the hidden dangers gathering on the horizon, the project had to move forward eventually. I agree with the concept of a cavalry, Fred said, nodding slowly. However, our treasury cannot support such an expense right now, so we must take things slow. We will. By the way, Fred paused, his expression turning grave. There is something else I must tell you. What is it? The knight you are trading with at the tavern. I finally recognized his identity. Tell me. He is the Hog Rider. Chapter 41. The ultimate frost wolf and planting the second seed of life. The Hog Rider. That is right. Knight Fred paced toward the hearth, his heavy boots clicking against the stone floor. When old Toby was snatched away by the Wild Boar gang, an investigation into their ranks revealed that name. The memory remains clear. It is a surprise to see him operating inside the city after joining the Brotherhood of the Wilderness. Levi sat at his desk, staring into the flickering candlelight. Silence filled the room. The reality of the situation weighed heavily. Selling weaponry to a potential enemy felt like a dangerous gamble. After all, the Hog Rider belonged to the exact faction that had kidnapped Toby, the very man Levi intended to rescue. The Hog Rider did not recognize you, did he? No. Fred shook his head. Masks protected everyone, and the men initiated the trade directly, while I watched from the perimeter. Caution had guided the old warrior's hand. Throughout the northern lands, common gossip celebrated Knight Fred as swordsman Dawn. Walking into a transaction with the Hog Rider, without a proper buffer, invited immediate recognition, even beneath a heavy disguise. Fred had chosen the wisest path. Are we still going to trade with him? Levi leaned back in his oak chair, his brow furrowing as he weighed the risks. He may be my enemy. A slow sigh escaped his lips, but his payment remains direct and dependable. Maintaining this business relationship serves our interests for now. We will continue the trade and pounce on him the absolute moment an opportunity reveals itself. Do you plan on tampering with the armor, then? Fred adjusted his sword belt, a grim look clouding his features. If this continues, our forge might be making him stronger rather than wearing him down. The Hog Rider is a qualified blacksmith himself, so he will recognize any flaw or sabotage instantly. Besides, their leadership has far larger concerns to worry about. Levi's lips curved into a cold smile. The Wild Boar gang must constantly look over their shoulders for the church and the royal army. They have no time to focus on us. Then again, Levi stood up, walking toward the window to look out over the darkened valley. During our first meeting, he invited me to join a mysterious organization. His true intention was likely to lure me into the Brotherhood so I could forge armor exclusively for their ranks. But considering the massive size of the Brotherhood, our small shipments of weaponry are nothing but a drop in the bucket. We do not represent their enemies at present. Going with the flow allows us to drain their treasury of coin. When the right moment arrives, we will snatch Toby back and reclaim every single weapon we sold them. An unconscious sneer touched his face as the strategy took shape. Patience remained his greatest weapon. Backed by the numerical certainty of the proficiency panel, his cultivation speed far outpaced ordinary warriors. Given enough time, no one would be able to stop his rise. The petty schemes of the Wild Boar Gang and the grand ambitions of the Duke of Montenegro would mean absolutely nothing once he stood on top of the world. Attaining the rank of a legendary knight would erase every fear. Time belonged entirely to him. Deep within the mountains behind Blackwater Valley, the heavy air smelled of freshly broken stone. 3 months after the midnight assassination attempt, construction on the secret bunker finally reached completion. The emergency shelter did not rest within the castle walls. Instead, it occupied a hidden hollow carved directly into the mountain rock. A narrow, reinforced tunnel connected the subterranean space to the deepest level of the fortress basement. The chamber offered little luxury, spanning a mere 20 square meters, dug out entirely by Levi's own hands. Exposing the project to the common servants carried too much risk, so he had utilized the vibrational power of his golden cross to shatter the stone during the excavation. Knight Fred alone understood why his lord spent hours beneath the earth, though the old warrior's expression remained entirely at a loss for words whenever he inspected the progress. Bundles of dried meat, sacks of grain, and barrels of purified water lined the perimeter walls. To Fred, the preparation resembled a frantic defense against a literal doomsday scenario. Yet, the claustrophobic confines of the stone shelter provided Levi with an intense, comforting sense of security, echoing the childhood memory of hiding beneath heavy blankets to escape fictional ghosts. Inside the quiet dark of the bunker, the young lord sat cross-legged, maintaining the strict rhythm of his exercises. His eyes snapped open, a sharp, dazzling light reflecting in the dim space as his lungs expelled a thick plume of gray steam. Standing up, a long stretch caused his joints to pop, a satisfied smile breaking across his features. Strength has increased significantly over these past 3 months. Levi reached for a strip of dried venison, chewing slowly as he evaluated his form. Even the legendary muscle-bound icons of his past life could not match this physique. His skin had deepened into a light bronze, completely replacing the pale, sickly complexion of his childhood. His height had surged to an astonishing 1.9 meters, with arms that measured as thick as the thighs of an ordinary adult male. Boundless physical force rested within the dense muscle fibers. It was an absurd level of development for a 16-year-old youth, radiating the undeniable presence of a mature warrior. This body resulted from relentless, punishing labor, a testament to a man who broke boulders and carved out tunnels with his bare hands. Practice had consumed his focus for the past 90 days. The forms of the Golden Cross found constant utility during the excavation, shattering the mountain face and grinding obstructive stones into gravel. In just 3 months, the progress bar had advanced by 1/5 of the tier. The black snake breathing method had also progressed, gaining 5,000 points of proficiency. At this rate, attaining level 5 before the end of the year remained a certainty. However, the private supply of specialized medicine had completely run out. Reaching that final milestone required securing a new method to produce ambergris. Fortunately, the frost wolf breathing method demonstrated rapid, unhindered improvement. The cold aura radiating from his skin stemmed directly from a major breakthrough. The technique had just reached level 4. Sustaining the advance had taken a mere half a year, and the achievement unlocked the opportunity to condense the seeds of life once again. The physical ordeal proved far less painful than his initial experience with the black snake style. Upon the surface of his beating heart, a dark, wolf-shaped mist materialized, prowling in a perfect, harmonious circle alongside the existing snake-like energy. 2 distinct seeds of life now anchored his power. Chapter 42. Speedy, like a cheetah. Not many people possessed 2 distinct seeds of life anchoring their power. Levi called up the proficiency panel in his mind, the interface glowing softly against the darkness. Levi Snyder. Frost Wolf Breathing Method, Level 4, Maximum, Special Effect, Speed. The text brought a quizzical frown to his face. The progression had already reached its absolute limit, a premature ceiling that highlighted the critical importance of a superior breathing method. The black snake technique promised a grand, unhindered future, while the frost wolf style marked the sudden end of a typical knightly road. Breaking past this boundary appeared completely impossible. The description for the special trait offered some consolation. Agility increased to 3 times that of an average human, facilitating effortless evasion during combat. The ability held undeniable utility. He reviewed his other skills. The black snake breathing method and the golden cross slash remained a considerable distance away from their next breakthroughs, requiring sustained, daily discipline. His forging proficiency had also suffered delays during the excavation of the mountain shelter. Otherwise, he would have achieved the rank of a level 4 blacksmith by now. Time was a finite luxury, and a single day offered only 24 hours. A new plan took shape. Once the metalwork advanced to level 4, the armor sales would resume. Amassing 800 gold coins would fund another expedition into the City of Icy Winds. The prospect of uncovering what unique special effect a level 4 blacksmith might unlock brought a surge of anticipation. Levi returned to the keep through the subterranean tunnel, summoning Night Fred to a wide, flat clearing outside the walls. It was time to test the boundaries of his newfound agility. Running, striking velocity, and instinctual reaction time all required precise evaluation to establish a baseline for his current martial threshold. The running trial came first. Levi measured out a straight runway of roughly 100 meters, stepping up to the line and leaning his heavy frame forward. The muscles in his thighs swelled with sudden power, hot steam permeating his pores with a faint, sharp hiss. An internal trigger fired within his heart. His legs drove into the dirt, launching his body forward like an arrow released from a heavy bowstring. Knight Fred gasped from the sidelines, blinking as a blurred afterimage lingered at the starting mark. The explosive acceleration defied nature. In approximately 5 seconds, Levi crossed the finish line, his boots digging into the grass to halt his momentum. Astonishment left him breathless. In his previous life, a passing score for the 100-meter sprint required nearly 15 seconds. Even the world record had remained stagnant at 9.58 seconds. In terms of pure sprinting velocity, only apex predators like the cheetah could outpace this current speed. He was slightly slower than a hunting cat, but his endurance allowed him to sustain this heightened state for a full 10 minutes. Even a superficial technique yielded immense power. He wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, his pulse hammering. Discovering a perfect, high-tier breathing method focused entirely on speed would transform him into something truly terrifying. The evaluation shifted to combat reflexes. "Fred, do not hold back," Levi said, drawing his weapon with a confident grin. "I need to see exactly where my limits lie." "As you wish, my lord." Fred drew his own longsword, Dawn, the steel catching the morning light. In a fraction of a second, the veteran warrior closed the distance. Fred deliberately refrained from activating the Golden Cross technique to prevent a lethal injury, relying instead on his foundational swordsmanship. The two blades clashed in the open clearing, steel ringing out in a rapid, storm-like cadence. Within minutes, the exchange ceased, both men stepping backward as the heavy dust settled around them. The initial bout placed them on seemingly equal footing. Levi lowered his center of gravity, a competitive edge sharpening his voice. "Fred, stop holding back. An enemy on the battlefield will show no such mercy." "I am not holding back," Fred replied, a wry smile touching his lips. "Your raw physical strength already rivals my own as an intermediate knight." Without another word, the old warrior unleashed an oppressive aura of martial pressure, lunging forward like a hungry vulture descending upon a venomous snake. Even with his maximum agility activated, Levi found himself hard-pressed to match the veteran's seasoned forms. Fred deflected the incoming slashes with practiced ease, evaluating the youth's movements mid-strike. The young lord possessed exceptional attributes, he merely lacked the intuition born of real battlefield experience. Fred executed a fluid parry, stepped back, and smoothly sheathed his blade. "Your strength has far exceeded my expectations, Master Levi. It will not be long before you completely surpass this old sack of bones." Chapter 43. Level 4 Forging. "Thanks, Fred." Levi smiled as Knight Fred helped him up from the damp grass. Traces of a prowling black mist swirled in the air around the muscles of his sturdy legs. The dark vapor wrapped tightly around his limbs, enhancing his reaction time and driving his movement speed far beyond that of an ordinary person. "You are one step closer to becoming a well-rounded knight," Fred said, patting the dust from his own tabard. "Keep it up." Levi flexed his thighs, checking the internal state of his body. The seeds of life lay dormant near his ribs. Within his consciousness, the snake-like mist visibly suppressed the wolf-like energy. Even though both styles represented foundational breathing techniques, a distinct hierarchy existed within his own heart. The disparity brought a wave of surprise. "It is time to put the siren breathing method and the giant bear breathing method on the agenda," Levi muttered, walking back toward the fortress. "Being able to manipulate my own physical shape is going to be incredibly useful." Judging from his previous training cycles, mastering these lower-tier techniques would not require much time, and the specialized traits they unlocked would provide a significant advantage in combat. Back inside the stone walls of the castle, Levi stepped into the sweltering heat of the workshop. Milan stood by the anvil, holding up a polished piece of headgear. "Lord Levi, this is the steel helmet I forged," Milan said, extending the metal for inspection. "Please take a look at it." "Well, look at you," Levi praised, running a thumb along the smooth brim. "You are a qualified blacksmith, just like your father." "Listen to me. I am constantly occupied with military affairs, but manufacturing will always remain the economic pillar of my territory. If our workshops exceed this year's production target, I will personally grant you a pay raise. As for your father, I am already developing a plan to rescue him when the timing is right." "Thank you, Lord Levi," Milan stammered, his face flushing red as he scurried back to his station. Levi moved to his own designated anvil, taking up a heavy hammer to shape raw plates of iron. His entire focus centered on advancing his skill. He needed to reach the 4th level of craftsmanship as quickly as possible. A week of relentless labor passed in a blur of smoke and soot. Levi spent nearly every waking hour at the hearth, and the effort finally triggered a shift in his mental interface. Forging, Level 4, 222 out of 20,000, Special Effects, High-quality goods, Luck of the Forge. Luck of the Forge. You are exceptionally proficient in metalwork, and your manufacturing efficiency reaches far beyond the capabilities of ordinary craftsmen. Not bad at all, Levi thought, setting his tools aside to wipe his brow. This trait will significantly increase my overall output, allowing the treasury to accumulate gold much faster. The new numerical ceiling on the interface proved there was still vast room for improvement, demonstrating that the technical depths of metallurgy ran incredibly deep. The realization brought to mind the legends surrounding Hagrid, the ancient craftsman known across the continent as the Hammer of Flame. It was impossible to know how many years of labor separated a local lord from a master of that caliber. It was a pity the man had passed away. Gossip in the capital suggested the kingdom no longer possessed a single blacksmith capable of matching his legendary work. Throughout the remainder of the month, Levi divided his time between physical drills and the forge. Backed by his newly unlocked trait, his manufacturing speed doubled. Even before this advancement, his production rate had easily outpaced ordinary artisans. Now, the gap was undeniable. Levi could successfully complete 6 full sets of armor in the time it took Milan to hammer out a single suit. 2 months slipped away in a steady routine of hammering iron and practicing his katas day after day. During this quiet period, he successfully integrated the principles of the siren breathing method into his physical system. With the arrival of the budding moon, the thick winter snows began to melt, and the biting chill faded from the mountain passes. Tiny, green shoots emerged from the thawing permafrost, signaling the descent of a gentle spring over Blackwater Valley. Levi led a small detachment of soldiers along a muddy, rutted trail outside the village. An old ox strained against its harness, pulling a heavy wooden cart filled with military gear hidden beneath a thick layer of dry hay. Over the course of the long winter, the workshops had produced a total of 30 complete suits of plate armor. Levi had retained 15 of the highest quality sets to equip his elite guard, planning to sell the remainder in the city of Icy Winds to secure a fresh supply of ambergris before returning home. With weapon manufacturing functioning as his primary cash cow, Levi calculated that the annual revenue of the fiefdom would easily double. The total income of the territory would soon surpass 1,000 gold coins, a level of wealth that most minor barons in the northern wastes could never hope to achieve. Deep within the financial district of the city of Icy Winds, the atmosphere inside a luxurious, stone-carved mansion remained quiet and solemn. An aristocrat dressed in expensive, tailored silks sat at the head of a long mahogany table, enjoying a private dinner. His movements remained perfectly elegant, his silver fork and knife slicing through a rare cut of beef with practiced precision. He chewed slowly, savoring the meat before swallowing. Without a sound, a dark silhouette materialized from the deep shadows beyond the candlelight. The illusory demon knight has failed to report back for nearly half a year, the shadow reported, its voice a low, raspy whisper. Our informants within the valley confirm that Baron Levi remains alive and healthy. The assassin is either dead, or he has abandoned his contract and severed all communication with the guild. The client is openly questioning our operational capabilities, the shadow continued, stepping closer to the edge of the light. Consequently, the leader of the Pale Shadow Order has entrusted you with the assignment that the demon knight botched. The contractor has increased the bounty to a total of 300 gold coins. This pouch contains an advance deposit of 100 gold pieces. The leadership holds high expectations for your performance. Move with extreme caution during this deployment, and guarantee a successful termination. The aristocrat casually reached behind his back, taking the heavy leather purse from the messenger's hand without uttering a single word. He gave the bag a gentle shake, letting the loud, metallic ring of coins echo through the empty dining hall. Where is Baron Levi at this moment? The aristocrat inquired. He has entered the city gates today, the shadow replied. Our spotters report that he is wearing a distinctive white wolf mask to conceal his features, making him an exceptionally easy target to isolate. I understand, the nobleman said, dismissing the agent with a brief wave of his hand. Await the news of my success. The silhouette dissolved back into the dark corners of the room. The aristocrat rose from his meal, walked over to a heavy iron lockbox hidden behind a tapestry, and carefully deposited the deposit inside. A gleam of avarice lit his eyes as he surveyed his accumulated savings, a fortune of 3,000 gold coins representing the cutthroat work of several decades. He adjusted his fine doublet in front of a full-length mirror, strapped a heavy saber to his hip, and systematically blew out the candles on the table. Standing completely silent in the sudden gloom, Bernard bowed his head, whispering a private prayer into the dark. O Lord of Shadows, grant me favor, and let this execution be completed with ease. Chapter 44. 5 Shadows of Death. Bernard's father was once a baron in the northern lands. When Bernard was very young, the old man became addicted to gambling, squandered the family fortune, and sold his baronial title. The family had no choice but to relocate to the crowded streets of the city of Icy Winds. Resentment festered in Bernard's chest for decades. His father's weakness had stripped away his birthright, forcing him to live among lowly commoners. He worked with ruthless discipline from childhood, and soon achieved the rank of a certified knight. He mastered his ancestral breathing method to its absolute limit, using that newfound power to murder his own father in cold blood. The dark act drew the attention of the Lord of Shadows. Bernard found his true calling. With the strength of an intermediate knight, he joined the voice of the dead bird, rising through the ranks to become the silver assassin of the shadows. The guild divided its killers into 4 distinct tiers: bronze, silver, gold, and darkness. A standard knight who completed 5 successful assassinations earned the title of a bronze assassin. A qualified knight with 15 successful marks rose to the silver tier. Gold status belonged to high-level warriors bordering on the rank of a great knight, requiring 30 confirmed deaths. The darkness tier remained exclusive, containing only 5 known masters within the entire history of the voice of the dead bird. Known as the 5 Shadows of Death, these elite killers served as the literal arms and legs of the Lord of Shadows in the mortal realm. No one knew their true names or faces, but every whisper in the underworld confirmed that all 5 were great knights, their identities completely shrouded in mystery. Night fell, scattering brilliant stars across a deep navy sky. Bernard shifted his weight, his physical form melting into the darkness as he glided toward the young lord's last known coordinates. Within the guild, Brotherhood members respected him as the shadow hunter. He rejected the common siren-breathing method distributed to low-level agents, relying instead on his own ancestral lineage, the shadow leopard-breathing method. The style excelled in extreme dexterity and flawless stealth. The illusory demon knight had clearly failed due to arrogance and underestimating the target. An opponent like Baron Levi required the attention of a professional. Bernard checked the straps on his leather armor. After this contract, the collected bounty would provide enough wealth to redeem his family's baronial title and secure an early retirement. He had waited entirely too long for this moment. Inside the crowded warmth of the Shining Tavern, Levi raised a glass of the house specialty, a bitter vintage named Unknown to honor the memory of Anonymous, the Knight of 1,000 Faces. The proprietress leaned against the counter, resting her chin in her palm, while she casually sipped her wine. Knights and wealthy merchants flooded into the main hall as the hour grew late. A burly warrior pushed through the heavy oak doors, his massive frame shifting with a dangerous weight. Levi set his glass down, recognizing the hog rider beneath his heavy traveling cloak. "Why did you bring so little gear during the last trade?" the hog rider asked, his brow furrowing as he took a seat. "The forge was occupied with other matters," Levi replied. The big man leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low rumble. "You seem stronger than before, Geralt. I can smell the raw power rolling off your skin." Levi ignored the observation, tapping his fingers against the table. "Where is the coin?" The hog rider reached into his tunic and produced a heavy leather purse, shaking the bag to let the golden contents ring out in the quiet corner. Levi nodded, rising from his stool to guide the customer toward the designated delivery side outside the city walls. Bringing a fully loaded weapon wagon through the main gates invited too much scrutiny from the town guards, so the two men always concluded their negotiations in the tavern before inspecting the inventory in the outer fields. His current physical prowess ensured the hog rider would not attempt a double cross. The customer inspected the rows of steel plate, waving a hand to instruct his drivers to load the crates onto the covered carriage. "Your metalwork improves with every season. You must be a remarkably talented blacksmith in the making. If you choose to join my organization, the rewards will be limitless." "No need," Levi said. The hog rider sighed, recognizing the stubborn refusal, and signaled his convoy to depart. Return to the valley, Levi ordered his escort soldiers. "I still have a few personal matters to conclude in the market square." The young lord walked back toward the Shining Tavern alone. During the exchange, the hog rider's aggressive demeanor had shifted into something approaching mutual respect, an unspoken acknowledgement that they now stood on equal footing. If a battle broke out, Levi felt completely confident he could cut the man down. Yet violence made little sense for now, even if the brute belonged to the faction holding Toby captive. This particular enemy remained his most profitable customer. Levi waited near the hearth for several hours, but the traveling merchant who dealt in ambergris never materialized. A few days in a local inn seemed necessary to see if the supplier would arrive. If the contact failed to appear, alternative methods to secure the substance would have to be found. He walked over to the center of the common room, focusing his attention on a large wooden notice board. His eyes scanned the overlapping parchments, pausing on an old request concerning ambergris. A local nobleman had posted a massive bounty for the resource 3 months ago, yet the parchment remained pinned to the wood, completely unfulfilled. Levi grimaced, realizing the implications. No ordinary mercenary could fulfill that contract. The White Knight of the royal family had completely monopolized the market, seizing every ounce of ambergris across the northern provinces to fuel his own advancement toward a legendary knight. The entire commercial supply had vanished overnight. A journey into the Tuva Empire might become inevitable if this shortage continues. An internal sigh weighed heavily on him. Traveling into foreign territory carried entirely too many unknown risks. He prepared to turn away from the board in disappointment, but a fresh notice pinned in the bottom corner caught his attention. Chapter 45. The Black Rhino Knight, Hunting Beasts. This is a coincidence. The notice on the board offered a reward tailor-made for specific talents. Levi stared at the parchment, wondering if the mission functioned as bait, but the ink had dried 7 days ago. Logically, given the sky-high value of ambergris, mercenaries should have swarmed the contractor long ago. The fact that the paper remained pinned to the wood after a full week meant the employer demanded an exceptional level of skill in archery. Although the printed details remained vague, taking the risk and accepting the contract seemed like the wisest choice. It did not take long for the employer to arrange a meeting. Levi suppressed an amused smile when the man stepped into the torchlight. The contractor was none other than the traveling merchant, who had sold him ambergris months before. In the end, this particular warrior seemed to be the only available supplier of the rare substance in the northern provinces. Fate worked in mysterious ways. More importantly, the encounter confirmed that this man possessed a reliable method for harvesting the prize. The merchant failed to recognize the young lord beneath his disguise. "Your Excellency, have you read the strict requirements for this deployment?" the man asked, his voice deadpan. "I require an expert archer, and I take this matter very seriously." The man scanned Levi from head to toe. No less than 10 mercenaries claiming to be master marksmen had already answered the call, and every single one had proven to be a fraud. "Why not test the skill yourself?" Levi offered, keeping his tone calm. "Very well, follow me." The employer turned on his heel and strode out of the Shining Tavern, with Levi maintaining a close position behind him. They walked deep into the frozen wilderness outside the city gates, until they reached a wide, snowy clearing. The contractor reached inside his heavy wool coat and pulled out 3 wild rabbits. The animals remained alive, kicking violently against his iron grip. "To verify your claims, we will conduct a practical test," the man said. "Proceed." The contractor nodded and opened his hands, releasing the beasts onto the snow. The 3 rabbits instantly scattered, racing in 3 separate directions across the white plain. Within moments, the targets had blurred across the landscape, reaching a distance of 100 meters. "You may begin," the man announced, his tone dripping with skepticism. "If you can fell 2 with consecutive arrows, you pass." Hitting a single sprinting rabbit at this distance presented a massive challenge, but dropping a second target was nearly impossible for an ordinary warrior. A beast's running speed outmatched human reflexes. By the time a normal archer loosed the first shaft, the second target would vanish into the brush. Levi reached behind his shoulder. His fingers blurred as he drew and loosed an arrow into the gray sky without pausing to aim. Before the first shaft even reached its apex, his bowstring snapped a second time with effortless fluidity. The targets had already traveled well beyond 100 meters. Under the stunned gaze of the employer, the 2 leading rabbits flipped forward into the snow, their heads pierced cleanly by the iron tips. Levi lowered his bow, choosing to let the third animal escape into the tree line to avoid revealing the full extent of his supernatural accuracy. "Your marksmanship is extraordinary," the man praised, his skepticism evaporating into genuine warmth. "Let us discuss the true parameters of the contract. By the way, my name is Groff, a professional bounty hunter. How should I address you? You may call me the White Wolf. I am a free knight." In the Northern Territories, unemployed warriors often called themselves free knights to avoid the negative connotations associated with the term wandering knight. It was the medieval equivalent of a freelancer. Groff nodded, understanding that the archer wished to conceal his true lineage. The young man's poise suggested a noble background rather than the rough life of a mercenary, but a professional hunter knew better than to pry into a colleague's secrets. Groff led the way through the city streets, arriving at a modest, high-walled stone mansion he had purchased near the markets. 3 other warriors already occupied the main courtyard. One of them stood over 2 meters tall, his massive physical frame indicating mastery over a high-tier, muscle-building breathing method. A tower shield of absurd proportions rested against the masonry beside his bench. The other 2 mercenaries presented equally striking figures. One was a rare female warrior. Highborn families seldom permitted women to learn the secrets of the breathing methods, making female knights an exceptionally scarce sight on the continent. She wore form-fitting leather armor that wrapped tightly around a lean, athletic physique. Curly blonde hair framed her face, and her long, muscular legs suggested incredible agility. The final member of the group was a middle-aged man, with a heavy hunting rifle strapped across his back. He stood near the stables, calmly feeding oats to a sleek warhorse while stroking its dark mane. Groff stepped into the center of the yard, gesturing toward the assembled mercenaries. "White Wolf, let me introduce the team assembled for this operation. The mountain of muscle over there is the Black Rhino Knight. This elegant yet deadly lady is the Black Widow Knight, and the gentleman tending to his mount is the Blue Falcon Knight. I have contracted 5 certified knights for this deployment," Groff continued, a confident smile touching his lips. "We will ensure this contract concludes with absolute success." "What is the precise nature of the target?" Levi asked, noting that the hunter had still not revealed the true objective of the gather. Groff remained silent, gesturing for the group to follow him into a large, heavily fortified storehouse at the back of the estate. A massive siege engine occupied the center of the floor, its iron gears taking up a significant amount of space. Levi's expression hardened the moment he recognized the machine. It was a military-grade, armor-piercing ballista designed for large-scale castle warfare. Chronicles in his father's library recorded how these terrible weapons could punch through steel plates like a hot knife sliding through lard, shattering stone fortifications with ease. "Our objective is to slay an earth dragon," Groff stated. Levi turned on his heel and walked toward the exit. Chapter 46. Unpredictable people. Levi no longer wanted to join the expedition. Adult dragons were ferocious beasts, equal in power to great knights. They were invulnerable in the true sense. With this crossbow, it was theoretically possible to subdue the earth dragon, with emphasis on the word theoretical. Risking his life was not worth it for a mere bottle of ambergris. At worst, it would just take more time for him to practice his black snake breathing method. Besides, he was just 16, so there was absolutely no rush. He refused to take a risk, preferring to do things with certainty. Seeing Levi turn around to leave, Groff hurriedly chased after him. "Your Excellency, please wait. I am aware of the risks of hunting an earth dragon, but I am sure we can defeat it. I have been tracking the beast down for several years, and just a month ago, it fought against a great knight from the Tuva Empire." Groff blockaded the doorway, out of breath. "Both the great knight and the dragon are seriously injured. I paid a huge price just to borrow this crossbow, and I specifically recruited knights who are proficient in archery. I am at least 70% sure that we are able to take down the earth dragon. Plus, I am willing to give you 2 bottles of ambergris for your troubles." Anxiety clouded Groff's face. The earth dragon was known for its self-healing abilities, and he could not delay its death any longer. Although the crossbow was different from ordinary bows and arrows, it was fundamentally the same. With Levi's accuracy, that weapon would be lethal. Levi stopped and hesitated. "You would not lie to me, right? Is the earth dragon really injured?" "I took an oath to God to never lie," Groff swore, crossing his hand over his chest. "In this world, because of the church's brainwashing, people still believed in gods. To swear in the name of a deity carried a high degree of credibility. Levi reconsidered. The presence of the ballista changed the parameters. His sole responsibility would be to shoot the massive weapon from a distance. Relatively speaking, the mission itself carried little danger. In truth, he just wanted to leverage the situation to reap more benefits from his act. Groff had bought into the hesitation perfectly. I accept, Levi stated, adjusting his white wolf mask. I am only responsible for the work I should do. If any unexpected danger arises, I am leaving immediately. All you have to do is hit the vital points of the Earth Dragon with the crossbow, Groff muttered, rubbing his hands together. As for the ambergris, I will give it to you once the task is completed. I do not have any on hand as of now. Got it. When do we start? Tomorrow, afternoon. Black Widow needs some time to prepare a highly poisonous drug to smear on the bolts to ensure our safety. All right. Levi turned around to leave, his boots clicking on the stone floor. White Wolf, Groff yelled as Levi disappeared down the corridor. Western exit, tomorrow afternoon. Do not forget it. The heavy warehouse doors groaned shut. He must be the personal knight of a noble, coming out to play, the Black Rhino Knight scoffed, leaning his massive frame against his tower shield. A pity, really. Absolutely not, Black Widow interrupted, her fingers playing with a small vial. Can you not feel his youth leaking out of that mask of his? With how strong he is at his young age, he must be the heir of a certain earl. Groff, are you really giving him just 2 bottles of ambergris? Listen to me, the glands of an adult dragon are worth at most 20 bottles of ambergris. That kid just needs to shoot an arrow, nothing more, nothing less. I, however, must dive headfirst to fight the beast. I think I need 4 bottles of ambergris to compensate. I am in charge of distracting the beast, so am I not in greater danger? Blue Falcon chimed in from the stable door, wiping down his rifle. I too want 4 bottles. And I am preparing the poison, Black Widow scoffed, looking to the side. Without it, are any of you capable of hunting the beast? I think not. I require 5 bottles, at least. I am just ensuring that he stays with us, Groff growled, his voice dropping an octave as he glared at the mercenaries. But I do not think any of you are in a position to bargain. I am the one who knows where the beast resides. I am the one who secured this fancy crossbow to subdue the beast. You are free to leave if you want. I am sure there are plenty of knights waiting to take your place at the tavern. I only offered this contract to the 4 of us to maintain our professional relationship. The 3 knights remained silent, the tension thick in the storehouse. Dissatisfaction lingered, but none of them pushed further since Groff refused to take the bait. For wandering knights like them, earning a steady income was hard. As long as they could complete this task, the coin from the ambergris would support them for a very long time. Chapter 47. Catching a sword, an arrow like wind and thunder. Levi left Groff's mansion and walked towards the nearest hotel. As he walked through a damp, dark alley, footsteps echoed far behind, keeping pace with his stride. A quick glance backward revealed nothing but empty cobblestones. Unfamiliar tension gripped his chest, prompting him to invoke his black snake breathing method silently. In the darkness, the black mist revolved around his heart, shooting out into his arms. Beneath his heavy wool cloak, dense, black fog covered his forearm, resembling a pack of snakes that slithered through the soil. A black shadow plunged from above. A dark blue dagger stabbed towards his face, forcing him to bring his arms up to block the blow. The dagger pierced through his outer clothes, shredded his chainmail, and slammed into a rubber-like substance that held the dagger back. Levi darted backwards and crashed into a garbage pile. Pain flared in his arm. Sharp throwing knives cut through the air in a sudden flurry. Puffs of black mist rushed into his legs, launching his entire body forward like an arrow piercing the wind. His mist-covered palm batted away the oncoming knives. His other hand unsheathed Frostmourne, slashing forward in a wide arc. Frostmourne collided with a shadowy rapier. A dazzling golden light flashed, causing a loud clanging noise to reverberate through the once dark and silent alley. The attacker scoffed, taking a large step backwards as severe pain radiated through his hands. The moment both weapons struck each other, a strange force transmitted onto the slender blade, causing the rapier to vibrate violently and bite at the user's arm. The figure immediately lunged forward again, stabbing towards Levi's chest with striking, strange precision. The golden sparks illuminated the attacker clearly, revealing a man in black leather armor wearing the same beak mask as the previous assassin sent to the valley. This organization refused to go away. No time remained to figure out how they found his location. Levi's breathing methods operated at their absolute limits, and violent steam permeated through the tears of his clothes. Bernard stared in shock. Knights could judge another warrior's power by the violent steam radiating off his flesh. This hot vapor rising from Levi did not belong to a low-level knight at all. Only intermediate knights with more than 10 years of experience produced steam of this intensity. Yet the guild intelligence clearly stated that Baron Levi, the cowardly son of the previous Baron Snyder, was only 16 years old. Bernard had no time to collect his thoughts. The target's true identity mattered less than survival. Bernard rained down slashes of his rapier like a storm, trying to cut the youth into pieces. Relentless training allowed Levi to swiftly block and dodge every single slash, launching his own precise counterattacks. His movements carried perfect accuracy, driving Bernard toward desperation. Bernard gasped, taking a step back to clutch at his bleeding wounds. Levi pushed forward, surprised by his own physical dominance. The assassin was significantly stronger than the last one, operating at a level almost equal to Knight Fred, a true intermediate knight. Yet his own endurance held firm. The two continued to clash in the narrow alley. Bernard moved like a panther that prowled in the shadows, dodging Levi's slashes and countering with swift stabs. Levi's black snake breathing method maintained a steady rhythm throughout the battle. Although he ranked as a regular knight, his raw physical strength matched an intermediate assassin. Combined with his frost wolf breathing method, his agility and speed far outmatched his opponent. The power of the Golden Cross made it impossible for the assassin to land a meaningful blow. With every clash, the rippling force of Frostmourne caused Bernard's body to shake and twist violently, shattering his hands and tendons even without direct contact with the blade. Die, Levi yelled. Viscous black mist covered Levi's palm. He reached out, grabbing the sharp blade of the rapier with his bare fingers. How dare you, Bernard cried out, petrified by the display. No one caught a rapier with bare flesh. My blade is stained with poison, Bernard hissed, hope returning to his eyes as blood dripped from Levi's fingers. Even with your mist, you will succumb. No knight can withstand the venom of a ring-tailed snake. Anger flared in Levi's chest. He needed to keep this man alive to figure out who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. He twisted his wrist, pushing the captured rapier violently forward. Bernard leaped back, barely avoiding being cut in half by his own weapon. You are crazy, you will die in seconds, Bernard cursed. Thoughts of flight raced through the assassin's mind. With his current savings, he could disappear off the face of the earth and never have to deal with this terrifying baron again. He suddenly rolled to the side, dodging Levi's sudden forward slash. His boots kicked off the stone walls, scaling up the side of the buildings with supernatural agility. Levi ran out of the alleyway, watching the assassin bounce from roof to roof across the skyline. He pulled his bow from his shoulder, smearing an arrow tip with the poison left on the rapier. He drew the string back, releasing a shot with terrifying accuracy. The arrow pierced through the air, roaring like wind and thunder. In the distance, a sharp cry of pain echoed over the roofs as a heavy figure tumbled from the tiles, crashing into the street below. Chapter 48. White Wolf Kills in the Dark. A numb, itchy sensation pervaded Levi's palm. Judging from the previous assassination attempt, this was snake venom, a lethal toxin that required a specific anti-venom completely absent from this world. He forcibly directed the internal black mist to push the poison out of his system, navigating the shadows until he discovered a clean well to wash the wound. Fortunately, the puncture was small. The dark, snake-like mist chased the toxins, flushing them from his flesh. Standing in the damp alley, he bandaged his hand, swallowed a few rations, and melted into the darkness. The assassin had certainly suffered from the venomous arrow, but a small dose would not immediately kill an intermediate knight. However, a heavily injured hunter made for perfect prey. This was the absolute best time to strike. Inside the lonely mansion, the front door groaned open and slammed shut. Bernard rattled the heavy iron lock into place, staggering into the foyer. The arrow protruding from his back had narrowly missed his heart. He is a master archer, damn it. The guild intelligence omitted this entirely. Bernard leaned against the wall, panting. Despite his extreme caution, the mission had collapsed into a desperate struggle for survival. It matters not. He will succumb to the venom shortly. Even if he survives, the poison will leave him a cripple, an easy mark for the future. Bernard gripped the wooden shaft, bracing himself against the agonizing heat radiating through his chest. He snapped the fletching and forced the arrow completely through his torso, sliding it out of his pectoral muscle. The blinding pain threatened to tear his consciousness away, but it was the only option. Pulling the barbed tip backward would have shredded his internal organs. That miserable brat. I will peel the skin from his bones when I catch him. Recovery demanded seclusion. He collapsed onto the floorboards, but a sudden, rhythmic fluttering inside his chest halted his breath. The telltale sign of poisoning had reached his veins. Snake venom. Panic threatened to accelerate his pulse. He forced his breathing to slow, knowing that agitation would only drive the toxins into his heart. Even a microscopic trace of this venom would prove fatal if it breached the central chambers. O Lord of Shadows, preserve your loyal servant. A sudden burst of dark energy erupted from his core, fighting the poison, cordwoning off the vital organs. Bernard lay completely motionless on the bare wood, forcing contaminated blood out of the wound, until his complexion turned a ghastly, translucent pale. Slowly, he dragged himself upward, bound his chest in tight linen, and drained a vial of healing elixir. I survived. The Lord of Shadows watches over me. The heavy oak door splintered into fragments. A massive figure stepped through the ruin, surrounded by a rolling shroud of violent steam. The white wolf mask gleamed in the dim moonlight, freezing Bernard in place. How is this possible? You should be dead. An arrow answered the question. 4 consecutive thuds echoed through the room. 4 iron-tipped shafts tore through the air, pinning Bernard to the floorboards by his limbs. A guttural scream of agonizing torment tore from the assassin's throat as he glared at his executioner. Levi drew Frostmourne, the steel catching the ambient light. 4 fluid slashes followed. The blade severed the tendons in Bernard's arms and legs, sending dark crimson geysering across the floor. What do you want? Just kill me. Levi stepped over the pool of spreading blood, his shadow enveloping the broken man. Reveal the name of the contractor who purchased my life. Provide a satisfactory answer, and your suffering ends immediately. The alternative involves my boot crushing your family jewels. Choose wisely. You are insane. Levi brought his heel down with absolute force. Stop. Stop. Please, no more. I will tell you everything. Tears cut tracks through the grime on Bernard's face as the agonizing pressure shattered his remaining resolve. I do not know the identity. The guild routes assignments through a local broker. Only the intermediary holds the name of the client. The contact meets me here tomorrow morning. I swear it by the Lord of Shadows. Kill me. Please, just kill me. The will to fight had completely evaporated. Bernard simply wanted the nightmare to conclude. Even if mercy were granted, a life without limbs or dignity held no value. The heavy longsword descended, cleanly parting Bernard's head from his shoulders mid-prayer. Levi methodically dismembered the remains, carrying the pieces to the grand fireplace and tossing them into the roaring logs. With the cleanup finished, a thorough search of the mansion commenced. Deep within a subterranean storage room, a reinforced iron chest sat nestled in the corner, wrapped in heavy security chains. Levi channeled the rippling force of the golden cross through his blade, shearing through the padlocks as if they were brittle twine. He threw the lid back, and a brilliant golden reflection illuminated the dark masonry, glinting off stacked rows of pristine gold coins. Chapter 49. Too weak, too weak, too weak. The volume of wealth in the iron chest surpassed every expectation. Levi emptied the contents into a heavy canvas sack, the dense clinking of precious metal echoing against the stone walls. Based on the weight tearing at the fabric, the stash easily equaled 3,000 gold coins. Illegal ventures clearly yielded unparalleled riches. When morality ceased to factor into labor, coin flowed without friction. Bernard had operated as a remarkably accomplished killer, accumulating this massive fortune to redeem his stolen birthright. Levi searched the remaining chambers of the estate, seeking any manual or written record detailing the agile breathing technique the assassin had utilized during their duel. The man had moved with incredible velocity, but the search yielded no hidden text or scrolls. Outside the high windows, a raven called into the silent midnight. Levi sat at the long mahogany table, resting his palm on the pommel of Frostmorn. He consumed his traveling rations and drank from a water skin, maintaining a solitary vigil in the dark. The minor puncture wounds on his hand had already sealed, leaving smooth skin where the snake venom had pricked his flesh. The heavy defensive properties of the black snake style provided an unmatched advantage against ambushers. Complete physical protection reigned supreme in the underworld. Hours dissolved into the quiet atmosphere. Levi remained perfectly alert, the baseline fatigue of the day entirely absent from his senses. Dawn approached, and the local crows began returning to their perches under the eaves. Soft, hesitant footsteps crunched on the gravel outside the entryway. Levi shifted his posture, his focus sharpening with predatory intensity. An intermediary stepped through the broken front threshold, pausing as his boots met the crimson stains spoiling the courtyard. The hastily closed gate and the scent of iron generated immediate suspicion. Bernard had surely not allowed common thieves to ransack his private sanctuary. A massive shadow blocked the exit. Levi stood in the doorway, the white wolf mask gleaming under the lintel. "You arrived. Time to die." The broker gasped, his eyes darting up the imposing height of the young lord. Levi stood alive and unharmed, indicating Bernard had met a gruesome end. A brilliant arc of silver steel sliced through the gloom. The explosive rippling force of the golden cross drove the broker backward, forcing the agent to draw a slender sidearm to defend his chest. Levi swung a second time. The impact flicked the weapon out of the broker's grip, sending the metal clattering across the floorboards, while the force of the blow launched the man through the air. Survival demanded immediate flight. The broker scrambled to his hands and knees, racing toward the back garden. Levi possessed terrifying physical strength. As an information courier, the broker maintained no true battlefield experience, and his primary duty required warning the guild leadership. The illusory demon knight had clearly perished under this same blade. The organization needed to adapt, or every agent in the province would face execution. Levi refused to let the sole remaining clue slip into the city. He lunged forward, the enhanced agility of the frost wolf style instantly closing the distance. He caught the fleeing courier within 3 strides, clamping an iron hand onto the man's shoulder and driving his weight downward. The broker crashed into the stone floor, his skull fracturing against the masonry under the immense pressure. "Too weak, too weak, too weak." Levi delivered the evaluation in a flat murmur. He brought Frostmorn down with a heavy thrust, pinning the broker's shoulder blades cleanly to the wooden floorboards. "Reveal the identity of the client who purchased the contract on my life." The broker clamped his jaw shut, staring at the ceiling with stubborn defiance. The leadership of the voice of the dead bird chose their intermediaries based on absolute loyalty, and pain alone would not break his silence. Levi drew his dagger, methodically tracing lines across the man's tunic, allowing the steel to open the flesh beneath. Even as his life ebbed onto the stones, the broker offered only a ragged, agonizing chuckle. "The Lord of Shadows will resurrect my flesh, and I shall return as the cursed shadow that haunts your footsteps." The longsword moved in a swift, horizontal line, parting the broker's torso. Levi searched the lining of the courier's garments, tearing away the pockets to locate a token, a ledger, or a signature. The inspection yielded nothing but blood-soaked cloth. A wave of raw frustration heated his blood, steam rising from his shoulders as he raised his blade above the remains. "Keep your secrets. The truth will reveal itself in time, and your masters will answer for this insolence." The heavy steel descended repeatedly, reducing the remains to a fine pulp before Levi scooped the debris into the hearth. He walked out into the courtyard, inhaling the cold, crisp morning air to steady his racing pulse. By the time his breathing returned to normal, the navy sky had faded to a pale gray, the first rays of sunlight catching the dark stains on his mask. He washed his face in the bathhouse, staring silently into the glass at his own reflection. He gathered logs from Bernard's firewood reserve, piling the dry timber in the center of the grand salon. He struck a spark into the kindling, watching the flames roar to life and swallow the tapestries, before he slipped through the back gate, vanishing into the early morning mist. Chapter 50. Murder and Arson. Despite the desecration of life he committed, he walked away happily with 3,000 gold coins. A standard gold coin weighed about 6 grams, which meant he carried 18 kilograms of gold coins on his body. He walked carefully, not wanting to alert anyone to the jingling of riches around him. I need to hide this somewhere, finish my mission, and take it back to my territory. Levi left the city, and after making sure that nobody followed him, he ran toward the wilderness in one direction. After running about 10,000 steps, he came to a dense forest. On the ridge of the mountain, he found a big tree and started digging. After hiding the stash of gold coins, he messily patted the soil and covered it with some rocks to hide his traces. He climbed up another tree and waited as he surveyed the surroundings. After 1 hour, nobody appeared. He felt relieved and ran back down the mountain. It was about time to meet Groff and his party. It was not until Levi heard about Knight Bernard's house being set on fire that he knew that his assassin was named Bernard. Bernard's house was located far from the city, so it was difficult to gather witnesses. Levi was sure that he would not be discovered by the public, so he did not care about the gossip too much. In the morning, near the western exit of the city, a carriage set off slowly. Around the carriage, 5 knights rode the horses pulling the cart, while some of the knights among them walked. Everyone, before the start of this operation, I would like to re-emphasize our roles. I am in charge of finding the beast. The Blue Falcon is in charge of distracting the beast. The Black Rhino is in charge of fighting and restraining the beast. The Black Widow is in charge of poisoning the arrows. The White Wolf will shoot the crossbow once the beast is weakened. Understood, the Blue Falcon muttered. I hope you do not miss the shot, the Black Rhino said as he stared at Levi. The Black Rhino was confident he was the strongest among the 5, and he doubted the ability of the White Wolf to pull his weight. The beast's territory is located at the junction of the Emerald Kingdom and the Tuva Empire, so we should be careful, Groff reminded. Levi remained on guard the entire time they walked. He did not want to be assassinated again. After 2 consecutive assassinations, he was more cautious than ever. He bought a brand new pair of high-quality chainmail in the city for a huge sum of money. He figured that plate armor would be difficult to maneuver in. In addition, his quiver was filled with arrows. His dagger was in his left hand, and his frostmorn was in his right. He had quicklime stored in his pocket, ready to give the assassins a taste of their own medicine by blinding them. After marching for about 3 days and 3 nights, Levi and the others soon arrived at the territory of the Earth Dragon. It was a huge valley, and in the center of the valley was a dense jungle. A snow-capped mountain could be seen in the distance, towering over the valley. That is the dividing line between the Emerald Kingdom and the Tuva Empire. After crossing that mountain, the vast seaside hills and plains is where the Tuva people call their home. Unlike the Emerald Kingdom, the Tuva Empire is a centralized, feudal empire, so they are more united in terms of strength compared to the Emerald Kingdom. Before the Millennium War, the Tuva Empire often invaded the Emerald Kingdom. The Emerald Kingdom declared war upon them as the Millennium struck, and they won, but not without suffering heavy losses. The main habitat of the Earth Dragon is in the Tuva Empire. Since the road became more and more treacherous, Groff and Black Rhino carried the crossbow. Finally, they placed the crossbow on stable, high ground. Standing on high ground, they could have a panoramic view of the valley. Up ahead is the territory of the Earth Dragon. Now, Black Widow and White Wolf will remain here, and we will lure the Earth Dragon closer. Remember, Groff continued. The weak point of the beast is its eyes, and hopefully, you can penetrate its brain. Aiming at other parts is futile since they are too large to be affected by our attacks. Please perform your best, or this valley will be our graveyard. Groff's face was serious. There was no doubt that the key to this battle lay in the aim of Levi. If Levi makes a mistake, they may fail. If you fulfill your roles well, then I will have no problems here, Levi replied confidently. I sure hope so, Black Rhino huffed as he left with the Blue Falcon and Groff. Black Widow remained by the side of Levi, and she produced a small bottle of poison that exuded a strange fragrance. This is the strongest poison, which I refined from 6 precious and highly poisonous substances. I only have 1 bottle, so you have to make sure you shoot accurately, she explained. Levi nodded, and she smiled, turning around to apply the poison to the arrows. She continued to explain that if she applied the poison too late, its efficacy would be reduced, so she had to apply it now. Believe me, with someone as beautiful as you by my side, my shots will definitely be more accurate than you imagined, Levi boasted. To be continued. Hope you liked today's video. Join the community by subscribing and dropping a like. I'll be back with another update tomorrow. See you then.